The little girl confidently claimed no one could ever pull the iron nail out of her body, but the man didn't care and reached straight for her chest to yank the thing out. The Exorcism Bureau's director, standing nearby, nearly passed out, because to normal people, that girl wasn't a girl. She was a blood-soaked ghost with a kill count. But the guy handling her, he wasn't exactly normal either. A long-term patient at Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital, a complete nutcase. In his messed-up little world, he was the universe's top guardian, Special Agent Dong Dong Yao, using his yellow flip-flops as his top-tier communication device to contact the space station. It was just a normal day as always. He was outside practicing his flight technique, but like always, he slipped and face-planted on the hard ground and knocked himself out cold. He just laid there, spread out like a dead frog. When he finally woke up, he was back in his room, lying flat like a pancake. First thing out of his mouth, who dared mess with the fearless guardian of the planet? That's when a voice echoed in his head. Relax, nobody touched you. You just did a full-speed faceplant all by yourself. He blinked, looked around. The only other person in the room was some guy sitting nearby. Without missing a beat, he pointed at him. You, Optimus Prime, was that you talking in my head? But instead, saw some green goo appearing out of his chest, saying it was him. And just like that, he saw a glowing ball of slime hovering in air, claiming to be the world's strongest ghost system. Yeah, okay. Apparently this slime lost its original body in some tragic backstory no one asked for, and now it needed to latch onto a human with immense mental power to regain its strength. That's when it found our guy laid out cold after his Olympic-level faceplant. Back in the present, the slime was calling him the Chosen One. Something about his mind being off the charts. Said it was fate, destiny, a rare gift. But the nutjob wasn't even listening. He was too busy digging under the bed looking for something. Next thing you know, smack, he slapped the slime straight across the face like it's a mosquito. Didn't even hesitate. The orb lost it, started screaming, ready to go full poltergeist. But right before it could explode, it froze, because something really bad was heading toward their room. But before he could warn the blonde nutjob, a loud shriek echoed from outside the room. Everyone froze, except of course the two lunatics who ran straight to the window like kids chasing an ice cream truck. And that's when they saw her, a ghost woman, dragging herself across the hallway floor, heading straight for their room. But right as she reached the door, she stopped, completely thrown off, because instead of running away like normal people, both idiots were just standing there staring at her. One even tilted his head, wondering if she was a new patient that just got checked into the psych ward. Meanwhile, the ghost system popped out a scouter from God knows where, scanned the thing, and gave our boy the rundown. She was a malevolent spirit, second stage, and she was here for a snack. Human-flavored, but the guy just lashes out at her instead, telling her these were the quiet hours, but she was crawling around the hallway screaming at the top of her lungs. Pissed off by his nerve, the ghost girl let out an eerie screech and prepared to make a quick snack out of both of them. And before they knew it, the thing phased through the door like it was nothing and landed smack on his bed. Just like that, she prepared to quickly finish the job. Seeing the sight in front of him, our boy started screaming. If you think that scream was out of fear, guess again. The guy took off his trusty flip-flop and smacked the ghost lady right on her face, screaming since he was on cleaning duty tomorrow and she just ruined his perfectly clean bed. With that, he grabbed her by the hair and tossed her out the room like last week's trash. Standing at the door, the guy scolded the girl, reminding her that new or not, she was supposed to follow the rules like the rest of them. But as the girl stood back up to her feet, he saw it again, the whole hallway covered in goo. Yeah, let's just say that was the last straw. The guy loses it. Just like that, he starts smashing the living hell out of her. And only after he was fully satisfied did he stop, telling the girl to grab a mop and clean the floors. Meanwhile, the poor thing just sat there completely shaken from the beatdown she just took at the hands of this lunatic. She came here to get something to eat, but ended up getting served instead. Meanwhile, the whole incident was being monitored through the surveillance cameras. In front of the screen sat a fat man, flanked by two beautiful women. Turns out this man was the director of the Exorcism Bureau. And watching everything unfold in front of his eyes, the man was left speechless. This lunatic not only defeated a powerful second-stage malevolent spirit using nothing but a slipper, he was also using her to wash his laundry. Such a splendid display of power, it actually brought tears to the man's eyes. Without a moment of hesitation, he made the call then and there. Tomorrow morning, they were heading straight to Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital to recruit this once-in-a-century genius. Fast forward to the next day, all three of them were seen walking down the hallway behind the doctor in charge of the place to meet with our boy. But just as they arrived outside the room, the doctor told the director he can't enter the room because of his uniform, since that could make the patient nervous and they won't be able to communicate with him properly. That surprised the man, but still he agrees to the doctor's request. And just like that, all three of them stepped inside, only to find our boy completely out cold, snoring on the bed. Above him, his freshly cleaned clothes, neatly hung by the monster girl thanks to the last night's incident. With that, all of them stared at the doctor as he tries to wake the boy up. And boom, the guy jolts up, calling the doctor a despicable scoundrel for filling his head with chaotic noises last night. And just like that, all of them realize what their so-called one-in-a-thousand-year genius is really like, just another nutcase locked inside the mental hospital. But still, they clearly saw the same exact guy beating the crap out of that ghost lady last night and asked if there was a chance that this person was suffering from split personality disorder. But the doctor told them that wasn't the case. This dude was a straight-up nutcase, but Yu still walked up to him, thinking he was their only shot in dealing with those overpowered spirits, and asked if he remembered anything from last night. But the man just started blushing like fully red. This guy didn't even know what 1 + 1 was, but somehow his inner caveman kicked in the moment she appeared in front of his eyes. Meanwhile, the ghost system picked up something weird from the girl's side, ran a quick scan just to be safe, and yeah, no, things were bad. Turns out, after all those years around ghost energy, she ended up with breast cancer, and it was already in the final stage. But the fool didn't even pay any attention to his words and instead started reaching out for the girl's fun bags, telling her balls looked sick and he wanted to take a closer look. Yeah, safe to say she instantly regretted ever coming near him and started screaming right then and there. That's when the doctor finally stepped in and apologized on his behalf, explaining that the guy didn't even have a concept of gender and never meant to offend anyone. He wasn't trying to be rude, he just had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, the poor director in the back looked like he was about to pass out, realizing his so-called strongest cultivator was actually just a complete mess of a human being. Fast forward, all 4 of them were seen walking out of the building. The director, still desperate to find something useful, asked if the man had ever shown any kind of unusual behavior. The doctor just gave him a look and said there was no one normal in this place to begin with. But yeah, there was one thing. Lately, the guy had been going around claiming he was some kind of alien and kept trying to contact headquarters using his slippers, if that helps. After some time, all 3 of them were seen in the hospital cafeteria, still discussing about our boy. That's when the director revealed that he still wasn't giving up on the boy and was planning on taking him with them when this is finally over. Meanwhile, the poor system was still busy trying to fix that scrambled brain of his, but every time it got close to begin the procedure, the fool just kept swatting it away like a fly. Left with no choice, the system gave up on that plan for now and decided to just focus on keeping him alive. After all, that ghost woman from last night hadn't been dealt with properly. She failed her hunt once, and odds were she'd be back tonight to finish the job. Thinking that, the system did its little mumbo-jumbo and summoned a powerful talisman right in front of our hero to ward off evil spirits. But instead of being grateful, the fool started yelling at the poor thing for disturbing his precious lunch break. Then, without a second thought, he grabbed it, curled it up, and chucked it like yesterday's trash, straight into the director's bowl. Furious, Kaka jumped up and demanded to know who had the guts to ambush their chief in broad daylight. But the man reminded him they were in a psychiatric hospital, and there was no point yelling at mentally unstable patients like this. Instead, he told him to fortify the area and call in some troops. He was sure that Ghost Lady would be back tonight to come after Chunjua. Sometime later, the director was seen personally moving the necessary equipment into the building. Meanwhile, the fool for whom all these preparations were actually for was busy sprinting around the place looking for somewhere to swim. Right in front of the director, he suddenly threw himself onto the grass and started flailing like a madman, convinced he was drowning. Watching this scene play out, the director seriously started questioning if any of this was worth it. But still, for the sake of his promotion, he decided to take this long and hard path. With that, it was already nighttime and the place was now fully fortified with massive sunlight arrays pointing at the entrance to stop any spirits that might try and enter the building. And just on cue, the ghost lady finally arrived. But this time, she wasn't alone. She brought her boyfriend with her to take revenge on our boy. Watching the second ghost, the poor fat man almost had a heart attack since the creature with her was a male Nuba, something that has been on their city's top 10 ghost list for years, and the most powerful second-level resentful ghost. Seeing the thing, the man instantly instructed his soldiers to gather up everyone and get to the scene, since those sunlight arrays won't be enough to stop that thing. Meanwhile, outside the building, both creatures were seen slowly making their way towards the building. And as soon as the female newbie stepped into the light, a massive magic circle appeared under her feet and her body started burning up. Seeing this, the male ghost prepared to deal with the pesky things and let out a powerful screech straight towards the top of the building. And just like that, every single defense the director had set up shattered like glass. With nothing left to stop them, both ghosts casually entered the building without encountering any resistance. Meanwhile, inside the room, our boy was already seated on the bed, meditating like he'd been waiting for this moment all day, and boom! With a loud bang, the door to the room exploded into pieces, and within seconds, the ghost couple stormed in, ready to take their revenge. But the moment they locked eyes on the fool, something weird happened. The male Nuba just froze. Unlike a normal human, the guy wasn't panicking, wasn't even reacting. Before the ghost could figure out what was going on, the fool suddenly took off running straight toward them, then looked up at the ceiling and asked where the aliens were, who were supposed to take him back home tonight. Without waiting for a reply, he casually turned around and ran straight to his bed. Then, to both their horror, he picked up his flip-flop and started contacting headquarters, reporting that the pickup team was late. And just like that, his memories came rushing back and he slammed the slipper on the ground and started shouting at the girl, saying she was behind all this. Seeing his finger aimed right at her, the girl started shaking, quickly ducking behind the male Nuba, who by the way still had absolutely no idea what was happening. But by then, the thing had enough of his stupidity and decided to just end him and get this over with, thinking that the creature attacked him using some kind of goose slime things. But luckily, the system stepped in just in time, blocking the things with a barrier before they could get to our hero. By then, the backup had also arrived and they had the things surrounded, ready to capture it. Just like that, all of them started rushing towards the monster. And seeing them coming, the monster also got ready to fight back and launched its corrosive slime things towards all of them. But the soldiers with the massive shields somehow managed to block the attack. Even so, the attack was too powerful, and with that one attack, the thing managed to crack their shields. Seeing this, Kaka realized they wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. And just as he had thought, the shields shattered into pieces and all of them got thrown back. And just like that, Kaka was the only one left to fight the thing off. With no other choice, he shouted for our boy to use this chance to escape while he distracts the monster. But our hero was lost in his own thoughts. Turns out that last attack had completely destroyed his communication slippers, and now he had no way of contacting headquarters anymore. So yeah, he wasn't about to let that slide. Fueled by pure rage, he started powering up like he was going full Super Saiyan to avenge his poor broken slippers. Seeing him so fired up, the system decided to give him a little boost, just enough extra power to take the fight head-on. Before the monster could even process what was happening, boom! A bone-shattering Diamond 6-9 fist landed square on its face, launching the thing several meters into the air. But our boy wasn't done. Using the momentum, he followed up with the elephant stomp kick, and the creature, seeing that face charging straight at it, actually started screaming. But it was too late. Another thunderous hit landed and the thing was sent flying all over again, and just like that, the creature lost all strength to fight back. But our boy was far from done with him, and that is when the system manifested something called a Zhang Exorcism Talisman in his hand to help him finish the thing for good. Seeing the thing, the creature realized that if he got hit by that talisman, he was done for. So he raised his hand, signaling that he gives up. But it was no use. Harming his precious slippers was a crime punishable by death. And just like that, a powerful flash of light appeared from his hand aimed right at the monster. And within seconds, the thing was reduced to dust. But our boy hadn't forgotten about the real cause of all this mess, and turned towards the female Nuba, who was already on her knees watching her backup turn into ashes. But before she could beg for mercy, the fool went right back to being his usual crazy self, screaming, shouting, and throwing a full-blown tantrum over his destroyed slippers. Meanwhile, the poor ghost girl straight up dropped dead. Not from an attack, but from the sheer horror of all the nonsense she had just witnessed. Even the director was left speechless. Staring at the screen, that guy had single-handedly taken down a male Nuba without even breaking a sweat. Fast forward to the next day, and the director was seen storming back into the doctor's office, demanding that he let him take Chen Zhuo. But to his disappointment, the doctor refused his request, explaining that it was his duty to protect these patients, and there was no way he could hand over Chen Zhuo, knowing full well the kid's life would constantly be at risk. He reminded the man about the last night's incident, how one ghost managed to destroy their whole ward, which is why he can't allow him to take that boy to fight against those things with his current mental condition. But the man still insisted he reconsider, explaining that their exorcism police needs talents like Chen Zhuo. And just like that, the man started breaking down, explaining in full desperation that their department was barely hanging on. They didn't have the manpower to deal with the rising ghost threats. And with the pressure piling up from the higher-ups, he was scared he might end up in this hospital himself, right alongside the rest of the patients. With that, the director started begging, practically on his knees, asking the doctor to let him take the boy with him. But just as he was in the middle of his meltdown, Kaka burst into the room with urgent news. However, the moment his eyes landed on the director, Kaka suddenly froze in place, seeing how he was acting. But the director, trying to play it cool, asked him calmly why he barged in like that. That's when his face went pale. Kaka informed him they'd just received news that a family of 7 was currently being targeted by a ghost. And not just any ordinary ghost. They were being hunted by none other than the Deathbringer little girl, known for leaving no survivors. With that, the story shifted to the afternoon. The director was seen sitting outside the building, completely drained, wondering what to do next. They had no manpower left to deal with the vengeful spirit of that little girl. And the only person strong enough to stop her was currently running around in circles wearing a stupid cape while the guards tried to catch him. Watching it all unfold, the director finally lost hope. He slumped down and quietly decided to give up. But that's when Kaka finally snapped. He stormed over to our boy, ready to tell him to start taking things seriously. But instead, he saw him full serious mode like last night. Our boy raised his hand, pointed a finger like a gun, and told Kaka to stop right there. And Kaka, after witnessing what this guy did last night, froze on the spot. For all he knew, maybe the guy could shoot projectiles from his fingers. But 1 second later, the fool broke character, went straight back to being his goofy self, laughing and mocking Kaka for actually falling for it. By then, the director had enough, and he ordered his men to restrain him and drag him to that place with force. And just like that, all the guards started storming our boy, who tried to fight them off. And before he knew it, a full-on brawl broke out. Fast forward, he was seen tied to a pole, being carried to the apartment building where the ghost girl was supposed to arrive. After arriving inside the apartment, the men placed him inside the room where the director instructed everyone to leave since he wanted to converse with the man alone. After they were alone, our boy demanded that he untie him, asking if he even knows who he is messing with. And that is when he hears something completely unexpected, as the director calls him Dong Dong Yao. And just like that, he initiates phase 2 of his plan, telling the fool that he was actually his alien companion, sent to help him complete his intergalactic mission. Hearing those words, the boy froze for a second while the system silently untied the rope wrapped around his body. Before the director could even process what was happening, the fool suddenly stood up and began spouting a string of absolute gibberish, wild hand gestures included. But this wasn't just any random nonsense. Apparently, it was a top-secret code Chen Zhuo had invented to communicate with his fellow alien operatives from headquarters, and unfortunately, the director had been warned about this exact scenario. Problem was, not a single person actually knew how to respond to it. With no better option, the director did the only thing he could. He took a deep breath, committed to the bit, and started blurting out his own matching level of nonsense, then threw in a salute for good measure. Just like that, he waited for the boy's response, wondering if it worked, and surprisingly enough, all that mumbo-jumbo actually worked, and he sees our boy reaching his fist out, calling him an honorable warrior. Seeing that, the man's eyes started welling up. He finally managed to pull it off, and all it took was every last shred of his dignity. But there was no time to lose, so the man got straight to the point. The lovely humans were under attack by a ghost, and he had been specially chosen with the task of dealing with the threat and saving everyone. Hearing that, the boy gave a sharp salute and accepted the mission without hesitation. Just as they were in the middle of their stupidity, Kaka burst in, shouting that they'd just detected a fluctuation in yin energy, and the Deathbringer was on her way. Hearing that, the director rushed out to check the situation. Our boy followed right behind him and saw all the men gathering around, reporting to the director. Watching all that, the fool came to the conclusion that the guy had been working undercover this whole time, infiltrating the foolish humans, and decided he too needed to step up and do his part for the great plan of the planet. But just then, he got distracted by a random toy lying around, and since the thing looked shiny enough, he picked it up and shoved it in his pocket. Meanwhile, the director was still busy with the men, but our hero couldn't care less. Even with something that dangerous headed their way, he was off goofing around the place, treating the crime scene like a playground. But just then, the system showed up, warning him that something dangerous was heading their way. Turning to the others, he saw the men already shaking in fear, watching their detector thingy go wild from all the yin energy spiking through the building. Seeing even his comrades getting spooked, our boy decided to step up and handle whatever it was himself. And before anyone could stop him, he had already flung the door open to see what was out there. But instead of danger, he found a cute little kid just standing there. But the glowing ball of slime quickly warned him not to fall for that face. Turns out, this little girl had been sacrificed by her own parents, and because of that, her resentment was off the charts. And even though it was tragic, they still had to take her down. But the kid wasn't even listening, and casually used the little girl's head as a support to look around in case there was anyone else out there. But turns out, it was just her. Seeing that, he got all serious and told her to listen to what he had to say. And the next second, he was back to using whatever brain cells were left in that messed up head of his, coming up with the dumbest logic ever. He told the girl that the voices in his head were the work of the guy in the white coat, meaning the doctor. And since the white coat guy was the enemy, that made the voices the enemy. And those same voices said she was the enemy. So by that logic, the enemy of his enemy was his friend, which meant she was his friend. Yeah, the system almost had a heart attack hearing that kind of logic. But just then, he saw the child holding up her teddy bear and heard her saying she wanted to play with him. But the moment he looked at the thing in her hand, the guy physically cringed, seeing how disgusting it was. So without a second thought, he smacked the thing right out of her hand, and the bear went flying into the distance, and the girl clearly wasn't happy about that, and started fuming with anger. But before she could explode, the fool casually grabbed her by the arm and started walking her inside the apartment, since it wasn't safe out there for a little girl like her. Little did he know the real danger was her. Meanwhile, the rest of the men were losing it, watching the lunatic strolling around with a bloodthirsty ghost. And just when they thought it couldn't get worse, the guy actually reached into his pants, telling the girl that her doll was disgusting and that he had a way better thing in here for her to play with. Oh, thank God. He was just talking about that same old toy he stashed earlier. Placing the thing on the table, he started showing it off, saying the thing made a sound when turned on, and was curious if it would glow in the dark, and decided to close the curtains to check. But the girl just snapped her finger, telling him there was no need for that. And just like that, everyone was terrified, except for our boy, of course, who was impressed that the kid possessed such an ability and started bragging that he also possessed an ability to turn invisible. But of course, the child refused to believe that. So to prove it, the fool grabbed a sheet, threw it over himself, climbed on the table, and proudly asked if she believed him now. The girl just stared, trying to figure out how she was supposed to react to this level of stupidity, while the idiot kept bouncing around the room thinking no one could see him. Frustrated, the girl gritted her teeth, telling the fool she can clearly see him. Confused, the guy turned to the rest of the people in the room, asking if that was true, but those idiots just stood there shaking their heads, saying they couldn't see anything at all. By then, they were all already shaking in their boots, asking the chief what they should do, and the man just told them to lay low for now. But just then, he turned around and saw the ghost girl right next to his face and froze for a moment. But then as the realization hit, everyone started panicking, screaming their lungs out, seeing the idiot holding the ghost kid in his arms like she was some regular lost child. Next panel, the director was seen on the ground completely unconscious, while the fool was seen running around the room with the ghost girl in his hands. But just then, he noticed something strange, specifically a nail sticking out of her chest, and asked what was up with that. The girl explained that the thing was actually a curse, and then showed him the rest of the nails, saying she had 5 more jabbed into her body. Man, this is just cruel. Even our boy was pissed off, demanding to know who could do something like that to such an innocent child. But the moment she said it was her own parents, he froze on the spot, though she reassured him there was no need to worry, since they were both already dead. Hearing that, our boy decided to pull the things out, since he was sure it was very painful for her to walk around with those things all around her body. But the girl told him these things cannot be pulled out. But of course, our mentally unstable smug bastard disagreed and told her to leave it to him. By then, the director had regained consciousness. But the moment he laid eyes on the scene, he froze again, completely misunderstanding what was happening, thinking that the lunatic was now trying to grope the ghost girl. And just like that, the poor man fainted for the second time, while our boy kept tugging at the nail with his full might, but the thing wasn't budging. So with no other choice, he pinned the girl to the ground, telling her to lie still and let him do his thing. And the next second, he was stepping on her face for leverage, trying to yank the nail out. Seeing him struggling, the system informed him it was pointless. No matter how hard he tried, those things were jabbed deep into her soul, and pulling them out might cause more harm than good. But he knew the fool was never going to listen to him, so he decided to just go along with it and started chanting some incantations to break the seal on the girl's chest so the nail could be pulled out. And just like that, the first nail was out. But the nail wasn't the only thing that came out, because the moment it popped free, some weird dark energy started leaking from the hole, and the girl suddenly began acting strange. And out of nowhere, a huge blast of energy exploded out of her body, and our boy went hurling through the air. Seeing the sight, the rest of the men took cover, while our fool, who had just smashed onto the wall, still had no idea how deep of a trouble he was in. And just like that, the child lunged at him, looking like she had completely lost it. And just as she was about to rip his face off, our boy managed to grab onto her hand and was still thinking of pulling out the rest of the nails. Just like that, it began. Our boy pulling with everything he had, while the system kept chanting those dumb incantations that sounded like complete gibberish. And the two of them somehow managed to sync up and started yanking out the nails one by one. And eventually they made it to the final one, buried right in her head. But that's when the slime ball suddenly panicked, warning him not to touch that one, since it was apparently something called the Heavenly Palace kill position, whatever the hell that meant. But our boy, just like the rest of us, had no idea what that was supposed to be, and went right ahead trying to rip it out anyway. With no other choice, the system gave in and started mumbling his curse removal spell straight onto her head. And just like that, the final nail came flying out and smacked directly into the head of the poor director, who was just trying to quietly hide behind something. But just then, the girl started going full berserk as some kind of dark energy began leaking out of her. And according to the slime ball, she was turning into a vengeful ghost, and the only way to stop her now was if our boy took responsibility for her. But how the hell was he supposed to do that? With the kid going nuts and blowing up everything in the room, even the people were struggling just to keep their feet on the floor. Looking around, the director realized our boy was suddenly nowhere to be seen and started panicking. But that's when he looked up and spotted the idiot flapping his arms like a bird, thinking he was actually flying. And before the man could react, the fool got blasted straight through the window and went plummeting down straight to the ground. Seeing that, the director froze. But right then, a bright red streak of light shot past him and headed straight for the falling moron. And in the final second, a miracle happened. A hand reached out from the light and grabbed onto our boy's wrist. And when he looked up, he saw the same ghost child, who after finally getting rid of her curse had come to save him. With that, both of them floated back into the room, shocking everyone and of course the director, who watched this whole thing unfold. He instantly knew this kid was a goldmine and rushed over asking if he was alright. But before they could even celebrate, something zipped past and nailed our boy straight on. Both of them froze in shock. Even he had no idea what just happened. Whatever it was too fast to see. The next thing the director saw was our boy crying like a toddler over a tiny splinter on his finger. Turns out it was the ghost girl's doing, since she wanted to have a binding ghost contract with our boy and accompany him forever. But of course, our genius lost it. He started yelling at the girl, furious that she stabbed that finger, his handsome, dashing, meat-grabbing hand. Even the ghost system didn't know how to respond to that, so it just bowed out and stayed silent. Next thing he knew, the girl was on her knees, telling him she was going to use the very first gift he gave her, his blood, as the contract seal. Without waiting for his permission, she pressed his finger to her forehead to start the ritual. Everyone saw in amazement as a thick, dark red energy started manifesting all around them. And before they knew it, the child was completely engulfed in that energy, and it started transforming her body into something new. And by the time it was all over, everyone was amazed to see what emerged from that cocoon of energy. It was still her, but somehow even cuter, looking like a brand new upgraded model of adorable ghost kid. With that, the ghost system started celebrating, since our boy had just scored his very first ghost servant. But when it turned toward him, it saw the fool still sulking over his poor little finger. So the system decided to step in. A quick flick of ghostly magic later, and our boy was suddenly seen celebrating his instant recovery. Now fully convinced his powers had leveled up to the point where he could heal wounds on the spot. Meanwhile, the newly transformed child finally turned toward the others in the room, but instead of attacking, she quietly bowed in front of them, showing her respect. Before anyone could even process what was happening, that overpowered little ghost turned into a glowing streak of energy and shot straight into our boy's body. After watching everything, Kaka turned to the director and asked what they should do next, since it was clear the Deathbringer wasn't a threat anymore. In fact, she even showed a bit of gratitude and asked if that meant their mission was actually complete. Before the director could answer, everyone was already gathered around our boy, cheering like maniacs. They just cleared a mission way out of their league, and it was all thanks to him. Even the director was getting emotional, seeing how this goofy-looking guy not only stopped the ghost rampage, but somehow managed to form a bond with her too. And the reason this meant so much to them was simple. Their department was one of the weakest in the city. They were barely equipped to deal with first-tier wandering souls and only a handful of second-tier vengeful ghosts. Anything stronger than that had to be reported to the Soul Restraining Division, and those guys took ages to approve anything, which usually led to unnecessary casualties. The story cuts to the Exorcism Bureau, where the smug director was busy gloating as he proudly called up the Soul Restraining Division just to cancel all their pending support requests. Why? Because now they had their own powerhouse. He made sure to rub it in by slamming the phone down like it was some kind of mic drop. That tiny win over the Soul Restraining Division filled him with pure joy. Man was already celebrating like it actually meant something. Meanwhile, off to the side was his trump card, the straight ticket to his promotion and fame, snoring peacefully without a care in the world. With that, the story fast-forwards a couple of hours. Our boy was seen slowly opening his eyes to the smell of something delicious. Sitting up, he spotted a box of food on the table, along with a note. Curious, he lifted it to see what it was. The moment he read what was written, he started shaking with excitement, eyes sparkling, and just like that, he began screaming at the top of his lungs, feeling pretty proud of his achievements. Turns out, it was a note from his trusty companion, Mr. Director, who'd left the food along with a thank you for handling the little Deathbringer girl, and informed him that the headquarters had even given him a special commendation. But honestly, what I'm more curious about is how a mentally unstable guy managed to read all that. Anyway, the scene cuts once more. We are at a female helpline center, where a few staff members are busy answering calls from people across the city, reporting disturbing ghost sightings. That's when our blonde hero suddenly appears out of nowhere, eyes locked on a bottle of cold drink sitting next to one of the women. The girl was completely startled, seeing some lunatic show up out of thin air. And before she can even react, he points at the bottle and asks if he can have it, explaining with a straight face that he's severely ill, doesn't have much time left, and this thing was the only cure. Hearing that, the poor girl instinctively takes a few steps back, wondering where this weirdo came from. And not wanting to cause a scene, she tells him to knock himself out. But of course, our boy isn't a freeloader. He immediately straightens his back, pulls out some paper, and starts scribbling a powerful talisman as a thank you. Then without warning, he slaps it into her hand, proudly declaring that it's a masterpiece she needs to treasure for the rest of her life, since it'll protect her entire family from ghosts for 3 generations. And without saying a word, the guy started skipping away from the scene like nothing ever happened, leaving the girl sitting there completely baffled. A total stranger had just shown up, taken her drink, and handed her a poorly drawn fish blowing bubbles. She stared at the thing in her hand, still trying to figure out if this was real life. But the other officers nearby, those who had actually seen him in action, looked at her with genuine envy. In their eyes, she hadn't just received a doodle, she'd been handed a rare treasure. The story cut once more, this time to the hallway outside the director's office, where a crowd had gathered. A moment later, the director himself was seen walking back with their next mission in hand, only to spot the entire office staff lined up outside his room. He paused, confused, wondering what was going on. Meanwhile, inside the office, our boy was sitting at the director's desk, staring blankly at the mountain of treats piled in front of him. Turns out, word had gotten around the building about his so-called powerful talismans, and now everyone wanted one. And as a bribe, they'd brought him snacks. Lots of them. Watching it all from the hallway, the director had no idea how to react. These idiots were seriously putting in this much effort just to get their hands on some scribbles that looked like they were drawn by a toddler. Annoyed, he decided enough was enough, and decided to put an end to the ridiculous scene. The moment he appeared, everyone panicked and started scrambling back to their desks. Everyone except for one unlucky bald guy who was still busy trying to get his very own talisman. By the time he noticed the director standing right behind him, it was already too late. Just like that, the director threw everyone out of his office, shouting at them to stop acting like kids and get back to work. Once the scolding was done, he slammed the door shut, ready to return to more important matters. Cut to a second later, and there he was, holding a piece of paper, asking our boy to draw a few talismans for him too. But since he hadn't brought any offerings like the others, our boy just stared at him in silence. Realizing his mistake, the director wasted no time, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a fat stack of cash, telling him he can use this to buy himself several new snacks. Pleased, our boy took the cash and even handed him some snacks, since he was his comrade after all. Just like that, he got to work, drawing the most powerful talisman he had made so far. But then, halfway through, he suddenly paused, watching the director preparing to eat one of the treats. But of course, the director wasn't that heartless. Without missing a beat, he shoved the snack into our boy's mouth, saying he could have it. He wasn't much of a sweets guy anyway. With that, the talisman was finally done. A true masterpiece. A turtle swimming in a pond. He shoved the thing into his pocket, thanked the kid, but there was one more thing he wanted to tell him. Apparently, there had been a series of deaths reported near the East Bridge, and headquarters had assigned both of them to handle the situation together. Hearing that it was a direct order from the headquarters, our boy didn't waste a second. He immediately accepted the mission to investigate the site. Fast forward to the site. The car finally pulled up, and both our boy and the director stepped out. The director began explaining the situation. Several attacks had been reported on this bridge, but they still weren't sure whether the culprit was a ghost or not. The only consistent thing about the victims was that when their bodies were found, they were always missing parts. After laying it all out, he turned to our boy and asked if he could sense any ghostly presence in the area. But our fool, still busy stuffing his mouth with snacks, simply shook his head and said no. But the director wasn't convinced. He pointed toward the distance and told him not to jump to conclusions. Better to scan the whole bridge just to be safe. Hearing that, our boy wasted no time and took off toward the bridge. But then, out of nowhere, he unexpectedly tripped and fell flat on his face. The other officers tensed up immediately, thinking he'd just been attacked by some ghost or cursed spirit. But the director came running in, waving his hands and telling them to calm down. Relax, he just tripped. He helped the guy back to his feet and noticed his nose was bleeding from the fall. But before he could say anything, our boy started crying like a little kid. And because of all the noise and commotion, they ended up drawing the attention of something they weren't prepared for, and none of them noticed the massive shadow slowly creeping up behind them. And just then, our boy heard the system's warning, telling him to look out from the back. At that critical moment, the ghost girl appeared from his body, ready to stop whatever was coming. But instead of helping, she ended up scaring the officers, who mistook her for the threat and took off running in the wrong direction. That is when they saw the real danger. A massive, ancient spirit was now blocking their path. Turned out, the thing was the spirit of a white tiger, a mid-level fierce ghost, and was behind all the incidents in this place. With that, all the officers started running for their lives. Meanwhile, our boy still had no idea what was going on. So the ghost girl stood her ground, ready to protect the weeping fool. But the system knew she was no match for this thing, and told her to consider escaping. But of course, she wasn't about to abandon her master just to save her own skin. Without a second thought, she unleashed her energy and summoned those red tentacle things, wrapping them tight around the tiger's neck. Wasting no time, she pulled with everything she had, trying to restrain the big cat. But it was no use. The thing was way too strong. It just yanked back and with one swing launched her straight into the air. And just like that, it was the tiger versus the humans now, and it was prepared to make a quick snack out of all of them. Wasting no time, the thing leaped straight toward them and landed a clean hit on the group. And just like that, the whole area fell silent as dust and debris filled the air, covering everything. But as the dust cleared, everyone was still standing. Turns out, all those scribbled up talismans made by our boy weren't just silly drawings after all. They actually had power, and now they just saved everyone's life from a full-force attack by a powerful spirit. Meanwhile, the white tiger, completely confused, looked down at its paw, wondering if it had missed or something. So to double-check, the thing started delivering a relentless assault of attacks on all the people. But thankfully, the talismans kept the thing away, and it failed to reach any of them. Seeing that, the group's morale shot up. One by one, they all pulled out their talismans, holding them up together. With all of them combined, a powerful barrier formed across the area, and for the first time, the white tiger actually started backing away in fear. But then, another hand rose from the crowd, not holding a talisman, but reaching straight for the tiger. The tiger watched as the hand stopped right in front of its face, and before it could process what was happening, the hand flicked its forehead, surprising the big cat. Of course, it was our boy. Who else would be dumb enough to try a stunt like that? The director froze too, realizing there was no saving them now. And just like he feared, the massive tiger lost it. It went completely berserk and shattered the barrier with a single devastating blow. Turns out the thing had entered a raging state, and thanks to that, its power had just tripled. Just like that, everyone started running for their lives while the second barrier was still holding up. But then, the director spotted our hero falling flat on his back, right in front of the tiger. Before he could even process what was happening, the tiger had already lunged at him. The director froze in horror, watching it all unfold. But then something unexpected happened. A shadow appeared from behind, stopping the tiger just in time. Yep, you guessed it. It was our beautiful Deathbringer, finally back in the game. And judging by that face, she definitely wasn't playing around anymore. With her powers now amplified after going berserk, the girl pulled the tiger once again. And this time, she actually managed to lift the massive thing into the air. But she wasn't done. She flung the beast away from our hero, sending it straight toward the rest of the group. And the officers watched in horror as the tiger's massive body came plummeting down. And just like that, boom, the thing crash-landed on its back, shaking the ground. By then, our boy was back on his feet. He casually dusted himself off and started walking toward the monster. And before anyone could process what was going through that empty skull of his, the guy actually smacked the kitty's rear, telling it he was going to turn him into his personal mount. Even the system froze, seeing him pull off that stunt. And just as the system had feared, the monster wasn't looking very happy getting his butt slapped by the guy, and it turned to finish him off for good. But thankfully, the system managed to pull him out of the way before he got turned into a pancake. And that's when the fool finally realized the thing was actually trying to eat him. And boy oh boy, he was not happy about that. I mean, here he was trying to give the creature a home to live in, and instead of thanking him, it tried to bite his head off. Seeing him back in action, the system also kicked in and activated his strength boost. and with all his might, our hero delivered a bone-crushing meteor punch straight to the creature's face. The impact was so brutal, the thing got hurled several meters away, crashing through everything in its path. And just like that, with one clean hit, our boy managed to defeat the tiger, who now lay there with a swollen face. But before the beast could even recover from the shock, our boy had already leapt toward him again. And without giving it a second to breathe, he started raining down a barrage of punches right on the tiger's massive body. Meanwhile, in the distance, everyone just stood there watching in horror as he pummeled the poor thing into the ground. And that got them wondering whether they should step in or just let it happen. But just as quickly, it was all over, and they saw our boy standing victorious over the beaten-down tiger, who, by the way, was now officially his shiny new mount. And everyone heard him asking the ferocious thing if it surrendered. And of course, the thing surrendered immediately, begging him to stop. Next panel, boom. Our boy was seen celebrating after unlocking a brand new skill, taming beasts. With that, he told the tiger to get up and start walking, since he wanted to take his new ride for a test run. Meanwhile, the rest of them just stood there, completely out of words. A mid-level fierce ghost, reduced to nothing more than a glorified taxi, while the idiot on its back shouted commands like he was leading a parade. Before anyone could make sense of what was happening, the tiger was already airborne, carrying both of them through the sky, while it glanced back at the two fools with tears in its eyes. 1 minute it was a terrifying spirit of legend, now it was basically a theme park ride. And just like that, all three of them took off, leaving the rest of the officers behind in stunned silence. Snapping out of it, the director yelled at everyone to go after them, but no one had a clue where the three were flying to. Where were they even supposed to go? Realizing he had a point, the director went quiet for a second, then shouted back and ordered the entire team to spread out across the city and start searching. Meanwhile, the three of them had already covered a good chunk of the city while the system tracked the progress of the beast's taming process. And low-key, this progress bar reminds me of Ark. As they cruised through the sky, our boy gave the tiger a pat on the head and casually asked if it could go any faster, and regretted that question immediately, as the tiger shot off like a fighter jet, tearing across the sky at Mach 4. Fast forward a few minutes, they finally landed on top of a building. Turned out it was the same psychiatric hospital where our boy had been staying before his life got interesting. After a long day of eating and goofing around, he was feeling quite tired and decided to call it a night. But just before leaving, he remembered something and stopped. Walking back over to the tiger, he made some overly dramatic hand gestures in the air and pretended to put an imaginary leash around its neck, just in case it tried to run off while he was asleep. The tiger had no clue what this fool was doing, but still chose to play along, trailing behind him like a confused bodyguard. Eventually, they made it down to the ground, where our boys started tying the massive tiger to a pole using that same imaginary leash, and even added a little bell for it to play with. Then he gave the tiger a pat, telling it this was home now, and with sparkling eyes, he declared that as long as the great planetary warrior Dong Dong Yao was here, no one would ever bully him again. And with that, both of them turned to leave, while the tiger just sat there in silence, staring at the two weirdos walking off into the night. And this was his chance to finally escape the two idiots. At least that's what he thought. The moment they weren't looking, he took off into the sky, thinking he'd quietly fly away and disappear. But just then, something unexpected yanked him right back to reality. Literally, that imaginary leash? Yeah, turns out it wasn't all that imaginary. It worked like a real one. And just like that, he got slammed back into the ground, totally confused and maybe questioning the laws of physics. Fast forward to the next morning. A loud scream echoed from one of the rooms inside the hospital. It was a nurse. She just walked in and found our boy peacefully sleeping in bed. And the reason she just screamed was because this fool was supposed to be with the exorcism bureau. Panicking, she rushed over and started bombarding him with questions. How did he get back here? When did he sneak in? How did no one see him? That is when she noticed a bruise on his hand and went quiet. She asked if it was the bureau people who did this to him, but our boy, trying not to tear up, just muttered that he fell while playing. But the girl wasn't buying it. In her head, it was already a full-blown abuse case. She figured he was too scared to speak up and decided the bureau must have bullied him. Fast forward a couple of hours. Over at the doctor's office, the director and Kaka were getting chewed out. The man wasn't pleased, seeing how irresponsible their department was since they let a psychiatric patient disappear from right under their noses. So the director tried explaining what happened, but it only made things worse since these fools spent the whole night searching all around the city while the person they were searching for was back at the hospital on his own. Meanwhile, the fool himself was outside the hospital, enjoying a snack like he hadn't just caused an international headache. That's when the green blob, aka the system, came floating over and started nagging him again. Apparently, he was still refusing treatment for his very treatable mental illness, and there was still time to fix him. But like always, he just shooed the goo ball away like an annoying fly. Right then, he spotted a familiar face walking into the building, Miss Beautiful Officer. Wasting no time, he waved her over, calling her little ball, and casually mentioned he went to her workplace but didn't see her there. The girl explained she was on a break since she had to visit the hospital. Curious, he asked why. That's when she finally admitted something serious. After what happened the last time they met, she'd gotten herself checked since he pointed out something was wrong with her chest, and found out she didn't have much time left to live. But a moment that could have been emotional got derailed in seconds. The guy, completely unfazed, smiled and told her none of that mattered to him. Then, with all the sincerity of a goldfish, he held out his hand and asked if they could be good friends from now on. Hearing his words, the girl started tearing up, telling him there was no point. She didn't have much time left anyway. But even so, she didn't want to go just yet. She explained there was still so much she hadn't done, like her job at the police station. She still wanted to protect people from ghosts. But when she looked up at him again, she realized he hadn't heard a single word. He was just staring at her with that same clueless, blank expression. But out of nowhere, he casually sat down next to her, saying this was nothing compared to the mighty planetary warrior Dong Dong Yao. For a second, the girl actually saw a flicker of hope in her eyes. And in the next second, that hope faded just as fast as she saw the guy picking up the water bottle and started shaking it like a maniac and chanted some nonsense gibberish. Watching this mess unfold, the system was clearly fed up, reminding him he was a serious spirit, not a scam artist. But since the guy wasn't listening, the green goo gave up and actually blessed the water bottle with his magic to cure the girl's illness. Just like that, the clueless fool handed her the bottle, proudly announcing that it was a healing potion capable of curing her illness. The girl just stared at the thing with confusion while the fool told her to drink it all in one go, otherwise the magic wouldn't work. With no other choice and way too much pity, she twisted off the cap and chugged it down in one breath, only to nearly cough up blood right after. The taste was something out of a nightmare. Meanwhile, the sparkling idiot just stood there beaming at her, waiting for her reaction. Catching her breath, she turned to him with a dead stare, saying there was sand in the water and she didn't feel any special effects other than that. But our hero, completely unfazed, nodded seriously and told her that based on his expert analysis of her fun bags, her illness had already been cured. But of course, she had no way of knowing he was actually telling the truth, so she got up to leave. But just before walking away, she gently patted his head and thanked him for at least trying. After some time, she was seen walking around the place when she came across the director. The man, noticing tears in her eyes, informed her he received her resignation letter and wasn't going to approve it. So the girl tried to explain the situation to him, but the man refused to even listen to a single word. He told the girl he was aware of what she was going through and knew full well this happened to her because of the kind of work they do. Still, he reminded the girl this was their duty, that they needed to keep the citizens of their city safe from evil spirits, which is why he couldn't let her go. He informed her that he knows how much she loves this job of hers and has given everything for the police force, and that is why the department won't accept her resignation letter and abandon her in such a time, since they are a family. And with that, he told the girl to take this time off as a vacation and do whatever she wants and go wherever she wants. The police force will cover all expenses. With that, the man saluted the girl, thanking her for everything she did for the department and the city. And just like that, he started walking away while the girl stood there, grateful for everything. With that, he finally spotted our fool, who was still in the middle of his weird dances, lost in his own world. So he told him to get down before he got hurt and showed him a gift he brought for him. Turns out it was a brand new phone, but of course, in our boy's eyes, it wasn't just a phone. It was a planetary signal receiver. Apparently, the doctor had refused to hand him over to the police force, so this was the next best thing. The director bought him the phone so they could at least stay in touch in case something serious came up. Fast forward, he was now heading back to the station alongside Kaka and making small talk. That's when Kaka brought up a recent case about a missing person, but the director reminded him they were already swamped with ghost-related chaos across the city and suggested they leave this one to the regular police. Kaka disagreed. He said this case was different. The person involved was special and people are suspecting this might be the work of ghosts. That's why the station didn't want to touch it. But before they could get deeper into the details, the director's phone started ringing. He checked the screen and there it was, a fresh picture sent by our fool. Just seeing it made him instantly regret giving that man a phone, and worse, showing him how to use it. Now the guy wouldn't stop calling him. Frustrated, and with no better option, the director calmly rolled down the window and tossed the phone out without a second thought. Later that night, our boy was lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, but no luck. Frustrated, he called the ghost girl and asked what they were supposed to do now since he couldn't sleep. Turns out, she had a plan. Next thing you know, he was seen climbing down the building using her powers like Rapunzel's hair, despite the fact that she could have just flown him down herself, and he dropped straight onto the tiger spirit, scaring the life out of the poor thing. And just like that, the whole group was seen flying out of the place. And I can already tell this will not end well. Sure enough, not far from them, the ghost girl noticed something weird and pointed it out to our boy. When he looked down, he saw a man walking around with a woman tied up, just casually carrying her like it was no big deal. So to check it out, all three of them landed right beside him. The man looked at them, gave a blank stare, and without saying a single word, turned around and started walking away like ghosts, and floating kids were just part of his daily routine. After he was gone, our boy turned to the tiger and started smacking him for not hiding properly, claiming it was his fault they got exposed. But the ghost girl had noticed something strange about that guy. She told our boy that the man's 3 yang flames were way too weak, even weaker than someone on their deathbed, but our hero had no idea what that meant. So the girl explained. Those flames, one on each shoulder and one on the forehead, represent a person's life force. It's how you tell someone's alive. Confused, our boy asked if that was the case. Then where were her flames, and was reminded that she was a ghost and ghosts don't have those, since they are not alive. But on the other hand, he did possess those. That is when the system activated his spiritual vision, and he noticed flames hovering around him. He started panicking, thinking that he was on fire, while the system tried to calm him down. But ignoring his yelling, the girl kept her focus on the man they just saw and wondered if she should follow him to see where he went. But before she could even bring it up, our boy had already taken off, sprinting after the man with both of them in hand like a kid chasing down an ice cream truck. Fast forward, they managed to tail the guy to some rundown building and saw him entering the place with the girl. Seeing that the door was still halfway open, our boy started rushing, hoping to slip in before the thing closes, but instead, he slammed face first into the door and landed flat on his ass. Meanwhile, the man was making his way deeper into the building and came across a room at the very back. And just as he entered the place, he was greeted by 3 ghostly figures who seemed surprised seeing him come back so soon and asked what he was betting this time. Without even flinching, the man bets his own life, but the entities reminded him his lifespan was almost gone and was worthless to them. So the man showed them the girl he abducted, saying he was willing to add her life with his. Finally free, the girl started looking around to see what was going on, and the moment her eyes landed on the 3 figures standing in front of her, she froze in horror. Panicking, she tried freeing herself, but it was no use. Just like that, the bet was made, and the entities started the ritual. A strange smoke started filling up the whole room, and within seconds, the 3 entities appeared in front of them in their human form. That is when a rather healthy-looking female sitting in the front called the man disgusting for gambling away someone else's life just to save his, but the scum could care less. He was already at the brink of death and had only a few days left to live since he had gambled away most of his life to these 3 many times in the past. Meanwhile, outside the building, the green blob was seen warning our hero that this place was dangerous and suggested he turn around immediately before getting caught in some mess he couldn't handle. But before he could even finish that sentence, a quick whack on his face and he was sent flying into oblivion. With that, the blob watched as the fool tried to scale the wall of the building despite owning 2 ghosts who literally had the ability to fly. After struggling for a bit, he finally managed to get inside and started running around the place looking for the man. After some searching, they finally tracked him down and noticed he wasn't alone. Curious, all 3 of them peeked into the room through the window to check what was going on, and that's when their eyes landed on the 4 inside, who were busy playing some kind of game. And the woman with massive melons immediately sensed their presence and realized that someone was watching them from the outside but decided to stay quiet for now. Meanwhile, the man lost his first game, but still not giving up, he challenged the 3 of them again. Just like that, several hours passed and our boy was completely pooped with their back and forth in there. Meanwhile, inside, the man was already trembling and was looking a lot older than before, after losing so much of his life. But the ghosts in front of him kept pressing him to play more, knowing full well there was no way he'd ever win against them. After some time, the man was seen walking out of the room after losing every last game and was certain there was no saving him anymore. That's when our boy noticed that his flames were starting to shrink, and his body was beginning to wither away. As they were distracted by that, they heard a voice from the back calling for his attention. Turning around, he saw something beautiful and terrifying at the same time, as the female putting her healthy-looking twins on display asked if he would like to play a game with them. But our boy wasn't afraid and apologized to the female for sneaking into her house like this. But the little girl beside him, though, wasn't fooled. She sensed something was off and tried to warn him, but our boy insisted that he wanted to play a game with them. Just like that, all 3 of them entered the place. But before he could make his way to the table, he noticed something lying on the ground. Turning to the spot, he saw that same beautiful woman from earlier, and after losing most of her life, she wasn't looking too beautiful anymore. But the male ghost told him to just ignore that and sit down so they could start the game, and asked what it was that he desired and what he was willing to bet for it. That's when the kid asked what the man who came in earlier had bet. Then he saw the beautiful ghost lady coming closer to his face, saying that man bet his life. Pointing to the girl on the ground, she told our hero that if he lost the game, both his and that girl's life would belong to them. But on the other hand, if he managed to win, he'd obtain a long life and riches beyond measure, and asked if he was willing to give it a try. Seeing that dumb look on his face, the system knew exactly what was going on in that empty head of his. Absolutely nothing. So it tried to warn him to refuse the offer and just take the 3 of them out instead. But of course, the obvious happened. The boy blurted out that he wanted to bet his life. Just like the last guy, except this time, there was a condition. And the second he mentioned the condition, all 3 of them froze. He wanted to gamble his life with a game of Draw the Turtle. Seeing their faces, the guy casually informed them not to underestimate it. This was the only gambling method officially recognized by the Great Planet Warriors. With that, the system summoned a deck of cards into his hand and started explaining the rules. Remove the Joker and the 8 of Hearts. Keep only 1 King and 1 8. Then split the deck evenly. Both players take turns drawing from each other's hands, discarding any matching pairs. The one left holding either the last King or the last 8 loses. Without waiting for their answer, he started dealing the cards in front of them. And just like that, the game was on. And naturally, our boy ended up with the worst hand in the deck. Sensing that things could get messy fast, the system decided to step in and handle things directly. Just like that, it was the first opponent's turn to draw. And of course, the guy went straight to cheating, activating his X-ray vision to peek at the cards. But unfortunately for him, he was up against the blob of goo, the most powerful ghost system in the world. Because of that, his ability failed on the spot. Realizing his trick wasn't working, the man froze, confused about what went wrong. But since it was still his turn, he had no choice but to draw. So he picked a card anyway, and the second he pulled out a 7 of Hearts, the system casually used his power to turn it into a joker, and the poor guy was left speechless, wondering if this kid was using some kind of a trick against him. Concerned, he turned towards the bald guy, telepathically warning him he couldn't see through the kid's cards, and heard him suggesting not to act too rashly and keep playing for now. Fast forward, our boy was seen happily humming while the two men looked visibly terrified, seeing how they kept getting terrible cards every time. Just like that, our hero was left with only one card in hand and was confident he was going to win. So, wasting no time, he started reaching for the beauty sitting in front of him to draw the final card and end the game. But for some reason, the girl didn't look worried in the slightest and was confident there was no way she would lose to this guy. And just as she had thought, the guy started reaching for the exact card she wanted him to choose. But just as our boy pulled that card, the system did its thing again and changed the card to something else. And just like that, all three of them were left speechless, seeing that the kid actually managed to beat all of them. The woman herself was shocked since she was certain she saw him pulling the king. But in the next second, that king turned into a 3-point, but since they had wagered their lifespans and lost, all three of them started changing into hideous creatures after losing the bet. Still, there was no way they were letting the one responsible for this walk away so easily, and they prepared to end him for good. Now just then, both of them heard the door behind them slamming shut on its own, and turning towards the three of them, they realized they were in deep, deep trouble. Sensing how serious things had gotten, the system stepped forward and warned the three to stay back. But when it turned to the fool standing behind him, it saw the guy was completely clueless about the danger. In fact, he was casually reaching for the door, and since the system had boosted his strength earlier, the idiot managed to rip the entire door off its hinges with nothing but a light push and froze in place. Clearly shocked, he slowly turned to the three ghosts behind him to apologize for the door. But by then, the three were at their limit. They were already struggling to stay calm, and seeing someone with such overwhelming power continuing to act like a clueless idiot felt like a mockery. Realizing a fight was now unavoidable, the ghost system quickly called in reinforcements, the big cat and the little girl. In an instant, both appeared in the room, ready to intervene. The moment the three ghosts saw the big cat, they froze, instantly recognizing that thing and realizing they were way out of their league. But just as they thought it was over for them, the idiot struck again, and this time, he slapped the tiger across the face for yelling at their hosts. After scolding the beast, he casually told the girl to go fetch some snacks for their honored hosts as an apology for breaking the door and yelling at them. And would you look at that, he was actually using the tiger as a snack bag, stuffing treats into its fur like it was totally normal. Ignoring that disaster, he leaned down and whispered to the little girl, "Just grab a little something that tastes bad, leave the good stuff." Meanwhile, the three ghosts were utterly speechless watching this guy use such a powerful spirit as his personal snack machine, since the last time they had encountered that very same tiger was at Dongda Bridge, and back then it had nearly torn all three of them to shreds. As they were still trying to process what they were seeing, the guy casually strolled up to them, snacks in hand, offering them as compensation for the earlier rudeness. With a friendly smile, he suggested they continue playing their game. But before that, there was something far more important to take care of. Since they were friends now and all, he suggested they should definitely take a group photo to commemorate this moment. Meanwhile, the three ghosts huddled together, whispering among themselves, still unsure whether this was all some elaborate act or if the guy truly was this insane, and came to a reluctant conclusion: just endure him for now and play along. Just like that, a group selfie was taken and uploaded on the internet. With that, the story shifts to our fat director of the department who had been working all day, buried under a pile of paperwork, completely exhausted. With the desk still covered in files to be processed, he did what any responsible boss would do in his position. He transferred all his work to his subordinate, specifically Kaka, and started browsing through his phone to see what was going on in the outside world. That is when he stumbled upon our boy's selfie from earlier and paused to see what he was up to. But as he looked closer, he spotted three unfamiliar figures in the back and started wondering who they were. That's when it finally clicked and he froze in shock. He almost destroyed his family jewels as his phone landed right in the middle of his legs. But there was no time to waste. He got on his computer to check if his suspicions were correct, and just as he had thought, these three were number 3 on the most wanted list in their district. Realizing that the retarded fool might actually be in danger, he pressed the big red button on his table, warning the whole department, and announced to everyone to prepare to head out. Meanwhile, the fool was still in the middle of a game with the three ghosts and was winning every single round thanks to the ghost system. Even the captured girl beside him was back to her healthy self, with all her fat returned to all the right places on her body. But the three ghosts still had no clue what was going on, since this guy had almost drained all their lifespan and was even about to drain their cultivation. So with no other choice, they decided they couldn't let this go on any longer and prepared to do something about him. The system noticed that something was up and tried to warn the fool, but it was no use. The guy was already reaching for the cards in the woman's hand. As soon as he touched the cards, a bright green light covered the whole place, and the next second he found himself teleported to some entirely other place in time. Scanning their surroundings, the system came to the conclusion that this place was the domain of the three ghosts, and judging by the location, he deduced it was a scene from their past memories. Realizing how screwed they were, he warned the kid to take this seriously and find a way to escape. Otherwise, he was going to end up losing his life. But in the very next second, the fool was seen sprinting off somewhere else while the ghost system desperately tried to stop him. Eventually, he came across a crowd of people gathered around, claiming that the person in front of them had stolen something and was refusing to admit it. On the ground was a man completely beaten and bruised, insisting that he hadn't done anything wrong. Turns out, it was one of the three ghosts, the short one, and the poor guy was actually crying from how they were treating him just because of his appearance. That's when our overconfidently clueless fool finally jumped into action to save the day, landing right in the middle of the crowd. He turned to face the accusers with an ominous smile that somehow managed to scare them, at least for a second. Then, completely ruining the moment, he started doing some weird dance ritual around the small man, chanting utter nonsense. The crowd began backing away, thinking this idiot might be suffering from some contagious disease. And using the distraction, our boy grabbed the tiny man by the wrist and bolted, shouting that they still needed to finish their card game. Meanwhile, the system, who had been watching everything from a distance, finally understood why this ghost harbored such deep resentment toward humans. It was because he had been bullied his entire life for his looks. And if our boy had joined in on the bullying here, he would have been consumed by the ghost's hatred like everyone else. Meanwhile, the tiny ghost was still lost in thought, unsure of what to do since this was the first time anyone had ever stood up for him. Out of nowhere, he pulled his arm away, surprising our hero. Just then, a portal appeared, and the tiny man told him to go through it, saying that someone was waiting for him on the other side. With that, the story shifts outside a massive mansion. Inside, a woman was seen watching someone perform on stage, and from the clothes, we already know who it is. It was the same female ghost from earlier, who is now offering tea to the man and praising his spectacular performance. And under all that powder and makeup, it is that same third male ghost from the gang, who humbly thanked the woman for her kindness. Meanwhile, outside the same villa, someone was seen kicking open the door in anger. It was the commander and also the husband of the female ghost who had heard rumors of her affair with the dancer beside her. Enraged beyond words, he stormed in and slapped the woman in front of everyone for cheating on him. But he wasn't done. He then kicked the man straight in the groin, smashing it so badly he'd never be able to use it again. After he was done taking out his anger on both of them, he ordered his men to arrest both of them for public execution. And of course, in the very back was our clueless fool watching everything in confusion, wondering what was going on. Just like that, the beatdown began. All the guards started mercilessly smashing the poor man on the ground. Meanwhile, the girl, still acting clueless, mocked the bald man, asking why he was suddenly behaving like a barbarian out of nowhere. And just then, boom, a powerful kick landed right in her ribs the next second, shocking everyone. And the woman went flying across the floor, crashing into the distance. Seeing that, the man finally snapped. He shielded the girl and admitted everything. He called the bald man a monster for forcing the girl to marry him and then beating her senseless every single day just for fun. After exposing the man for who he truly was, he pulled the trembling girl into his arms, knowing full well they were both about to be executed. And just as he had thought, the man was just waiting for their confession and pulled up a gun right then and there to send both lovers to the afterlife together. With the gun aimed and death inevitable, the couple froze. There was no escaping now, but then our hero burst onto the scene just in time. Without missing a beat, he lunged forward and headbutted the bald man right in the ribs, shocking both lovers. The impact was so brutal that a few of the bald man's ribs shattered on the spot, sending him flying through the floor like a rag doll. Standing on top of the man, he demanded that he let his card buddies go and warned him he will only count to 3. But the bald bastard just scoffed and shouted back, asking if he had a death wish or something. But our boy ignored him completely and began counting. Seeing this, the baldy snapped and ordered his men to catch that scoundrel. And just like that, both lovers watched in shock as this complete stranger started taking on an entire squad, all for the sake of 2 people he barely even knew. Seeing this, the woman gave out a small chuckle, amused with the whole situation. And to the man's surprise, she burst out laughing at the absurdity. Turning to him, she said this was the first time in over 20 years she had felt this free, watching someone stand up to the commander. With hope in her eyes, she told the man she didn't want to live in fear anymore, trapped in this prison of a home, and begged him to take her away. Hearing her words, the man wasted no time and picked up his spear from the ground, and vowed to fight off all the guards, take her away, and make her his bride. Just like that, he charged toward the enemy, and with one swift motion, took out several men in a single blow. Even our boy was impressed by how skilled he was, but the system, not so enthusiastic, because it knew the truth. This place was meant to recreate the ghost's past, and if anything upset the memory, anyone trapped inside would die instantly. Still, somehow, the presence of our boy gave the ghost a new perspective, but even that didn't mean a happy ending, since the outcome of this memory was inevitable no matter what they did. With that, the man lunged at the bald commander, ready to end it once and for all. But just then, a guard appeared out of nowhere, wielding a massive sword, and with one swift, merciless swing, everything went silent. The man froze, motionless, as the blade sliced clean through him. The next thing our boy saw was blood splattering all around him, and he froze in horror. Turns out, no matter what route he had taken, this fate was sealed. And the last thing he saw before everything went black was the poor girl screaming in agony. Fast forward. He finally regained consciousness and found himself tied to a pole, ready to be executed. That's when he heard the girl apologizing, blaming herself for dragging him into this mess. But the stupid fool wasn't even paying attention to her words. That's when the system showed up, telling him the same thing again. Back then, one of the lovers got beheaded and the other was burned at the stake. And now, the memory was going to repeat itself, ending in the exact same way. Just then, our boy spotted a growing crowd of people gathering around the pole, all siding with the commander and demanding they be executed for what they did. Without waiting, one of the men threw a burning piece of wood straight at them, and the pole caught fire instantly. Watching everything unfold, our boy finally snapped because he knew the real truth behind the three ghosts. And with a sudden burst of power, he broke through all his restraints like they were nothing. Wasting no time, he reached for the same pole they were tied to and shouted that neither of the lovers did anything wrong. The ones truly in the wrong were all of them. Just like that, he pulled the massive thing straight out of the ground. Watching this sudden display of power, everyone started running, trying to escape, but it was no use. Our boy was already using the thing like a massive matchstick, lighting up the buildings around him one by one. Fast forward again, he was now seen walking in the middle of the whole chaos like a true villain, completely unfazed. That's when he came across the three ghosts once more. They came to thank him for everything he did for them since they'd been stuck in here for so long and never even considered there might be another way. That's why they held so much resentment against everyone. But our hero just looked at them and said, "This is the real way. If someone insults you, just fight back." And with that, he started walking away from them with final words. "One thing I know now, you three were never the problem. This messed up world was." With that, the memory faded away and everything went back to normal, like nothing ever happened. Seeing this, our boy told them all to draw their cards, but after going through all that, none of them felt like playing anymore. And that only pissed our boy off even more. He grabbed the shorty and started screaming, asking if he was backing away just because he was losing. Just like that, he threw him back down, demanding they all keep playing. Meanwhile, all four of them just sat there, watching the fool doing his usual stupidity. Seeing no way out, the poor female started crying, begging him to stop, since all three of them were almost out of cultivation, and if he kept draining them like this, they were going to disappear forever. Luckily for them, by then the exorcism police had already arrived at the scene to apprehend the spirits. Wasting no time, they smashed through the main gate to rescue our boy. But the moment they stormed inside, every single one of them froze at the sight before them. The happy little fool was casually sitting there with the three ghosts, laughing it up over a game. To their shock, when he noticed them coming in, the kid even waved and invited them to join for a round. The ghosts sitting behind him, however, weren't as welcoming as him and didn't appreciate seeing the kid inviting more people to join in the game. So without any warning, all three of them lunged straight towards the chief, which caught the men completely off guard, and they were left with no time to get out of the way. But then boom! In the blink of an eye, all three of them were on the floor. Before the men could make sense of what was going on, they saw all three of the ghosts begging to be taken away from this crazy man before he drained them completely of their life force. That's when the chief heard Kaka's voice shouting in confusion. Those vengeful ghosts had been completely drained of their energy and were now barely clinging on. Upon asking what happened to all their power, the female ghost, while sobbing, pointed toward the lunatic sitting in the distance, explaining that he had taken all their cultivation. Our hero, on the other hand, completely unfazed, just shrugged and told them not to blame him for their bad luck. That's when the chief's eyes landed on the hostage girl standing beside him, sobbing and desperately asking for help. Once they untied her, Kaka instantly recognized the girl, since she was none other than the missing daughter of the Wu family, the powerful real estate tycoons. So he quickly whispered this to the chief, explaining her identity and what it meant. They had just stumbled into solving a high-profile missing person case. Realizing that, both men exchanged a mischievous grin, already imagining how much this was going to boost their department's reputation, all thanks to our boy. Next panel, the three ghosts were seen being taken away while they thanked the fat man for saving them from that psycho, promising to behave from now on. That's when the fat man got approached by our hero, who was also preparing to head back to get some sleep. But just then, the man stopped him, pointing out that it was pouring and suggested he take one of their cars instead. The kid shrugged it off, explaining that those black boxes of theirs were just too slow for him, so he'd be heading out on his own. But after they left, Kaka rushed to the chief, telling him to stop them, since from the reading he was getting on their device, he could see that the two ghosts with that kid both had somehow advanced. One's power was now at mid-stage fierce, while the other had already reached late stages. But it was already too late, and they just stood there watching him leave, while wondering how this kid even manages to pull these things off. With that, the story cuts to the next day, and the kid, for some reason, wasn't looking very good. That's when he sensed a presence approaching him from the side. Upon opening his eyes, he saw a dark figure standing right beside his bed with a massive syringe in its hand. Sensing the threat, the kid instantly sprang up to fight the person off, but the man proved too fast for him, and he easily managed to move out of the way. But the kid was far from done, and he turned back to the man to try and attack him once more. Then he heard some of the nurses drawn to the room by all the commotion to see what was going on. That's when they heard the kid pointing to the man, calling him A Yuan, who had just tried ambushing him in his sleep. Turns out this man was actually another doctor in this place who was acting as our boy's attending physician. Seeing the man, the nurses instantly switched sides, and before the kid could even process the situation, they all jumped him from behind. With that, he was completely immobilized, and he knew right then and there that he was done for. Turning his head, he saw the man slowly walking toward him, holding that ridiculously massive syringe in his hand, one that would make even the bravest soil their pants. and that was the last thing he saw before his agonizing screams echoed through the entire hallway. Fast forward, the kid was seen sulking on his bed while Dr. Lee was on a call with the exorcism police, who were informing about how Chenro managed to escape last night from the hospital, and he was not happy that he was just now being informed about this. He spent the entire call blaming the man on the other end for letting the kid wander around at night, never mind that it was the hospital's fault for letting him slip out in the first place. While shouting at the man, he completely failed to notice the kid, who was supposed to stay in his room to recover, casually walking past him without him even realizing it. After some time, the kid was seen outside, still sobbing over the fact that those nurses took Ayuan's side instead of his. Just then, Yuyu's voice called out from behind, snapping him out of his thoughts. She handed him a pile of snacks she'd brought just for him, a little thank you for everything he'd done. Turns out she had gone back to the hospital for another checkup after their last meeting and discovered that miraculously, her illness had completely vanished, all thanks to that water he made her drink. But our boy shrugged it off, saying it was nothing, and reminding her that they were friends after all. Seeing him act so casual, even after saving her life, made her blush, and she couldn't help but feel a little giddy. On top of that, she dug into his past and learned that he'd been abandoned as a child because of his congenital mental illness, and grew up in a psychiatric hospital with almost no contact with the outside world. That's why she decided to look out for him even more from now on. So yeah, I can say waifu officially secured successfully. But just as she was lost in her thoughts, she got startled by another voice from the distance calling for our hero, and saw a beautiful girl with massive melons running towards both of them. Neither of them had any clue who this girl was, so she reminded our boy that just last night, he saved her life from those ghosts, which was why she came here to thank him. Hearing that, our boy in the system recalled the girl from last night who was tied up in the room with them and realized she was the same person. But seeing how she came to thank him, the kid wasn't quite thrilled. Turns out, he was angry about the fact that she came empty-handed, not a single snack or treat as a thank you, even after he'd saved her life. With that, the story cuts to the outside of the place, where the fat man was screaming at the guard for not allowing him to pass through the gate, even though he was the director of the Exorcism Bureau. But the man just shouted back, informing him that their director had specifically instructed him to prevent the Exorcism Bureau from entering and stealing people from the hospital. So in order to enter, he must first ask for permission from the director himself. Seeing how that old bastard was accusing him of stealing people, the director wasn't exactly happy. But just then, he spotted the man himself in the distance and started waving for his attention, asking him to tell the guard to let them through. Approaching the gate, the man asked if he registered for this sudden visit and saw the director showing him some papers, telling him he did. But the old man asked if those papers had his seal and was reminded he couldn't even get in, so how was he supposed to get his seal from standing out here? But the answer was still no, since they needed to follow procedures. By then, even the man behind him was starting to wonder what was going on between them, since he was clearly messing with them on purpose. Hearing that, the fat man snapped at the man since he was embarrassing him in front of his guest, telling him he should just stamp the thing for them, since he was already here, only for him to calmly admit he didn't even bring the stamp today. Furious at his antics, the man grabbed him by the collar, but trying to keep his cool, apologized for causing trouble for the hospital in the past. But the old man was still not budging and told him their hospital doesn't welcome him. With no other choice, the fat man mentioned the person who came with him this time, the chairman of Fengyang Rail Estate, the richest man in Jinhai City. He explained that last night, Chenro had saved the chairman's daughter, so he had come here to thank the kid. Hearing that he was a billionaire, the old man's tone instantly changed, and he quickly told his men to open the gate for the nice man. Soon after, the three of them were seen walking into the hospital, with the doctor apologizing for the earlier mess, saying that he and the director were good friends and occasionally joked around. Meanwhile, our boy was seen throwing a bone at the girl, telling her to scram. That was when the three men walked in and caught the scene. Seeing Yu finally back in good health, the director was over the moon. As for the blonde girl, she ran crying to her father, saying she tried to thank the kid, but instead he threw a bone at her. The doctor quickly assured her he would teach the boy a lesson, but there was no way our boy was going down without a fight, so he instantly got up, ready to take on the man. Seeing him so angry, the old man instantly changed his tone and slouched back, making an excuse that the boy was sick and had been injected with some medicine just that morning, which was why he was hard to control right now. So the director suggested he try to talk to the kid instead. Approaching our boy, he asked if something was bothering him since the girl was clearly trying to thank him. The kid replied that the little balls over there brought a lot of food she prepared with her own hands as a thank you, while these two came empty-handed. Hearing that, the fat man apologized to the kid for being so careless, explaining they had rushed over here and didn't prepare a proper gift for him. Then, reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a blank check and told the kid to write whatever amount he wanted as a token of his gratitude. The poor kid had no idea what the man was talking about and started recalling a scene from a movie he had seen, where a man was talking about a check. Recalling the scene fully, the kid suddenly sprang up in excitement. The doctor, however, seeing him acting this way, immediately blamed the poor director again, muttering that he was a bad influence since around him, the kid had already become materialistic in such a short time. Taking the thing, the kid started muttering some random absurd amount of gibberish numbers, and after making up his mind, he started scribbling something on the whole thing. After he was done, he turned to the man with sparkling eyes, telling him he was done. But as the fat man took the check to see the amount, the poor tycoon started shaking in his boots seeing the numbers, since it was an amount even he, the richest man in the city, couldn't afford. With no other choice, he turned to the two men asking what to do, since he clearly wanted to build a close relationship with the kid but couldn't pay him this much money. To that, the director stepped up once more, assuring the man not to worry about anything, he would handle the rest. With that, he approached the kid, suggesting that instead of that piece of paper which held no value, he asked for something else, something physical, which he always wanted. No boy, the things he wanted were definitely more dangerous than the numbers on that check. But then for some reason, he started drooling over the thought of beautiful Yu in a wedding dress. With that, he made up his mind. Wiping the nosebleed, he thanked the man, saying that because of him, he had just remembered the one thing he desired most. With all the confidence in the world, he told the fat man that he wanted a black box. The man had no idea what he was talking about, so the director explained that the kid was asking for a car. That surprised the fat man, since there was no way someone like this could be sane enough to own a car. Even the director tried to persuade the kid to ask for something else, but he refused to budge. Seeing no other way, the fat man said he didn't mind getting him a car, but he would first need to get permission from Director Zhao and the hospital. Seeing that the fat man had dumped everything on them, both men fell into thought, unsure what to do. That was when our boy walked up to the director. Noticing his hesitation, the kid asked if he had switched sides with the humans and betrayed him. Realizing that his friendship with the kid was at stake here, the director quickly agreed that the kid should most definitely be allowed to own a car, but also made it clear that the final decision belonged to the doctor, since he was his warden. Hearing that, the kid turned and started walking toward the man, clearly about to force an answer out of him. Seeing his expression, the doctor grew terrified and instantly agreed to let him have a car, but added one condition: he would need a driver. Hearing the condition, the kid prepared to punch some sense into the doctor, but was stopped by the director. The director explained that the doctor was right. People of status such as himself always hire drivers. Just then, Yu stepped up, offering to fill that role. The director was on board with the idea, knowing that with her around, the kid's ties with their department would only grow stronger. Meanwhile, the smug bastard who had clearly fallen for the girl but didn't realize it because of his messed up head, asked if that would mean she'd be his. But before he could finish, the system shouted at him not even to think about it. Hearing that, the kid fell silent and quietly sat back on the bench. But then he repeated his question. But this time he asked if that would make her his disciple. That sudden twist shocked everyone, but the director urged her to answer quickly and tell him yes. So she agreed, thanking him for taking her as his disciple. Oh look, even the system is getting emotional, since this way he would get to spend time around a sane person. Hearing her answer, the kid started reaching into his pants, ready to give her something in return. But the system stopped him, saying he had something better for her. With that, he handed the kid a bell, but not just any bell. It was a 100 ghost bell, basically an overpowered ghost repellent. Meanwhile, the girl had no idea what to say, holding the tiny bell in her hand. Then the director snatched it from her, and upon taking a closer look, he was left stunned, as he explained that this bell was called the 100 ghost bell, and even fierce-level ghosts couldn't get near a person with it. But our boy immediately snatched it back, reminding the director this was a gift for the little ball, not him. The greedy old man, however, asked if it would be possible to take in another disciple, but the answer was no, the reason being he was too old. Ouch. Meanwhile, the fat man, who had been silently watching everything, started thinking about the value of that item. The bell was practically a priceless treasure, yet this kid casually handed it to the girl. Realizing how valuable his alliance with the kid could be, he decided to win him over no matter what, and urged the kid to get ready since they were going out to buy him that car right away. Next chapter, and the kid was seen sparkling hearing the man's words. After some time, all of them were seen making their way to the exit, where Yu along the way while making small talk, asked the kid about his new clothes. The kid proudly told her it was a gift from the director and went on boasting that according to him, this was the most advanced combat suit developed by the intergalactic space station yet. But just then, the rich princess stepped up, telling the kid that this was nothing. As soon as they reached the dealership, he can have whatever car he wanted. And the sparkling fool asked if she was saying he could have the most powerful one. And the girl, using this chance, latched onto him, telling him yes. This sudden power move left the poor Yu stunned, and both her and the director just froze, realizing that this girl was far more dangerous than they had thought. With no other choice, the director suggested Yu also step up her game to get closer to the kid, but the innocent little girl had no clue what to do. The man reminded her this was for the greater good of the city and their police station, so she needed to stop hesitating and give it her all. Meanwhile, Blondie was still busy charming up our boy, asking if he even knew what kind of car he wanted. The kid had no idea, so she started listing some of the most luxurious car names out there. Every single one of them was such a mouthful that the kid couldn't understand what she was talking about. With no other option, he just blurted out a made-up name, saying he was going to buy a UFC. My man, isn't UFC the fighting thing? What's next? Dana White handing him the keys? Even the system was getting annoyed and yelled at him for coming up with such nonsense. But then Yu suddenly jumped in, shouting that she also liked UFC-type cars. Somehow that worked, because the kid immediately started praising her for having good taste in cars just like him. Meanwhile, poor Blondie was left standing in the back, completely lost, wondering what this UFC even was. With that, the group finally reached the car and the director waved goodbye to the poor doctor, assuring him he would bring the kid back before dark. The doctor had no choice but to sigh in frustration. Just then, he heard a voice from the side calling out to him. Turning, he saw two people walking toward him, addressing him as uncle, and asking if this was Kyungshan Mental Hospital. Hearing them address him as uncle, the man wasn't exactly thrilled, so he told them this wasn't the place, but the sign behind him, however, said otherwise. That's when one of them explained they were here to see someone named Chen Zhuo, who was said to be very skilled at drawing talismans. That annoyed the doctor even more, since thanks to that fat director, the kid was drawing way too much attention to himself. Still trying to keep his composure, he told them they had just missed him, that he had left 5 minutes ago. Shocked, both of them blurted out "Grandpa" and asked when Chen Zhuo would be back. That was the final straw. The man lost it, and in his anger, he started forcing the kids away, telling them this is a hospital, not a place to ask for talismans. With that, the story cut to the dealership, where all the employees had gathered to greet the rich fat man and his guests. Getting out of the car, the man pointed at our boy and instructed the staff to show his friend back there all of their most expensive cars. And the staff, wasting no time, started running into the dealership with the kid, while the rich man casually suggested to the director that after this they should head to a hotel for a proper meal and to discuss their next move. Meanwhile, inside the dealership, the woman was showing our boy the line of luxurious cars, but he kept ignoring most of them and kept walking toward the pricier options, which only made the staff even happier. That was until he stopped in front of a freaking Rolls Royce and told the staff he was thinking of taking this one for himself. Hearing his words, the poor woman was so overjoyed that she nearly collapsed, realizing she had just hit the jackpot and completed her yearly quota in a single day. But then, suddenly something else caught our boy's eye, and without a second thought, he leapt onto a damn tiny mini car on display next to the Rolls Royce. Even the rich fat man froze at the sight, quickly suggesting he pick something else instead of that. But the kid had already made up his mind, and he started throwing a fit, screaming like a child that he wanted this one. With no other choice, the fat man ordered the staff to prepare the mini car immediately. And just like that, a card was swiped and they all walked out of the dealership with their brand new ride. The poor saleswoman, however, was left cursing the kid on the inside for choosing that piece of junk when he had the chance to buy the best car in the showroom. Fast forward, and both he and Yu were seen driving the car. But for some reason, she noticed that the kid didn't seem happy, and upon asking, she heard him pointing out that this car was slower than the fat man's. So the girl informed him that this was as fast as this car goes. But the kid wasn't taking no for an answer and shouted at her to hit the gas and leave the rest to him. Hearing that, the girl did as told and the system did its thing, and boom, the mini car turned into a fighter jet. Meanwhile, the fat man was quietly asking the director to put in a good word with the kid for him, since after the incident with his daughter, he couldn't trust anyone else anymore. On top of that, one of his construction sites had people dying out of nowhere for no apparent reason, so he needed the kid's help to figure out the cause. Seeing his gloomy face, the director assured him not to worry too much, since the kid was fairly reasonable, so convincing him to help shouldn't be too hard. But just then, the girl called out for both of them to look outside the window. Turning to the side, they saw our boy in his minicar, staring back at them. Seeing the speed of that tiny little thing, all of them froze. Even the director called Yu, asking what she was trying to do, fly that thing into space? But the girl herself had no idea what was going on and why the car was going so fast. The director smacked his head, realizing that this was probably the kid's doing, so he instructed her to just head to the Jinjiang Hotel, since Mr. Wu was treating them to a meal. A couple of minutes later, and all of them were done with their meal, and after that, they headed straight toward the construction site where all those instances were occurring. Getting out, the man informed our boy that this place had been abandoned for quite some time now because of the paranormal activity inside, and asked if he could take a look. Even the director chimed in, telling the boy that since Mr. Wu had been so generous with them, they should help him in return as well. With that, the man started unlocking the door with shaky hands, and seeing him trembling like that, our boy decided to take matters into his own hands and slam the lock with the back of his lobster. And to everyone's shock, the whole lock broke because of that. With that, all of them started walking into the place, but after reaching some distance, Yui suddenly heard some sounds coming from not far from them. The director frowned and asked what that was about, since the fat man had told them earlier that this place was abandoned. So why did it sound like people were working with the machinery? But the fat man told both of them that there shouldn't be anyone in here, especially not his workers, since every last one of them had fled the site after the incident started. But then the voices started getting louder, and listening closer, they noticed that the sounds were coming from a building nearby. Just then, our boy noticed something glowing faintly beneath his feet. Seeing this, the system suggested finding a higher spot to scan the whole area, but as usual, the kid ignored him. Still, after spending so much time with this stubborn idiot, the system knew exactly how to bait him, so he casually mentioned that from up there, he might be able to pick up some planetary signals. That did the trick, and the kid started flying straight towards the massive structure. Meanwhile, the rest of them on the ground, seeing him just leave out of nowhere, clung to the director, asking if it was a good idea to leave this matter to the kid and just turn around while they still could. Meanwhile, the kid, after getting atop the massive structure, saw something strange, specifically a massive eyeball in the middle of the whole place, which the system recognized as the Eye of Sacrifice, which fed on blood and flesh of living beings to sustain its power. And that was the strangest thing, since something like this shouldn't even be in a place like this unless it was brought here by someone, As he was trying to piece everything together, a loud scream for help from the rich fat man startled him, but looking at the kid, he saw no reaction at all, so he urged him to head down and check it out. That was when another voice rang out. This time the kid actually reacted, since it was his precious disciple Yu calling for him. So wasting no time, he leaped straight off the building. Meanwhile, the three of them were shaking in horror at the sight in front of them. Turns out they had spotted the ghost of one of the construction workers who lost his life here while working. According to the rich man, he was the first one who died in these incidents while swinging a hammer. The thing had snapped and landed right on his head, which took his life. Just as he said those words, that same scene played out again on the ghost, and they saw his head get smashed in by the hammer. Seeing that, the fat man started screaming, but Yu, on the other hand, was freaking out over something else coming at them from the side, and when they turned, they saw another ghost, apparently the second victim who had slipped and fallen from the building, and before they knew it, they were surrounded from all sides. Terrified, they asked the director what to do, since at this rate, none of them were getting out alive. With no other choice, the director told Yu to take Mr. Wu and retreat, while he tried to buy them some time. But just then, boom, a massive explosion rocked the whole area, catching the attention of all the ghosts. From the smoke appeared our boy, still dazed from that stupid stunt he just pulled. But gathering his thoughts, he struck a cool pose and told Yu that her master was here, so she didn't need to worry anymore. But when he looked up, he saw all the ghosts already airborne coming straight at him. That's when the system shouted for him not to move, and just like that, he noticed the ghosts phasing right through his body. The system explained these weren't real ghosts, but only projections created by the fear of the fat rich man, and his fear was fueling their power, which meant that the one behind all this was someone else entirely. Hearing that, the kid decided it was time to unleash one of the most powerful attacks created in the history of anime, a move so legendary even the strongest opponents would flinch, an attack known as Senin Garoshi, also known as 1,000 Years of Death. Just like that, he charged straight at the fat man to end this charade, and kaboom, the fat man was seen flying through the air, and just like that, it was over. All the ghosts vanished almost instantly the moment he was knocked unconscious, but the clueless director still had no idea what the kid was trying to do and demanded an answer. But Yu stopped him, pointing out that all the ghosts in the area had just vanished. Recalling her training, she told him about something she once read at the bureau, that some ghosts have the power to amplify the fears of their victims and use that fear to manifest whatever was in their minds, which meant the real threat was hiding somewhere close by. While they were busy talking, they failed to realize that they were being watched by someone from the distance, but our boy, however, instantly sensed the presence, and without hesitation summoned the little girl to capture whoever it was behind all this. Before the enemy even had the chance to think, the little girl was already in front of her, and using her powers, she attacked the evil spirit and easily managed to restrain the thing. Turns out it was actually a babe, a beautiful ghost girl, who according to the system had lost her life in a car accident and ended up trapped in this place somehow, and was only at the first level, which meant she was super weak when it came to combat power. But just as they all dropped their guard thinking the girl was weak, something took over her, and she snapped free of the little girl's bindings and started charging towards our boy. Before they knew it, she had him by the throat and started squeezing his neck, but the kid, refusing to give up so easily, tried fighting back and managed to tickle her arm. Guess what? It worked, since the girl snapped back to her usual self and, unable to control herself, started laughing uncontrollably, surprising everyone else. But getting a hold of her emotions, she turned back to the kid, embarrassed that he managed to free himself from her grasp in such a way. So to cover it up, she tried acting scary, telling all of them to leave this place immediately. Yeah, no, they were less scared and more confused, wondering what this girl was even trying to do. Seeing their faces, the poor thing started screaming in frustration, since none of them were taking her seriously anymore. So she warned them about something else in this place and said if they didn't leave right now, that thing was going to wake up. Yeah, still not working. Nobody was buying that stupid story. But just then, something actually started happening, as dark energy began gathering around the girl, getting sucked into her body, and she started losing control over herself. Next chapter, and the girl was seen on her knees and was fading away, but as a final warning, she told everyone that something dangerous was coming for them, and if they wanted to survive, they needed to sacrifice one person. This time, they actually took her seriously, and the director instantly turned to the rich fat man, saying this might be something they couldn't handle after all. The poor guy, however, started shaking, thinking they were about to offer him up as the sacrifice. But then to his relief, he heard the director shouting for everyone to retreat and leave this mess for the soul restraining division to handle. But just then, Yu spotted our boy and froze. Instead of using the door like a normal person, the kid was actually ninja jumping his way out the damn window. Seeing that ridiculous move, both of them froze in shock, but it was already too late. The kid was already plummeting straight down like a superhero, and just before hitting the ground, the system triggered one of its abilities and he blasted a massive energy shot at the ground. Boom! The whole area erupted in a massive explosion, shaking everything around them. By then, the rest of them had also managed to run down the building, and upon seeing the sight in front of them, they all froze in disbelief. There was a massive crater in the middle of the ground caused by just one attack from the kid, and in the center was the fool himself looking all proud with the stunt he just pulled. But then, as the dust started to clear, the director spotted something else in the middle of the crater, and upon looking closer, they saw what seemed like a bunch of coffins lying in the distance. Even the fat man was confused at the sight, since nobody told him this place was hiding a cemetery when he bought it. But the fat man was shaking like crazy as he informed them this was no cemetery, but something called the Eye of Sacrifice, which was probably the doing of the demonic cult. That was when they heard Yu explaining that several groups of evil cultivists had recently emerged all around the globe who perform all sorts of dark rituals in order to gain power, and the largest and most powerful one of them was known as the Demon Cult. This group was also responsible for a huge incident a year ago that nearly destroyed half the city, and the cause of all that destruction was later revealed to be this exact same Eye of Sacrifice ritual. Hearing that, the kid turned back to the crater, realizing how dangerous this thing truly was, and without any hesitation dove back in to destroy the whole thing. Seeing him rush in without a shred of fear, the director also started wondering what they should do, since if this thing wasn't stopped right away, the whole city might be in danger. So after thinking for a second or two, he dove in behind the kid, telling Yu to contact the Soul Restraining Division immediately and inform them of their situation. The girl, already knowing how serious it was, told him to leave that to her. Meanwhile, the ghost girl from earlier, who I thought had died or disappeared or whatever, was still alive, watching everything from a distance, shivering because she knew none of them were going to survive from what was about to come. And on the ground, our boy was calling out the one responsible for everything, while the director, after his so-called heroic speech earlier, was already second-guessing himself, telling our boy they should just head back and wait for the Soul Restraining Division to arrive. But the kid refused, reminding the man that they were planetary warriors and it was their duty to protect this planet from the threat. Before the man could even reply, the kid leaped into the air and slammed a powerful kick right on the lid of one of the coffins. Seeing him pull that stunt, the man started panicking, but it was already too late. A strange dark mist started pouring out of the coffin, and the fool, instead of backing away, leaned in and took a big whiff. The system, however, instantly warned him not to, since that mist was corpse chi, and sure enough, the kid regretted it right away. The smell was so bad he started hurling, but that was just the start. Gradually, all the coffins around them began shaking violently, and with a loud bang, all their lids flew off, launching the kid in the process. With that, the whole place started filling up with the strange mist. Meanwhile, Yu was still on the call with the Soul Restraining Division when she suddenly heard the fat man behind her warning her of something. Listening to his voice, the girl turned to see what was going on, only to be stunned at the sight in front of her as she saw a massive cloud of dark energy flowing out of the crater, and she realized they were too late to stop it. Meanwhile, in the crater, the director was stumbling around trying to find our boy so they could escape, but the mist was too thick and he wasn't able to see a thing. But just then, his hand suddenly landed on something strange, and when he turned to look at what it was, his soul nearly left his body the moment he saw what he was holding. On the other hand, our boy was still searching for the one responsible for all this, but with the fog so thick he wasn't able to see a thing. Just then he felt a hand land on his shoulder. Turning around to see who it was, he found himself face to face with the massive corpse of a samurai warrior standing right behind him. Seeing the thing, the system quickly ran a scan and confirmed it was a mummy in the late stages, probably dead for over 1,000 years. I mean, I'm no expert, but I didn't think mummies could stay intact for that long. Oh wait, I just asked GPT, they actually can. With that, the thing lunged at the kid, but the kid was no easy opponent and he fired back with his own fist, driving it straight through the creature's stomach, and the thing collapsed into pieces. After he was done taking out that creature, he started making his way towards the center, since from what he remembered, the massive coffin in the middle hadn't opened yet, and he was sure the leader was hiding inside it. But while running around in circles, he spotted the director in the distance, and the idiot still couldn't process what was happening, and just asked what he was doing. Thankfully, the system told him to save the man since his life force was being sucked out by that mummy, and he was about to die. Hearing that his fellow comrade's life was in danger, without any hesitation he leaped up and slammed a powerful kick on the monster's face. After he was done, he turned his attention back towards finding the large coffin, and suddenly heard the system pointing to the distance. Turns out it was the same coffin, so he started walking towards it to see what was inside. But the system warned him to stop since he was getting a bad feeling about all this. But the idiot wasn't even listening. He was more busy staring at what was in front of him, and before the system could process what was going on inside his head, a massive soldier started getting up from the coffin. Next chapter, and the guy was seen standing in front of both of them, and the system informed the kid that the one he was looking at right now was a mummy general, but not just any general. This guy in his lifetime was a powerful military leader with countless victories in wars, and during those 1,000 years in that coffin, he had been constantly absorbing dark energy from his surroundings, and was already at the early stages of a fourth-order evil spirit. While he was busy explaining that to the kid, they noticed that the director was slowly starting to regain consciousness, and since he was finally awake, the kid suggested they both should team up to take on this monster, and before the poor guy could understand what he was trying to say, the kid hurled him straight towards the monsters, and he slammed right into one of them in the distance. Well, I guess technically he did help since the thing was now lying motionless on the ground after getting hit by that bulldozer of a man. The confused man turned to the kid asking what he was trying to do, but there was no time for chit-chat since the rest of the soldiers were already charging towards him. Next panel, and he was seen running for his life, trying to get away from the monsters, screaming for our boy to help him. But the kid, instead of helping, simply thanked him for taking care of the small fries since now he could easily deal with the big one. And since the guy had just woken up, the system told him he was still weak and this was the perfect opportunity to take him down. So, wasting no time, he leaped straight towards the monster. But just as he was about to strike him down, something caught his eye and he stopped at the final second. Next thing the system saw was him on the ground reaching for the guy's sword, telling him he liked the thing so he would take it for himself. Before the thing could even process those words, the kid took the sword, did a little victory dance, and started running away, leaving both the monster and the system stunned in disbelief. Upon asking what he was trying to do, the kid blurted out that this guy was no general and didn't deserve a sword like this. Yup, the system knew right there and then, both of them were screwed, and just as he had feared, the thing lost it and unleashed a powerful storm of dark energy all around the place. Just the force behind that blast was enough to send everyone hurling through the air. Not just the people around him, but even everyone outside the crater were having a hard time staying on their feet because of the pressure the dark energy was releasing. And before they could process what was going on, something shot past them at astonishing speeds and crashed into the building behind them, slicing the thing in two in the process. Even the poor ghost girl was trembling after seeing the power behind that attack, but strangely enough, she also felt a hint of fear leaking from that attack. And if that was the case, then maybe there was a chance she might be able to help them stop this creature. Meanwhile, back in the fight, the general was reaching out to take his sword back, but the kid wasn't about to hand it over without a fight, so he yanked it back and swung it straight at the guy's face with all his might. But the creature was way stronger. Not only did he tank the attack, but also punched the kid, sending him flying through the air. By then, the place had basically turned into a stadium with all the mummies cheering for their general, while the poor director just sat there in the middle looking useless. But then, out of nowhere, all the mummies suddenly stopped cheering, surprising the director, but as he turned to see what was going on, he froze. The kid was now standing on the general's back, yanking on his robe and yelling for him to take it off because he wanted it for himself. But just then he noticed something strange and froze. Even the system had no idea what was going on, and before they could process it, the whole place changed, and they found themselves in the middle of a massive battlefield. Seeing the sight, the system realized this was that ghost girl's doing. That's when they saw the director running towards them from the back, shouting that this must be the zombie general's final battle where he lost his life. But by then it was too late to do anything, since both sides had already closed in the distance, and they found themselves standing in the middle of the two armies. Seeing the two armies, the general fell to the ground as those horrifying memories started rushing back to him, but the kid instructed both of them to stay put and not move. That was when the director saw one of the riders charging straight at him with a massive spear in hand, but right at the final second, something flashed past him, slicing the spear in two. Turning to the one responsible, they saw one of the soldiers who was cutting his way through all the incoming enemies who stood in his path. A slice here, a slice there, and he had already taken out a dozen of the soldiers without any effort. Before long, the whole place was littered with the bodies of all the defeated soldiers, and in the middle stood that same warrior who had single-handedly managed to shift the tide of this battle. But just then, his strength gave out because of his injuries and he fell to his knees. Seeing such a heroic sight, none of them knew what to say. The system itself commented what a brave general this guy was in his lifetime, since he gave up everything for his nation. But then the general's eyes caught something in the middle of the corpses, and by the time he realized what it was already too late. The coward who had been hiding the whole time, pretending to be dead, crawled up and landed the final blow, ending the brave soldier on the spot. With that, the battle was truly over, but for the coward, he didn't stop there. He took the general's helmet and placed it on his own head. Oh boy, I think they are finally starting to piece everything together. Even the guy behind them is shaking. Turns out this so-called general was none other than the same coward who hid during the whole fight and took out the true general at the final moment and seized all the glory for himself. Oh boy, the kid was not happy. Realizing this fact, and to honor the fallen soldier, he took his helmet and his sword and prepared to unleash justice on this imposter for everything he did to that man. And with his full might, he swung the massive thing to end the man. But at the final second, just as the blade was about to slice through him, he stopped. Turning to the side, he saw the rest of the soldiers running towards him, signaling him not to do that. Turns out they weren't asking him to stop because they wanted to save the guy, but because after seeing the truth with their own eyes, they wanted to teach this imposter a lesson by their own hands. And just like that, all of them started pummeling the guy to the ground for deceiving them. And before long, it was all over, and the soldiers had completely ripped the guy into pieces. After they were done with him, they all turned back to our boy and thanked him for everything he did for them, since if it weren't for him, they would have stayed trapped in this place, worshipping the fake general. And now that the truth was finally revealed, one by one, they all began passing on to the afterlife. After everything had quieted down, the protagonist saw Yu and the fat man running towards them, and both of them started praising him, asking if he was alright, telling him he was so brave back there. Meanwhile, the director was tearing up since he had also been in the middle of everything, but nobody even asked if he was fine. That's when he overheard the kid instructing Yu to haul that massive coffin back to his hospital room, and when she asked the reason, he just told her it was a secret. But during all that, they failed to notice the director acting a little off, and before anyone knew it, the man collapsed to the ground completely unconscious. The story cuts a couple of minutes, and the director was seen being rushed to the emergency room by the doctors for immediate treatment. Meanwhile, Yu and the kid just stood there watching as the man gets taken away, and Yu, clearly worried, asked the kid if he knows why the director suddenly collapsed like that. Hearing the girl's concern, the system quickly informed him that during the battle, too much of the director's yang energy got drained by one of the zombies, and on top of that, prolonged exposure to the dark mist had taken its toll. But the kid, however, shrugged it off and told Yu he was just fat and needed more exercise. That's all. That's when he heard Yu, clearly feeling guilty, admitted that during that whole battle she was of no help, and the director had to do everything on his own. So as a thank you, she was going to prepare some of his favorite meals for him. Yeah, that meals part was enough to short-circuit the kid's brain. Next panel, he was shaking, writhing in agony, telling Yu he exerted too much of his energy during that battle and was now on the verge of death. The innocent little soul actually bought his stupid story. Seeing her panicked expression, the kid realized the plan worked, and with a sly grin on his face, he turned towards the girl, telling her there was only one thing that could save him now. Upon asking what it was, the kid blurted out he needed to be hospitalized with the fat man and needed her delicious cooking to replenish his lost energy. Cut to the director, and oh boy, fun and games aside, the guy was actually on the brink of death. The doctor informed his wife and son that the man doesn't have much time left to live. He explained the mist that had mixed with his blood was something their current medical methods couldn't neutralize. Devastated, the woman asked the man how long he had left, to which the man explained he probably has 2 or 3 days before his body gives out to the poison spreading inside of him. Cut a couple of minutes, and the man was slowly starting to regain consciousness and found both of them next to his bed. Seeing he was finally up, the woman showed him all the dishes Yu made for him and asked if he would like to eat some of them. But the man, for some reason, turned his head away and asked what did the doctor say. Both of them paused for a moment, unsure of how to answer that question. But then, trying to hold back their tears, they told him the doctor said he just needed rest to recover his strength. She explained he fainted due to low blood sugar and didn't have to worry about anything. But the man wasn't fooled, and seeing how his wife, instead of shouting at him, was being so gentle with him, realized he probably doesn't have much time left to live. Still, he didn't care about that. With what little strength he had left, he asked about our hero. Next panel, and he was being wheeled to meet up with the kid. But the moment he entered the room, the man's jaw dropped. The kid was lying there completely wrapped in bandages with what looked like bloodstains covering his body. Yeah, little did the man know that blood wasn't actually blood, it was ketchup from the junk food he had been devouring while the director was on his hospital bed fighting for his life. But since he didn't know that, the director blamed himself for everything. With trembling hands, he apologized for dragging the kid into such a dangerous place. Then he started getting all emotional, telling the kid from the looks of it, both of them were going to be meeting in the afterlife soon, and he hoped they could be friends over there too. He also brought up that he was content with his life since he had a wife and a son, but he, on the other hand, was dying a virgin, and that fact made him even more miserable about himself. After he was done with his dramatic monologue, he shouted for the kid to open his eyes, apologizing for ever dragging him outside of that mental hospital. Oh boy, the kid opened his eyes all right, and the first thing he did was smack him on the face with a chicken leg for being so annoying in the middle of the night. Next panel, and the poor director was staring at the fool in disbelief, while the kid reminded him he was the #1 planetary warrior and won't die so easily. Bullshit. Yes, the man knew he was just spewing nonsense again, but on the same hand, he also knew he was probably going to survive now, since this kid cured Yu's illness with just a water bottle, so he should be able to remove the poison from his body as well. But the problem was convincing him, since he knew how stubborn he can be at times. So he started to butter him up, saying stuff like he was right and apologizing for ever doubting the power of the great planetary warrior since he was the pride of their planet. Yup, it was working. And seeing that smug little face of his, the director continued rambling he was sent to this planet because he was the strongest, unlike a loser like him who can't even withstand a single blow from the enemy. And seeing that the time was right, he moved to phase 2 of his plan. Putting on his most emotional face, he told the kid it was such a shame he wouldn't be around to witness the day he completed his great mission for the planet, when he'd earned fame and glory across the universe. Surprised, the kid asked the reason, and the man with a pitiful voice told him the doctor said he only had 2 days left to live. The system confirmed it, telling the kid his yang energy was sucked away and yen energy entered his whole body, which was acting like a poison, corroding all his internal organs. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, the kid wasted no time and sprang into action, taking a roll of bandage. He screamed for the man to get ready. He was going to fix him up good as new, but the look on his face was starting to concern the man, since he was hoping of getting a water bottle treatment like Yu got, but the kid looked like he was going to cut him open and extract the poison manually. And before he knew it, Hawk Tui, the kid, spat right on his face, and with that, he started his mumbo-jumbo, which irritated the system so much since there were so many more ways of fixing the man, but he chose the most tiring one for him. But since he had no other choice, the poor system got to work on overdrive, scribbling talismans at lightning speed while cursing the kid's name in pure frustration. And before they knew it, it was all over. But the poor director was still skeptical. But the kid told him to stop questioning his power and instructed him to keep his face that way for a whole 49 days. That was how long it would take for the poison to fully leave his body. But the man was still worried and asked what would happen if some of them fell off his face. And the kid, annoyed by so many questions, told him nothing would happen and asked him to leave since he wanted to sleep now. But just then, the fat man felt his whole body start to burn up, and a wave of pain shot through him. Cut to the outside, and two individuals were seen walking in the hospital hallway, who clearly seemed like trouble. Just then, they spotted the director being wheeled back to his room while shouting for the doctor to hit him with the strongest painkillers he's got, while warning him not to touch the talismans on his face, and that caught the eye of the four-eyed man in the back. For some reason, he gave the director that look as if he had noticed something strange about him. Turning towards his partner, he asked if that was the man who was involved in the recent ghost incident in the abandoned construction site, and the man confirmed, but also told him not to waste his time on him since, from their reports, that man was on the brink of death after being poisoned by that weird yin energy. He reminded him why they were here, so the sooner they get this over with, the sooner they can head back and get something to eat. Cut back to our hero's room, who was completely ignoring the poor system behind him, complaining how hard it was to scribble so many talismans, telling him to at least ask before deciding for a method of fixing someone. That's when they saw the same two men entering the room, and the system instantly realized both of them were 7th level exorcists. As for the man with the stupid face, he walked up to the kid asking if he was Chen Zhuo. But then for some reason his partner suddenly stopped him, apologizing to the kid since they clearly came to the wrong room. Before the kid could even process that, both of them exited the room while whispering that kid couldn't be the one, so they should double check before things got complicated. Sure enough, a few seconds later, they looked at the photo again, and there it was, the same dumb face staring back at them. Now fully convinced, they barged into the room with full confidence. Yeah, no, the kid just gave them a long, unamused stare since they were clearly starting to get on his nerves. As for the men, they introduced themselves as agents from the Soul Restraining Division, who were here to ask some questions about the incident in the abandoned construction site. But the kid, clearly not interested, just waved them off, saying he didn't want to buy anything. That hit a nerve, so they told the kid they weren't here to play games. And getting to the point, explained that the ghost reported at that site wasn't just some wandering spirit, it was a 4th-level demonic entity, far beyond what the local exorcist police could handle, and asked if he was an unregistered exorcist. But then he saw the second man reaching into his pocket and bringing out a glowing piece of diamond, asking if he belonged to the demonic cult. Before the kid could even process what the man was yapping about, he grabbed his wrist, explaining this stone would detect if he was from a demonic cult by scanning his body for demonic energy, and asked him to place his hand on it. Yeah, our stupid little fool wasn't even taking it seriously, and he flicked the thing into the air without even giving it a second thought. Annoyed by his antics, the first man lost it, reminding him they were from the Soul Suppression Division, so he needed to cooperate or they would be forced to use force against him. Yeah, right. Good luck, buddy. The kid, without even thinking twice, just slammed an apple right on his face to shut him up. Then, with the straightest, most serious expression in the world, he asked, "Are you two mentally ill or something?" The four-eyed man, seeing him assault an officer, got ready to restrain him. But if only he knew who he was dealing with. The kid, wasting no time, took to the sky, ready to teach both of them a lesson. Just then, Yu entered the room, all cheerful with his favorite meal in hand. But the moment she opened her eyes, the poor girl froze at the sight in front of her. There they were, two guys being beaten to a pulp by the kid. On top of that, those two were wearing Soul Restraining Division uniforms, and she asked what was going on. Next panel, the poor girl was apologizing on the stupid kid's behalf. Luckily, the men didn't seem too upset, or at least that's what they wanted her to believe since their faces said otherwise. The kid mopped the floor with them. Trying to stay professional, they asked Yu to please help them convince the kid to cooperate, explaining that they came with a serious matter and genuinely needed his help. Then one of them made the biggest mistake of the day as he added, "But we understand if that could prove to be a problem for her, since he's mentally unstable." And oh boy, that did not sit well with Yu. The girl completely lost it and started yelling at the two men, asking who gave them the right to call her master mentally unstable. To that, the poor men didn't know what to say, since it wasn't like they were disrespecting him. The kid truly was mentally ill. But Yu wasn't having any of it. She stormed over and started shoving the officers out of the room, shouting, "If you want his cooperation, send someone who isn't a jerk." But just then, the kid heard something from one of the men and froze. The man mentioned the coffin in their possession, which was recovered from the incident site and was their only clue in finding the demonic cult. So they came here to ask some questions from that kid, and that shocked the kid. Cut to the quiet hallway of the hospital, and next panel, bam! The whole place erupted in a massive explosion as something got launched out of one of the walls of the building. Turns out it was the two fools and the furious kid in front of them, asking if the Soul Restraining Division stole his coffin from him. As for the men, they could hardly believe this kid managed to overpower them so easily. But then the four-eyed fool pointed at something, telling him to take a look. Turning to the location, he saw the kid holding that same crystal thing in his hand, and the thing wasn't reacting for some reason. That's when the system chimed in to explain what was going on. The glowing crystal in his hand was called a detection stone. It could detect every cultivation level below the Holy Realm, and each level would shine in a different color. As for those beyond that, Royal and Emperor Realm cultivators, they were said to be so strong that even the detection stone couldn't read their power. Meanwhile, the kid was telling Yu he was going out to retrieve his coffin from those people. Before the girl could even get a chance to say anything, he summoned the tiger and the little brat, ready to destroy anyone who dared stand in his path. Cut a couple of seconds and all three of them were seen flying full speed through the sky, determined to find the coffin. That's when the poor system, clinging to the tiger's tail for dear life, asked the kid if he even knew where he was going. Yeah, the kid instantly hit the brakes. Turning to the little brat, he asked if she knew where the building was, but even the girl had no idea. That's when he heard the system pointing to the correct direction. But our genius fool, completely ignoring him, pointed in the exact opposite direction. Just as they were about to fly away, they suddenly heard a voice telling them to stop. Turns out it was the same ghost lady from earlier. And seeing her in this place, the kid asked what she was doing here. The girl, taking advantage of the situation, pointed to the opposite direction, telling him the soul restraining division building was that way. And of course, the kid instantly bought it, making the poor system even angrier. But before they could take off again, the ghost girl asked him to stop once more. Upon asking the reason, the girl pretty much asked if she could also join his harem of idiots since she had no place else to go and was hoping he might take her in. Yeah, little brat was already glaring daggers at her. As for the system, he was telling the kid it might be a good idea to take her in. After all, she was a ghost with a pure heart and had never harmed anyone. On top of that, a low-level spirit like her would just end up as a snack if she ran into someone dangerous. But to their shock, the kid instantly refused without even thinking. Upon asking the reason, the jerk told her he remembers she has a ticklish spot on her body, which was a weakness, and Dong Dong Yao doesn't tolerate weakness around him. Oh, come on, man, look at that face. Why does he have to be such a jerk? Still, the girl, not giving up, made up her mind to convince him to take her in, no matter what. With that thought, she took to the sky to catch up to him, but before she could, something appeared latching onto her arm. Turns out it was little brat who knew this might happen, so she stayed behind to stop her, and with rage in her eyes reminded the girl she already hurt him once and warned her to stay away from him. Before the girl even knew it, she was slammed violently back into the ground. With that, the girl lost all her strength, but still, trembling, she tried to push herself up, but when she turned to see, the kid was already gone. The stubborn girl made it clear right there by shouting that she wasn't going to give up that easily. Cut to our boy who had finally arrived at the place, but looking at it, he froze for a second since the place was absolutely massive. But of course the fool didn't care about any of that, and prepared to enter with the system. Just then, he got stopped. Turning around, he saw that it was the little brat who was telling him if either of them entered that building, they would instantly vanish. The system explained that the Soul Restraining Division had erected a 12 gates formation around the compound, and if either of them entered that circle, they would be instantly destroyed. It was annoying, but not like it was going to stop him, so he told both of them to stay there and wait for him to come back. As for him, he had the perfect plan for infiltration. Yeah, that failed instantly since the guards weren't buying it and told him to scram. As for the kid, he figured these two were probably powerful enemies that even his invisibility wasn't working on them. While the frustrated system tried to inject some logic into him, yeah, the kid completely ignored him and prepared to take on the two soldiers with his bare hands. Stupid plan indeed, but it worked for the system, so he decided to bestow a new ability on him. An ability called the Eye of Bewitching or whatever. Anyway, whatever it was, it made the two guards feel dizzy, and before they knew it, they were on the ground completely knocked out. But the kid mistook that and figured they were so afraid of him that they fainted on their own, and the system, clearly done with the nonsense, told him to just enter the place already. Walking through the gate, the system told him he would be fine with the skill he had just given him and started heading his own way, since he had some old friends living in this place he wanted to visit. Cut a couple of seconds and the kid was seen ninja jumping his way into the building. That's when he spotted two idiotic-looking monks discussing something, and of course he decided to follow them to see what they were talking about. Turns out they were talking about him and the recent case he solved at the old construction site, and because of that, their department was trying to recruit him for themselves, which was why they sent two of their agents to contact him. Yeah, the kid didn't even bother with all the stuff he just uncovered and shouted at the two, asking about his coffin. And since they weren't answering, he tried warning them, but unknowingly activated his new ability. And bam, both idiots were on the ground completely unconscious. That frustrated the kid since, in his head, they were ignoring him and went to sleep instead of answering. So with no other choice, he approached some other people. But it was the same story, his ability wouldn't turn off, and everyone he came in contact with fainted on the spot. And before he knew it, half the building was lying unconscious on the floor. As for the kid, he was fuming. In his mind, that fat director had lied. He said this was supposed to be the most awesome organization on Earth, yet here they were, all sleeping on the job. In his anger, he opened the last door and found the place stacked with the most budget cosplay convention he had ever seen. Even Naruto was there, staring at Gojo and Vegeta chilling off. As for the kid, he called out to them, asking which one of them stole his coffin. And the moment their eyes landed on him, bam, everyone was on the ground. The poor kid just stood there in pure anger. That is when he heard the system's voice telling him he found his coffin. Next panel, and they were standing before a massive safe with the system explaining that this was where the department stored all the items it confiscates from ghosts, and his coffin was probably in there as well. The system tried opening it for him, but the kid had other plans, so he had no other choice but to go with his stupid idea instead. With that, the kid blasted a powerful punch on the door, and the entire vault door flew off its hinges. But because of that, the alarm across the whole building started blaring like crazy, warning every available guard about their location. As for the outside, seeing the alarms going off, the little brat started panicking, realizing that the kid's life was in danger. As for the kid, still not knowing what big trouble he was in, he started walking around the room looking for his coffin and managed to find it without any problem. And the first thing he did was embrace the thing, like it was his long-lost love, asking if those bad guys did anything to her. Yeah, the poor system almost puked at the sight, telling him to hurry up before the guards arrive. But guess what? He jinxed it, since at the very next second, every goofy-looking character from the building came barging into the room to stop them. And that annoyed the kid since he was having a touching reunion with his coffin. So he gave them that angry protagonist glare, and bam, next panel, the whole room was on the ground while he took the thing on his shoulder and prepared to head out. But just then, the system sensed a powerful aura coming from behind them, and turning around he saw someone walking in on one leg, telling both of them to stop. But the fool still wasn't taking it seriously. As for the system, it was a whole other story, since his bewitching eyes ability was not working on this old man, and he tried warning the kid this guy was a powerful exorcist, but too late for that since the man prepared to stop both of them. With that, he channeled all his spiritual energy in his one hand and leaped straight towards the kid to take him out in one strike. Next panel, the kid blasted out all his final boss confidence with one punch to his face, and the old man went flying into a wall as the kid casually walked out of there, complaining that the old man was making his ears hurt. Cut to the outside, and both fools had finally arrived at the headquarters. But the moment they reached the gate, they froze, seeing both guards snoring like babies on the floor. Cut back to the hospital, and the director was finally starting to regain consciousness. Opening his eyes, he saw a blurry figure standing over him, and wondered if it was an angel here to take him to heaven, until the blur cleared, revealing the bald doctor staring straight into his soul. The poor guy almost had a heart attack seeing his face. As for the doctor, he told the man he had some good news for him. Turns out his latest reports were out, and according to the man, all his internal organs had miraculously healed on their own. The poor director took a sigh of relief, finally hearing one good piece of news, but strangely enough, the doctor suddenly asked him about the kid he went to visit, and if they were related. And the fat man, clearly not fearing for his life, called the kid his disciple. But then the door to the room suddenly slammed open, and they saw Yu Yu's panicked expression telling the director her master was in danger. And the moment the words "he went to the soul restraining division for his coffin" hit his ears, the poor man nearly went into a coma all over again. His soul practically left his body as he mumbled, "That little idiot's gonna get me killed one day." But knowing what kind of walking disaster the kid was, the director had no choice. He jumped out of bed, yelling for Yu Yu to get ready, because they had to leave right now before that brat did something the entire nation would regret for the rest of their lives. As for the doctor, he clearly had some other intentions about the kid, and from the look in his eyes, none of them were good. But then he suddenly got startled as a man suddenly appeared in front of his face, telling him a strange person carrying a coffin just broke into their hospital. Cut to the outside, and both of them were seen riding to the soul restraining division, completely missing the kid who was right behind them. The kid spotted them, but by then they were already gone, and both of them wondered where they could be heading to in such a hurry. But since both of them were idiots, they completely ignored that and started walking into the hospital, screaming that they just defeated the soul restraining division. But suddenly they spotted something completely unexpected and froze. Turns out it was an army of doctors blocking their path for some reason. Seeing that they were clearly looking for trouble, the kid prepared to teach all of them a lesson. But good thing the system was there to stop him, since it turns out they weren't there to attack him, but to welcome them back to the hospital as heroes who saved the life of their patient. But just then, another doctor approached the bald dean, asking if it really was a good idea to trust this guy since he was clearly a few marbles short. But the dean told him not to worry, since from what he had seen so far, he was sure he could make this kid cooperate with them. With that, he approached the kid, introducing himself as Dr. Sun Tong, and thanked him for saving the director's life. But the system clearly warned him not to fall for this man's cheesy compliments, since he was sure he was up to no good. And the kid wasn't planning to trust him either. After all, every person in a white coat reminded him of that mental hospital. Seeing this, the man had no other choice, so he signaled to his subordinate to initiate Plan B. Just then, the kid saw a disabled girl being wheeled outside the hospital who was calling him brother, asking if he was the hero she heard about. And with a smile so bright it could melt steel, she held out a candy and asked if he wanted to be her friend. As for the system, he was scanning her body and realized that the girl's body was affected by yin energy, which damaged the nerves in her legs, and warned the kid that these white coat con artists were clearly trying to butter him up so he'd heal their patients for free. But of course, the fool behind the system got it completely wrong. He thought they were using these poor patients as bait to capture him. But then the kid asked him once more if he wanted to be friends with her, and seeing her face, the kid was having a hard time keeping his emotions under control. Before he knew it, his iron will gave out, and he snatched the candy from her hand and started chanting some random nonsense on it. And that annoyed the system, since he wouldn't let him treat his own mental illness while he was going around curing everyone he saw. As for the kid, he didn't care and threw the thing right into the air like it was some kind of holy artifact. And the poor system had to take over so he wouldn't end up looking like a fool in front of all these people. And the thing, now pumped with his miracle medicine, landed right in the kid's hands, and as he showed it to everyone, the thing actually was shining like some powerful artifact. But the doctors were still skeptical if it was some kind of trick, but the kid didn't care about their doubts and proceeded to unwrap the miracle candy, and to the system's horror, Instead of feeding it to the girl, he gulped the thing down his own throat. Even the poor girl nearly fainted, since she was hoping that thing was meant for her illness. But instead, this guy ate it himself and was now dancing like a lunatic, saying the thing was delicious. But then he suddenly stopped, staring at the child's legs for some reason. But guess what? He wasn't looking at the legs after all, but at the wheelchair she was sitting in, and told the girl to stand up and hand the thing to him. And that annoyed the system even more, since it meant now he had to work overtime to cure the girl and cover for his stupidity again. While his hand was on her head, the system tirelessly started activating all his healing techniques in order to cure her legs, and to finish it off, he screamed for all the negative energy from her body to leave immediately. By the time he was done, the poor guy looked like a deflated balloon that had lost the will to live. As for the fool standing beside him, he told the girl to try and stand up. The girl was skeptical, but she decided to do as he was saying, and bam, she face-planted onto the ground the very next second. But the confident fool, now sitting on his new throne, told the doctor not to touch her and let her stand on her own. And sure enough, all their jaws were on the floor, seeing the girl miraculously regaining strength in her legs. As for the bald man, he was practically vibrating with excitement, seeing that he just hit a jackpot. Turning towards his subordinates who had no idea what even happened, he asked if they had been taking notes of what he was doing, but clearly they didn't, so they just nodded. As for the baldy, he told everyone to stop wasting time and bring in more patients. Screaming, "We're helping as many as we can today." Cut to the bureau, and both of them had finally arrived, and for some reason they even brought Dr. Lee Kim-shan along for the ride. As for the director, he instructed both of them to stay silent and let him handle the talking. But arriving inside, they found the whole place littered with sleeping exorcists everywhere, snoring like pigs, and in the distance heard a man yelling that they let a mentally ill person enter the building, and the whole department got knocked out with only one attack, fearing that if word of this got out, their reputation would be ruined. Hearing those words, both of them realized they weren't able to capture the kid, which left them wondering, if he wasn't here, then where did he go? Just then, they heard a voice calling for the director. Turning to the side, they saw a very intimidating-looking man walking up to them, saying he was just about to call him. Turns out this man's name is Director Luo Yumin, the director of the Soul Restraining Department. Next chapter, and all three of them were seen sitting stiff in front of the man, sweating bullets as the poor director tried to explain that the kid was just a mentally ill person, so he should try to be a little lenient with him. But of course, the loudmouth beside him opened her mouth, saying even if he wanted to, he couldn't beat her master. The director nearly fainted right there, but to their surprise, Luo Yumin didn't explode. He actually chuckled. He explained to them he was aware that the kid was a rare talent, which was why he sent 2 of his agents to test his level. But according to their report, the kid was just an ordinary person. That surprised the 3 of them, since the guy was a walking disaster and there was nothing normal about him. Director Luo Yumin told them he was aware of that, which was why he was asking him to test his level using this new crystal, which was more accurate than the last one. To that, the fat man agreed, but as he placed his hand on the thing, it started glowing in a bright golden light that caught everyone off guard, since it meant the man was at the second stage of exorcism, which shouldn't be possible since he had been sitting on his ass the whole time and never trained. Curious, Yu asked to let her give it a try, and guess what? She herself was at the 2nd level. That shocked the girl since she was level 1 not too long ago and wondered what could have caused that. And the fat man, after burning through his brain cells, came to the conclusion that the water she drank to cure her illness also raised her level somehow. As for him, it was probably the work of the kid's spit and the talismans he had on his face. That surprised the man since everyone who came into contact with that kid was now somehow stronger, which shouldn't be possible. Meanwhile, the fat man was asking the doctor to give it a try. After all, he had spent the most amount of time with him. Curious, the doctor decided to do as he was saying, but as he touched the thing, it lost all its light. Seeing this, he asked what that meant, and both of them informed him it meant he was a weakling with no cultivation. And of course, the fat man wasn't going to let such an opportunity slide and hit him with a jab, commenting, "Guess it takes a strong mind for the effect to work. Sorry, doc, not everyone's blessed like me." Yeah, that comment definitely didn't sit well with the doctor, but he also spotted something strange poking out of his collar. So without any warning, he grabbed the thing and pulled out a whole list of talismans tied together, which he was hiding inside his uniform. The man tried explaining himself that those talismans were given to him by the kid for his illness, so he needed them. As both of them were bickering like toddlers fighting over candy, Director Luo Yumin noticed something strange about the talismans, and upon looking closer, he froze, realizing what the thing truly was. And to both their surprise, the man suddenly stood up and stopped both their nonsense, before they could even open their mouths. The man shouted at the fat director to take him to see this kid immediately. Cut back to the hospital, and the kid was being treated like royalty. Just then, the same whispering doctor leaned in next to the bald man once more, reminding him they had been observing this kid for the whole day but didn't learn anything, and suggested they try changing tactics since the kid didn't seem that hard to manipulate. Hearing that, the doctor turned to the kid, praising his abilities since he even managed to bring back some dead patients, and asked if he could teach them some of his ways. But the kid refused with his own nonsense, saying those talismans contain his skills, which he mastered over millions of years, so they can't learn them even if they spend their lifetime trying. The doctor told him he completely understands that, but they were still willing to give it their all to fulfill their duty as doctors in this world full of evil spirits. He then launched into his well-rehearsed speech, explaining that the yin energy inside the human body remained an incurable disease, one that had claimed countless lives before their eyes. The helplessness of watching people die, he said, was a pain that pierced every doctor's heart like a nail. After finishing his overly dramatic speech, the doctor pleaded with the kid to teach them, promising they'd pay him anything in return, but clearly the kid wasn't budging. Desperate, the man started begging him to at least share something. Bam! The kid pulled out a few talismans he had prepared earlier. He explained that these were some of the basic techniques for dispelling yin energy from a person's body. The man wasted no time and grabbed them like they were some kind of holy relics, screaming how easy it was to convince him. But then he took a closer look and asked the kid why he couldn't understand any of the words on it. The system explained to the kid that the text was written in ghost script, something no human could possibly read, but the kid just shrugged and said it was a ghost story. Hearing that, the doctor instantly threw the thing on the ground. With a trembling voice, he told the kid this language of ghosts was extremely dangerous, and according to rumors, the ghost script carried supernatural energy, and any human who came into contact with it could lose their mind or worse, die an agonizing death. Yeah, the kid wasn't fazed at all. He simply said this was exactly why he refused to teach them in the first place, because they didn't have the courage for it. Still, he raised the paper once more and declared that he'd give them one final chance, and asked which one of them was willing to learn this. Yeah, no, none of them had the guts to speak up, but then a hand rose from the crowd saying he was willing to learn. Upon asking the reason, the man explained that they were two brothers in the family, so even if one of them died, it wasn't going to affect their bloodline, so he was willing to make this sacrifice for the greater good. Hearing his story, everyone was moved and slowly more people started to step forward. With that, the kid handed them back the talismans, telling them to study well. After that was sorted, the bald man instructed everyone to head straight to the meeting room, since they were going to hold an emergency meeting right away. With that, everyone left the room, but just as the dean was about to leave himself, he heard someone calling for him. Turning to the location, he saw that it was the director and the gang, asking if everything was fine. Seeing that they had the famous director Luo Yumin with them, the man bowed, explaining that their Chenju was amazing, since he managed to cure all their patients infected by yin energy and even gave them the technique to remove it themselves. And since Director Luo Yumin was very knowledgeable in this field, he shoved the thing in his face, asking if he could decipher what was written on it. At first, the man was stunned, but when his eyes landed on the writing, he froze in disbelief. With a trembling voice, he told everyone that this truly was a tutorial written in a ghost language on how to remove yin energy from a person. Realizing the value of the thing, he assured the doctor he would send his best exorcist to their hospital to help them study this talisman. But then he fell into thought, recalling how humans and ghosts had been locked in an unending war for thousands of years, and if they managed to decipher the knowledge of dispelling yin energy from a person, they might be able to turn the tide of this battle. With that, he opened the door to the room, declaring that the time for humanity to strike back had finally arrived. The kid, annoyed, turned and asked who he was, but the system quickly told him to shut up, explaining the man was a 5th-level exorcist. As for Director Luo Yumin, he showed the kid the bags of treats he got for him as an apology for taking his coffin without his permission. At first, the kid fell into thought, wondering what he was talking about. The next second, he swung his leg toward the man, realizing he was from the soul restraining department. With that, he started attacking the man relentlessly, while he tried dodging all the attacks. Just then, a hand shot out, grabbing the kid by the collar, and before he knew it, all three of them had him restrained while the kid tried to break free to end the guy. But luckily, he heard Yu Yu's voice explaining that the man was here to apologize. Hearing that, the kid actually stopped. As for the old man, the poor guy was practically shaking in his boots, showing him all the stuff he got for him as an apology. With that, the scene shifts to the hospital corridor, and we all already know what is about to come. Yup, bam. The man was seen getting smashed through the hospital wall. Let's just hope the Baldy has insurance to cover up for all those holes. Anyway, inside the room, the kid was scolding the three for taking the side of that evil man, especially his beloved disciple Yu Yu, since even she tried defending the guy and the fat man who wasn't worthy of his title of the planetary warrior anymore since he chose that human over him. Seeing how angry the kid was, all three of them started sweating, apologizing they would never do something like that again. As for the old man himself, he was still in one piece and trying to hear what was going on in there, but the rooms were soundproof, so he wasn't able to make out anything. Meanwhile, in the back, two of the nurses were staring at him, whispering that they never thought Director Luo Yumin was the kind of guy who would try to peek into someone's ward like that. Cut a couple of minutes later, and all of them were finally discharged from the hospital and back at the mental asylum. The doctor quickly took the kid away from the fat man, telling him he needed to go back to his room now, saying they even prepared a gift for him. Just then, Director Luo Yumin approached the fat director, asking what was going on since he came here, because he was told the kid would cooperate with him once he was back in a familiar environment, but the kid wasn't even looking at him. The fat man told him to be a little patient and just keep trying to win him over since the kid was easily impressed if handled right. As for the doctor, he was showing the kid his new private room, explaining this was a reward for saving the city, but in reality, they were just afraid the kid might lose control and accidentally wreck the other patients. So they prepared this separate place for him, far from the main hospital rooms. That is when the fat man appeared, telling the kid that this was actually a space headquarters initiative since they didn't want their brave planetary warrior living like a peasant. Turns out the real reason behind arranging this new place for the kid was something else. Since the doctor always made it hard for him to meet with the kid, he arranged this place which was close to the back door so he could easily climb in whenever he wanted to see the kid. Just as he was basking in his cleverness, he heard the kid burst his bubble, telling both of them to stop standing around and bring him his coffee. Yeah, the men were not thrilled hearing that, but the kid wasn't listening and told them to hurry up since he needed to start his practice. Cut to the outside, and a truck was seen arriving outside the building. Turns out it had the coffin the kid caused all that chaos in the soul restraining department for. And since these two idiots saw the kid carry this thing with one hand earlier, they figured it wasn't so heavy and decided to do it themselves. With that, they got in position, and nope, the thing wasn't even budging. 3 seconds later, they were on their butts, completely exhausted. With no other choice, the director decided to call in the big guns, and that made the doctor even angrier since he could have done that earlier. Next panel, and the fat man was seen cheering up his elite squad of soldiers, using them as a human conveyor belt to carry the massive thing to the kid's room. As for the kid himself, he was busy meditating. That's when he suddenly heard director Luo Yumin's voice calling for him. Turning around, he saw the man had brought a tasty-looking treat for him, but the kid steeled his resolve and refused to budge. Seeing this, the old man tried changing tactics and told the kid they were just cleaning and maintaining his coffin and never meant to steal it. Then he cranked up the charm, showing him another ice cream, telling him it was really hot outside, so he should eat some, and that seemed to do the trick since the kid actually smiled at him, resulting in the man starting to squeal like a fangirl. But then he asked what kind of training he was doing under the sun. That made the kid irritated since he thought he was different from other people since he possessed some basic skills, but he didn't even know about this training method. So to show him, he released his aura from his body. Or maybe he just farted, not sure, but whatever it was, it had the old man reeling in shock. Since he wanted to get stronger himself, he asked the kid if he could join him, promising to bring him even more ice creams in the future. Yeah, the ice cream part did the trick, so the kid allowed him. The guy sat right beside the kid, but not even 1 minute in, he was already sweating like crazy. As for the system, this was a rare opportunity. After all, you don't get to meet a 5th level exorcist every day, so it decided to help out a little. It started doing something with the old man's head, and before he knew it, he was flat on the ground, completely unconscious. Next chapter, and the man was seen being dragged away by 2 nurses. As for the kid, he quickly lost interest in that weakling and prepared to head out into the city to protect the humans from danger. Cut to the outside, and Ewan was seen walking out of a shop with an ice cream in hand since the weather was just too hot. But just then, something flew by her at lightning-fast speeds, and as she turned to look at her hand, the ice cream was gone. Guess who it was? The kid, with the system, who was clearly not happy that he just stole his beloved disciple's ice cream. A minute or 2 later, she came out once more, and this time with 2 ice creams, one for the kid so he would stop bothering her. But same story like last time, the things vanished before she even got the chance to taste them. Yeah, the poor girl was almost at her limit, seconds away from crying. In her frustration, she shouted at the kid to give her back her share of the ice cream. Fast forward, and after a tiring day of goofing around, it was time to take a nap. As for the system behind him, he reminded the kid he should thank him since, thanks to him, he was the best treated mentally ill patient in the world. But the kid didn't even bother answering, just stepped into the coffin and drifted straight into the dream world. Cut to the night, and a guard was seen closing the doors to the building. That's when he suddenly heard some footsteps approaching, so he turned around to see what it was. And holy Jesus, what the heck was the artist thinking while drawing this nightmare? Yeah, the poor guard fainted on the spot, seeing that monstrosity standing in front of him. But lucky for him, the creature decided not to turn him into his next meal, and started walking into the building. Cut to the kid's room, who was still sound asleep. That's when he suddenly felt a strange presence in the air and snapped open his eyes. Seeing him suddenly wake up out of nowhere, they asked what was up and if it was because of the female ghost outside who had been following him. Cut to the outside, and someone was seen peeping into the kid's room from the bushes. It was the same ghost lady, who suddenly heard the little brat shouting, asking if he wanted her to get rid of her. But the kid told her she wasn't the problem. He was talking about the demon inside him that was trying to come out. Hearing that, the brat started panicking, but the system knew what was up. He spent his whole day stealing ice cream from his beloved disciple, and now karma was getting to him. Yup, the kid needed to use the toilet since his stomach was starting to act up after eating so much junk food. Next panel, and the brat was seen flying out of the place at full speed with the kid swaying behind her and was heading to the nearest restroom before things got messy. Just then, the purple ghost spotted them and prepared to give chase, but then she suddenly felt a presence behind her. Yeah, it was the same monstrosity, the walking nightmare straight out of the artist's deepest trauma, which he unleashed in this story. Seeing the terrifying sight, the poor girl's eyeballs almost popped out of her skull, but then she noticed the thing completely ignoring her and walking away. And guess where? Straight to the kid's room. As for the poor purple ghost, she was trying her best to act invisible so the thing wouldn't change its mind and come after her. But then she remembered those words from the kid telling her she wasn't strong enough and would only drag him down. That was all the motivation she needed, and without even thinking, she lunged straight at the creature to stop him. Sensing her coming, the creature turned his gaze toward her. And that stare was all it took for the girl to slam on the brakes as her spidey senses began tingling, warning her that this was a very bad idea. Cut to the kid, who was in absolute bliss, sitting on his toilet seat, releasing his inner demons. That's when they suddenly heard a scream coming from the outside and got startled. Before they could even process what was going on, the purple ghost girl, scared out of her mind with her massive plots, phased right in front of the kid, startling him. Annoyed, he tried pushing her out, but the girl refused to budge, and that annoyed the kid, and he lost it, screaming at her for disturbing his private time. But then the girl informed him about that monstrosity that went into his room moments ago and showed concern that it was after his coffin. Next panel, the kid was seen slamming the door open, and without even wiping his butt, he bolted to the place to stop the monster before it was too late. Cut to the place, and the kid finally arrived, and sure enough, there it was. The abomination itself rummaging through the coffin trying to find something. Just as it heard the kid's furious voice, it did that creepy, slow, full-body twist thing, and seeing the creature up close, the kid actually froze for a second. Then he slowly started to back away. Even the system chimed in, warning him about that thing. It was something called a puppet corpse, a monster being controlled from the shadows, and this one was supercharged with ridiculous power, meaning it wouldn't be easy to deal with. But guess what? The reason the kid was backing away wasn't because the thing looked scary, but because it smelled like really, really bad. Just then, he heard the purple ghost girl's voice saying she'd come to help. Yeah, help. The poor girl was shaking like crazy, clutching that broomstick, scared out of her mind, fully realizing they were definitely doomed. And our hero, instead of consoling the poor trembling girl, smacked her on the head for even thinking the planetary warrior would be afraid of something like that. All that stupidity made the creature furious, and it began slowly walking up to both of them, and strangely, this thing was actually calling out our hero's name, saying he must die. As for the system, it noticed something odd about the monster, but before it could warn our hero about it, the thing was already standing face to face with them. And if you think the stupid kid was shivering because he was scared, then think again. The reason he was acting like this was because the thing smelled like dog poop. Just then, the creature swung his arm to bash his face in, but our hero's stomach saved the day, because at that very instant, he turned around and started hurling. Turning around, he heard the ghost girl showing surprise that the kid had such good reflexes that he managed to dodge its attack. But our hero, on the other hand, didn't even know when the thing attacked. But they didn't have time to waste, because the thing immediately prepared to attack once more. And our boy, knowing that the thing was trouble, came up with the perfect plan to save himself, and that was to run like hell before that stinky thing managed to rub its stench all over him. And with that, started their cat and mouse chase, while the system tried to explain to the kid how to stop this thing, and as far as he could tell, there was no way of taking it out directly. Rather, they needed to find and defeat the one controlling this thing, who, according to the system, shouldn't be far from this place, because in order for him to control the corpse, he needed to be in a certain proximity of the thing itself. But our hero, as usual, was not listening at all, and just kept running around the place. But after a while, he finally snapped and decided it was time to teach that smelly walking corpse a lesson for trying to bully him like that. And with that, he took a cool stance and leaped towards the thing with his broomstick in hand, and the system, thinking quickly, used its mumbo-jumbo on the thing to enhance its power, and whack, one powerful bump on its forehead, and the thing went flying into the distance and crashed into a wall. But our boy wasn't done. He jumped right after the thing, and whack slammed the broom right on the creature's head, and the force of the impact was so strong that it set off a small explosion in the area. With that, everything fell silent as both of them waited for the dust to clear, and as it did, they saw the thing lying on top of rubble. But the system warned the kid not to drop his guard just yet, because it turns out the thing was still alive, and it slowly started to drag itself back to its feet. But then something unexpected happened, as the creature's face, out of nowhere, started to split in two. That startled our hero, because the sight was pretty disgusting. And then before he could even react, bam, a loud explosion erupted from the monster's body. But our hero somehow managed to remain unscathed, unlike the poor broom in his hand. The thing was on fire, and seeing the flames, something in the kid just snapped. Next panel, whack. He landed the thing right on the creature's noggin and kept bombarding him with the thing while yelling that hospitals do not allow people to play with fire. But he wasn't done with the thing and started running all around it in circles while chanting some gibberish, which immediately annoyed the system, since it meant he would be the one doing all of the work. And with no other choice, it got to work. And using that circle, he conjured a binding spell on the creature, and a bright yellow light erupted all around the thing, trapping it inside the barrier. But of course, all of the credit went to the fool instead of the system, who had been working his butt off just to cover up for this idiot's stupidities. As for the creature, they noticed something strange after it was trapped inside the barrier. Turns out that barrier severed the thing from the control of whoever sent it here, and now, finally free from the control, the creature fell to his knees, trying to force out a few words. This surprised our hero, and before he could process what was going on, something bound by chains shot out of the corpse, screaming and begging for our hero to end him. Turns out this thing was actually the soul of the monster before them, and according to the system, this person was burned alive by whoever was controlling him and refined into a puppet by trapping his soul inside that body. And seeing the state he was in, the system concluded he had been suffering for quite some time now, but he also told our hero if they kill him right now, his soul will scatter, and if that happened, this person won't be able to reincarnate. Even the ghost lady was feeling bad for the guy and begged our hero to do something. After what might have been the hardest effort his brain cells had made all day, the kid finally came up with something and started walking toward the thing. And sitting in front of the creature, he told the thing he just has one question and asked if he was crying because he was bullied by someone. The guy didn't know what to answer to that, but he did not need to, because his expression told the whole story. And just like that, our hero went right back to his usual stupidity and started tugging at the chains, trying to tear them off and break the ghost free from the curse. And the poor system was once more forced to cover up for his stupidity, so it started to chop off all the magical chains using its power. And bam, just like that, the thing shattered into pieces. Even the ghost itself was left stunned, seeing how easily this person managed to break him out of the bindings using nothing but his brute strength. But our hero was not done. On top of giving the guy his freedom, he also told him that his strength would greatly increase from now on as well. And the system, finally having enough of his nonsense, simply gave up and refused to help him any further in any way. But then the fool swore on his name that he would give him enough power to take his revenge on the ones who did this to him. And the system, already at its limit, did not even know what to do anymore, because now it had to help him, even if it did not want to. So with no other choice, he started spraying the ghost with some kind of a power drug for spirits or something. And the thing actually worked because the creature started getting double in size. But the poor system, on the other hand, was completely spent after exhausting so much of his power for his idiot of a host. As for the naked ghost, the guy was feeling healthier than ever. The system did warn him, however, that this boost in strength was temporary, since forcibly increasing his power permanently was against its rules, but it would last him enough that he could take care of the ones who did this to him. Meanwhile, our hero, who was actually scared of the thing, now tried playing tough, warning it not to try and steal his coffin ever again. And the thing, grateful for everything he did for him, just bowed his head, thanking the kid, and turned around to leave. Fast forward, and the fat director was seen cycling his way towards the hospital. Just then, he noticed a car stopping next to him, so he stopped to see what was going on. And to his surprise, he saw Director Luo Yu-mine in his night pajamas, calling out to him from inside the vehicle, asking where was he heading off to at such an hour. Turns out both of them were making their way towards our hero's place, which surprised both of them, but guess they didn't have anything else to talk about, because after some time, both men walked into the place and found the guard lying unconscious on the ground, with the main gate sliced into pieces. That was when Director Luo Yu-mine revealed that the reason he had come to visit the hospital at this hour was because he had received a report saying the place was being targeted by someone dangerous. Because of that, he had a hunch that someone was after Chen Zhuo. Next panel, and both men were running towards our hero's room to check up on him. Along the way, old man Luo Yu-mine told the fat director that he could leave the rest to him, but there was no way he was leaving the kid alone with this old fox trying to manipulate him, so he refused. With that, both of them arrived outside his place, but just as they were about to enter, little Brat appeared, blocking their path, warning both of them to turn around and leave, since her master was asleep. But the old man, thinking he was some big shot, brought out his badge, reminding the girl he was a high-ranking officer on official business who came here to check up on the kid and asked her to move out of the way. Yeah, no, the little brat just spat on that and told the guy to turn around and leave before they used force against him. Luckily for him, the fat director stepped in before things escalated any further. He reminded the girl that he was Dong Zhu and that he was here on urgent business to discuss something with Chenju, then politely asked her to let them through. That got both of them wondering if they should. After all, Chenju did trust that fatty, so in the end, they had no other choice but to let both of them into the place. But then their real trial started, of getting the damn lid off of that massive coffin. But no matter how much both of them pulled, the thing didn't even budge. So in the end, they convinced themselves that the kid must have used some kind of a magic talisman to seal off the thing, instead of admitting both of them were just too weak. That is when they suddenly heard a frantic voice from the back of a man, informing the old man about a large fire that broke out not far from this place, which their bureau believed was caused by a supernatural being. Neither of the men wanted to go, but they knew they had no other choice, so the old man suggested they quickly scout around this whole place for any dangers and leave to check up on the fire. Cut a couple of minutes earlier, outside a rundown apartment building, and inside was a man performing some kind of dark magic ritual, and behind the rat-faced fool, two of his goons were murmuring something like they had a bad feeling about all of this. Just then, something unexpected happened, and the rat man started coughing out blood, so the two goons immediately rushed over to check on him, asking what had happened, and heard the rat man saying that somehow his puppet escaped his control, and now, for some reason, he wasn't able to link to it anymore. Turns out these three fools belonged to the demon cult, and the goons, hearing what the man just said, refused to believe his words, since that ritual he was performing was considered one of the most advanced techniques of their cult. As for the rat man, he knew he needed to report this to their superiors immediately, so he prepared to head out, instructing both fools to guard the place while he was away. But little did he know, something was waiting for him just outside that door. The two men tried warning him, but the rat man refused to listen to a single word and kept on screaming at both of them, but then he suddenly felt a powerful presence near him and turned to see what it was. Yep, the very same spirit of the naked man was standing right in front of him, with his schlong still dangling between his legs, and to make it worse, the man realized that somehow he was now even stronger than all three of them combined. Cut to the outside, and both men had finally arrived at the place, and realized the green flames they were seeing were no ordinary fire. It was caused by a powerful spirit, and it won't extinguish unless the spirit responsible for it was taken care of. Realizing he can't let those flames spread any further, the old man immediately activated his powers, shouting for the fat man to get this area cleared off of these civilians. As for the people, they weren't even listening to the fat man. Instead, they were wondering who this old man was, since his technique looked awfully similar to the captain of the soul-suppressing division. But they refused to believe someone like him would wear pink pajamas like those. Cut a couple of minutes back once more. The naked spirit man was entering the room, with the rat man trying to take control over him using some enchantments, but nothing was working. So with no other choice, he ordered his goons to get ready. They would need to use force to capture this guy this time. Hearing his orders, both fools activated their techniques and started running towards the naked man to stop his movement. And surprisingly, they managed to bind his body using some kind of magical ropes. Just as that happened, the rat man leaped towards the monster with his wooden sword in hand and drove the thing into his stomach, completing the enslavement ritual. The two goons in the back got all excited seeing this, but the rat man himself knew something was wrong, and sure enough, as he turned to look at the guy, he showed no signs of being under his control. Instead, the thing was preparing to use this chance to counterattack. Next panel, the whole place was filled with the man's screams as a bright green flame erupted from the creature's body, engulfing both of them inside. Seeing their master being burned alive like that, one of the goons lost it and tried saving him, but the one with the ponytail warned him it was dangerous getting close to those flames. But the man refused to listen, broke himself free, and started running towards the guy. Hearing him coming, the naked ghost just gave him a look and threw his fist towards the fool, but someone pushed him out of the way at the final second. Turns out it was that same ponytail guy who sacrificed himself to save this idiot and was sent flying through the air and hurled off into the distance. Using what little strength was left in his body, he warned the fool he wasn't strong enough to take on that thing, and told him to run. As for the ghost, he turned his attention back towards the rat man, who was somehow still alive, and the sight terrified the kid to his core. So in the end, he turned around and started running out of the place while the thing finished off both of them. After some time, that same man was seen staring at the burning apartment with tears in his eyes as he vowed that he was going to avenge both of them. That is when he was suddenly approached by someone, which startled him. Turns out it was our hero, who finally arrived at the place and was asking the fool why he was crying and if that was his house that was on fire. As for the system, it was yelling at our hero for taking so long to get out of bed, since the situation had already gotten out of hand. Turning towards the building, he saw the fat director and the old man standing in the distance, so deciding to get a closer look, he grabbed the man by his arm, offering to take him closer to that place so he could get a better view of what was going on. But the man, who was already trying to escape, tried protesting, but our hero had already made up his mind, so he started dragging him straight towards the two men he was trying to avoid at all costs. Seeing him finally show up, both their faces lit up, which surprised the guy, and he wondered who this kid could be. But deciding not to waste more time here, he came up with an excuse that he had something important to take care of at home, so he would be taking his leave. The kid, however, refused to let him go, especially after going through all the trouble of squeezing him to the front. Just then, while struggling, our hero accidentally exposed the tattoo on the back of the man's neck, and both men instantly recognized that symbol. It was the sign of the demon cult. Next panel, both of them had the poor fool pinned to the ground, while the kid and the system stared at the whole scene in confusion. But before he could ask what was going on, the old man gave him a thumbs up for acting quickly and capturing this person. But neither of them had any clue what he was talking about, but the kid decided to just stay silent and accept the praises. That is when suddenly a loud explosion startled both of them. Turning around, they saw chunks of debris engulfed in those green flames falling towards the civilians. Next chapter, and the old man was explaining the situation to our hero, asking if he had any way of extinguishing these flames, but our hero remained unresponsive for some reason, so the fat director had to step up, and he whispered in our boy's ear that this was something not even the old man was able to resolve with his power, so they needed his strength to save everyone. And for some reason, that angered our hero, and he started screaming at the fat director for being so useless that he can't even deal with something so trivial as a small fire. On top of that, he was bad-mouthing old man Luo Yumin despite being weaker than him, which was something he cannot tolerate from his fellow planetary warrior. But he wasn't done. Next was old man's turn, and the kid, without any hesitation, smacked the poor man on the head, since all the time he spent teaching him went to waste. But the system reminded the kid they didn't have time for that right now, because if they didn't deal with that fire soon, it was going to spread all over this neighborhood. Surprisingly, this time the kid actually decided to listen to the system for once, and told both men not to worry about anything, saying that he would be taking care of the situation from here on out. But the old man had other plans. He wanted to see what method the kid was planning to use to extinguish those green flames, so he told the fat man he was going to follow after him. Of course, the fat man wanted to go as well, but the old man reminded him he exhausted most of his strength, so he wasn't strong enough to shield him from the fire, but the fat man had already thought of a plan for that. Next panel, and all three of them were walking into the building, with our hero making it clear they were not to do anything stupid in there that might hold him back. After some time, all three of them arrived outside the room and saw two ghosts locked in an intense battle, and their clash was what had been causing the green flames to spread throughout the entire building. The sight terrified both men, since both sides were burning through their spiritual power without restraint, which was absurd, because it meant both their spirits were going to be destroyed, and if they intervened, both of them would end up a pile of ashes and bones on the ground. Meanwhile, our hero was more curious about the body of the rat man on the ground and wondered what could have caused this, so the system informed him that this was because of that green fire, so he needed to be careful while approaching those two. But of course, the kid completely ignored his warning and instead turned towards both of them, saying they can't be playing with fire indoors because it was dangerous, and both ghosts immediately turned their attention towards the kid. I'm still not clear what the kid did to this rat-faced freak, but the moment his eyes landed on the kid, he immediately shifted all his rage towards him instead, screaming at the top of his lungs that all of this was his fault. Yeah, no. One slap from the kid, and the fool was out for the count. Even the naked ghost man was left shocked, staring in disbelief at how easily the kid had taken him down. And our hero, completely ignoring the fool behind him, turned his attention toward the naked man, reminding him that he had already warned him earlier not to play with fire, and the guy could only apologize. But the kid was not having it and started smacking him around for disobeying his orders, even after he saved him from those chains earlier. Seeing himself getting completely ignored, the rat man felt insulted, so risking his soul being completely obliterated, he began gathering all of his remaining strength and started forming a Rasengan, planning to blow our hero to bits. And with that, he leaped towards our hero, who had absolutely no idea what was about to come. The two men tried warning him to watch out, but it was already too late for that. Just then, in that split second, a flash of light appeared, and bam, the rat man struck. But the naked ghost man threw himself in the way and used his body as a shield to block the attack. Furious, the rat man cursed at the guy for still trying to meddle with his affairs, but the naked ghost made it clear he needed to go through him to get to that kid. And with that, a Dragon Ball Z-style battle broke out, with both spirits going all out against each other while the fool himself watched in amazement. The system, however, noticed that both sides were burning through their spiritual energy at an alarming rate, and neither side was going to survive if this kept up for any longer. And our hero, seeing that the naked ghost was in danger, immediately prepared to help him out, but it was already too late to do anything. The rat man, realizing the odds were no longer in his favor, activated his final trump card and chose to self-destruct, intending to take everyone in the vicinity down with him. Even the two men in the back braced themselves to be isekai'd, since once this technique is activated, there was no stopping it. But then they noticed something strange. Even the system was surprised at what he was seeing. The naked ghost curled his body into a ball around the rat man, choosing to absorb the blast in order to save everyone else. And with that, the rat man exploded with a violent explosion. But thanks to the naked ghost's quick thinking, the blast was completely absorbed by his body. But it wasn't a happy ending as everyone had thought, because in doing so, the naked ghost had sacrificed his spiritual body, losing any chance of being resurrected. Meaning, once he was gone for good. But our hero, who still didn't know about that, asked the ghost why did he risk his own life to save him. The ghost himself didn't know the reason, but it didn't matter to our hero. And with a smile on his face, he told the ghost man that after he gets resurrected, he needed to come and find him. And the man in his final moments promised he would, and right before our hero's eyes, his body scattered into the wind and completely disappeared. Meanwhile, the two men in the back were wondering if they should tell him that the man wasn't coming back, but they never got the chance because the kid immediately went back to his goofy self and hogged all the credit for taking care of the rat man and the fire. So, deciding not to waste time explaining what actually happened, both men chose to just go along with that and praised our hero for doing an excellent job. The old man, however, had something else on his mind. This kid not only broke the puppet technique of that rat man, but was somehow also able to use a random soul to fight for him, which was obviously something not even the most skilled exorcists are able to do. So like a flash, he appeared in front of our hero, and without beating around the bush, invited him to join his department. Yeah, like the fat man was gonna let that happen on his watch, so he told the old man that kid was an indispensable member of their police station, so he won't simply allow him to be taken away. But the old man reminded him that the kid never officially joined his department, meaning he was free to choose whichever department he wanted to join. So to settle it once and for all, both men turned towards the poor kid, who didn't want anything to do with this drama, and asked which department he wanted to join. It was a very difficult decision indeed, but the answer was simple: neither. He was the planetary warrior and won't join anyone else, no matter what. After giving his answer, the kid turned around and prepared to leave. But the old man wasn't done, so he tried stopping him. But the kid, completely ignoring him, looked out the window and saw the whole place filled with a crowd, all eager to meet with their hero, and as usual, all of them were praising him for his bravery. Look at that grin on both their faces. Mentally retarded my ass. These two were enjoying every second of this attention. Meanwhile, in the back, the old man was going on and on, dropping offer after offer to convince the kid to join him. But our hero wasn't even listening to a single word. And before he knew it, he suddenly vanished right before their eyes. Well, not vanished, because the fool had actually leaped off of this multi-story building without even thinking. And to both their horror, the idiot started plummeting towards the ground at full speed, while the poor system screamed frantically at the fool for always making things difficult for him. But somehow, he managed to break the kid's fall by catching him at the final second. Everyone was amazed seeing him pull off that stunt and coming out without even a single scratch on his body. everyone except the system, who was having a full-on meltdown in the background. As for the fat director, he was asking the old man if he still thinks he would be able to handle that kid if he agreed to join his department, and the poor man was now genuinely wondering if it would be worth it after all. Cut to the next day, and our hero had made headlines all over the country for his bravery in dealing with the fire and the ghosts that were the cause of it. And right now, he, along with the gang, was sitting atop a rooftop reading through the article, and that got our hero thinking, and he asked the three if they know what a hero is, but neither of them knew the answer to that question. So the system explained to the kid, a hero is someone who protects the weak and always does the right thing. So the kid asked if that was the case, then how does one distinguish what is right and wrong? And the little brat, after thinking for a bit, turned towards the kid with a smile on her face, saying she wasn't sure either, but she knows everything he does is always the right thing to do. Cut to some other part of the city, and inside the same hospital where our hero was admitted, a nurse was seen complaining that she was left behind to close everything up, even though her shift was over. Furious, she turned to leave the place while cursing the one who left her here with this task and happened to pass by the hospital's morgue. Just then, one of the doors to the storage compartments suddenly swung open on its own, and the woman, who was just outside that room, got startled, hearing the voice coming from inside. But she convinced herself she was just hearing things and prepared to leave. But just then, the door to the room suddenly opened up on its own, so she instantly turned around to see what it was. But the thing slammed shut almost instantly as she looked back, and this time she was sure she wasn't imagining things and asked whoever it was to show themselves. And that turned out to be the worst thing she could have said, because that someone decided to do as the pretty lady was saying. By the time she noticed its presence, it was already too late, and the poor woman, while screaming, fell to her butt, seeing the horrific sight in front of her. As for the creature, it slowly started creeping closer to her face for some reason, which terrified the girl even more, because that thing had some kind of insect-looking thing inside its mouth that was staring right at her. In another part of the hospital, the bald doctor was seen thanking an old man for helping him decipher the contents of the papers given to him by our hero. That is when, suddenly, the old man sensed a strange presence around them and got on his guard. Meanwhile, outside, a bunch of doctors and hospital staff were seen frantically running, and right behind them, that same corpse that was trying to infect them with the bug monster inside its throat. Suddenly, the bald man tripped and fell to the ground. He tried calling for help, but the two people with him were already long gone, and the man, realizing this was his end, just lay there waiting for the thing to finish him off. But just as the thing was about to end him, a bright yellow light appeared, wrapping all over its body. Looking back, the creature saw that same old man who finally managed to catch up to the thing and was responsible for the binding spell. But then upon looking closer at the creature, the old man realized that the thing wasn't a ghost, nor was it possessed by one. Rather, it was just a walking corpse, which shouldn't be possible. But that brief realization gave the creature its opening, and it managed to break itself free from the restraints. And without wasting any more time, it leaped into the air, coming straight for the old man. But the old fool was ready. He immediately summoned his magic brush and began scribbling symbols onto a talisman. Just as the creature came within range, he slammed it onto the creature's body, causing it to stop dead in its tracks. Seeing that things had quieted down, the bald doctor came running to assess the situation, and upon looking at the thing, he informed the old man this was one of the corpses they had stored in their morgue, and asked how did he come back to life. But the old man didn't have the answer to that question either, so he told the guy to immediately contact the soul restraining department and report everything that happened here. Cut a couple of hours later, an old man Luo Yumin was seen luring our hero into the hospital using the smell of a juicy chicken in his hand, something that surprised everyone in his way, since this was the last thing they expected to see from the hero of their city and the most powerful cultivator, arriving inside the room where the creature was being kept. The old man informed the kid of the whole situation, how a corpse suddenly came back to life and attacked many of the doctors last night, but they managed to restrain the thing for now. Not sure why, but the doctor was looking a bit nervous seeing him entering the room and informed the kid that this man used to be a patient in their hospital, but due to some severe illness, he couldn't make it and was declared deceased. After giving him the gist of it, the old man asked our hero to examine the man and see if he could figure out what might have caused this to happen to him. The kid had absolutely no clue, but the system, on the other hand, had a hunch about what might be responsible for this. Meanwhile, in the back, the doctor showed concern and asked the old man if this case could be similar to the one that appeared 100 years ago. The old man himself was worried that might be the case, and if so, then things were a lot more complicated than they thought, because according to that case file, a parasitic insect from the ghost realm enters the body of a person and slowly devours their soul from the inside, until nothing is left, after which it takes over their body. And to make things worse, the insect also has the ability to transfer its offspring to other hosts, which meant there was a very high chance that more people in the hospital could already be infected as well. And sure enough, that was the case. The system confirmed it, since he was the one who had written that case file himself, and told the kid to warn everyone immediately. But instead of doing that, the fool smacked the corpse back on the bed. Fearing that he might break the spell that was keeping the thing under control, the old man immediately approached our hero and asked if by any chance he managed to find a solution to deal with that problem. And the fool, without even flinching, told the guy to cut him open and dig out whatever was living inside the man. Yeah, no. The system immediately told him not to put stupid ideas in their heads, because if they did that, the souls of the infected would scatter and they would lose all chances of resurrection. Luckily, the old man was well informed and he told the kid the same thing, because that way they would be the ones taking out these people, which was something they can't do. For some reason, that made our hero recall the words of the little brat and the system about heroes doing the right thing to protect the weak, and he went straight back to his goofy self, telling the old man to leave everything to him because he knows exactly what to do. But the poor system, who already knew he would be the one stuck doing all the work to cover up for his stupidity, shouted for him to stop whatever he was planning on doing. Yep, just as he had feared, the fool jumped right on the bed and started doing some weird ritual dance or something while singing some stupid things, telling the insect to come out, and then he did the most stupid thing imaginable. He ripped off the talisman from the creature's head and the thing immediately regained control over the corpse. Turning around, it saw its first target standing right in front of it. The two men tried warning him, but the thing had already lunged towards him. Just as it was about to parasitize the kid, the old man jumped in the middle, and using his powers, he managed to save the kid while shouting for everyone to evacuate the building immediately while he deals with this creature. Yeah, no. The stupid kid still had no idea how much trouble he was in, but this time, the system knew things were really bad, so it tried warning the kid, but since he refused to listen, he decided to use its last resort and prepared to forcibly take over his body to save everyone. And with that, he activated the soul separation technique, and the kid lost all control over himself. Not only that, he suddenly found himself standing in the middle of an endless dark void. Just as he was trying to understand what happened, he suddenly saw a screen in the distance and found himself standing on the other side. That shocked the kid, and he wondered why he wasn't able to control his body anymore. Meanwhile, on the outside, the system had already taken full control over the body, and now finally free to do anything, he prepared to show everyone just how powerful he really was. Next chapter, and he was walking towards the insect man, telling old man Luo to step aside and let him handle things from here. Seeing him acting in such a cool way, both men were taken aback, but knowing the kid was the only hope they had of solving this problem, Luo decided to trust him once more and release the man from his spell. Just as he did that, the creature inside of the corpse took control of the body once more, and it lunged at our boy to infect him as well. But the thing was, the one standing before him wasn't that same mentally ill kid, and seeing the man coming, he immediately transferred his ghostly energy into the palm of his hands, and right before everyone's eyes, delivered a devastating strike right onto the man's stomach. And that hit was so powerful that it literally pushed the man's soul out of his body along with the parasite that had latched onto the spirit. With the soul now separate from the body, the system prepared to end the creature and free the soul from its grasp. With that, he moved like a flash of light, slicing through both of them with his 2 fingers, and as a result, freed the man from the mind control effect. But it was still far from over. Although the creature was now separated from the host, they now had to deal with another problem, and that was saving the damned soul of that man from obliteration, because in the process of taking out that bug, our hero severely damaged the soul, and now his spirit was disintegrating at a rapid pace. But the system wasn't worried about that, and even told the old man to stay calm because he had everything under control. What do you know, the dude literally brought out a suture needle and started stitching the soul right before both men's eyes. This shocked both men because, for one, the way the kid was moving his hands with that needle was just insane for the bald doctor, because only an expert surgeon can stitch flesh in such a manner. And 2, something like stitching a soul was something that was never seen or heard of before this day. Before they knew it, the soul was back to 100%, or to be exact, over 100%, because the system even revitalized its very essence. After that was taken care of, the system patted the spirit on its head like it was a child. Telling it to head back to its body, the thing obeyed and zoomed past both stunned men and entered back into its original host, seeing the man sitting back up. The doctor was stunned. As for the old man, the guy was hyped, seeing our hero pull off the impossible, asking if he could teach him how to do that as well. But by then, the system had already exited that messed up head of his and was regretting entering into the mind of a mentally unstable person, because that place was scary as hell. Hearing him calling him a mentally unstable person, our boy lost it and lashed out at the thing for saying he was a lunatic, which annoyed the system because first, he was not lying, and second, he made him look like a hero in front of all these people, and this was the thanks he was getting. But since neither man were able to see the floating green slime in front of them, they figured the kid was screaming at old man Luo for some reason. So he asked the doctor if they somehow broke that kid's brain even further. The doctor assured him not to worry, the kid was just a little too hyped right now. After all, look at him pull off those dance moves. Yeah, dance moves. Little did they know, the poor guy was getting zapped by his own system. In the middle of all that drama, an even balder doctor barged into the room with some urgent news. Turns out, while they were having trouble dealing with just that one insect, the lady doctor from earlier, who was infected by that thing when this whole mess started, was going around giving people mouth to mouth and infecting all of them in the process. And now their whole hospital was one giant infestation. Hearing that man's words, the old man knew this was bad, because taking care of one of those creatures was trouble enough, and now they had almost half the hospital staff infected. So he asked our hero what they were going to do. Our boy, though, just signaled the man to stop panicking. After all, this was the reason headquarters sent their #1 agent to this planet in the first place, to save the foolish humans. Whoa, what's up with that new hairstyle? Anyway, old man, seeing the kid so serious, asked one very important question. which he had been meaning to ask for a while now. What damned headquarters was he talking about? Cut to some other part of the city, where inside one of the apartments a very important meeting was taking place. Turns out these 3 people were the ones behind releasing that insect into the wild. But here is the thing, that wasn't the only insect that was released by these people. These guys sent out hundreds of those creatures out there in the city, knowing full well the consequences of their actions. And right now, they were congratulating someone by the name of Minister Lu because thanks to them, this plan played out so smoothly. As for the person sitting in front of them, they calmly thanked both men for an excellent job. Turns out the reason they did all this was because they were planning something big, and for that they needed the soul suppression department occupied. So all these soul-sucking insects were just a distraction for something bigger. And the one behind it all, what do you know? A very, and I repeat, a very healthy and dangerous-looking woman, who for some reason one day woke up and decided it was a good idea to open the gate to the ghost world and release those evil entities all over the city and cause mayhem for no damned reason. Yeah, they were planning on releasing an army of ghosts into this world. Cut to the city, and the insects had already taken over the bodies of countless civilians who were running around giving mouth-to-mouth to anyone in sight. And in that same place was our favorite fat director trying his hardest to contain the situation as much as possible until the backup arrived. Just then, he saw a car pulling up behind him with Yu stepping out, informing him she wasn't able to find our boy anywhere, and his phone was also switched off so she couldn't contact him either. Cut back to the hospital, and not sure why, but the infected doctors were sticking their heads through walls now for some reason. Oh wait, no, my bad. The old man was the one driving all their heads into the wall to incapacitate them. As for our hero, the guy had a beauty in hand and was stepping on a knocked out guy. The system itself was pretty hyped about this whole situation, and was pointing out the remaining infected who were trying to get away. And our boy, being the meathead he was, started running after a poor doctor who wasn't even infected, and his plan was to beat the ever-living daylight out of him as well. That is when they finally stepped out of the hospital, and all of them froze, seeing the sight that awaited them. The whole damn place looked like a war zone, with countless zombies running around the whole area looking for their next victims. Next chapter, and it was already the next day, with the news reporters warning the remaining people to stay in their homes and lock themselves in because things were only getting worse for now. Turns out, both the Exorcist Police and the Soul Suppression Department failed to contain the situation last night and were forced to retreat for now to rethink their strategy, leaving the citizens to fend for themselves. In the middle of her broadcast, she spotted some zombies walking up to her, and that startled the poor woman. And instead of trying to run like any normal person would, she started screaming for someone to save her, and of course that did not work. The zombie pinned her to the ground on live television and started transferring the parasite inside her body to make her one of their own. And all of this was being live monitored by both departments, who still had no clue how they were supposed to handle the situation. As for the one person who had the power to do something, he was busy slurping down noodles, not having a single care in the world that the whole world outside these walls was going to hell. Terrified of the whole situation, the fat man finally had enough and stood up, telling our boy to take this seriously and find a solution. Otherwise, their whole city was going to turn into the land of the undead within 24 hours. Old Luo, knowing that there was no use pressuring that kid while he was eating, told the fat man to stay calm for now and asked him to turn towards the screen because there was something he wanted to show him. Turns out their whole force was deployed to the city and were doing everything in their power to contain the situation. But despite all that, the virus was spreading at an alarming rate and had already covered a considerable amount of the city within these past few hours. And he was sure something like this didn't just happen by chance. Someone was behind all of this, and this person was likely trying to keep all their forces occupied, and his suspicions went to the demon cult. But of course, the fool sitting beside him had to ruin such a serious moment with his stupidity, but ignoring him, the old man started brainstorming, wondering what those people could be planning, and remembered the incoming ghost festival that was just around the corner. That shocked the fat man, because if that was the case and what he was thinking was true, then the consequences would be catastrophic if those people managed to open the gate to the other world. Finally realizing the danger, old man Luo decided to establish 2 safe zones in the city, one in the east and the other in the south district, and do whatever it takes to contain the rapid spread of the virus. The fat man agreed to the plan and decided to take his men to the northern front, but the old man knew how useless his department was, so he assured the fat man that as soon as they were finished with their side, they would immediately come to lend them a hand. Our hero, hearing that the men were planning on heading out, asked if he could tag along as well. Yeah, that was a problem because they didn't want to deal with babysitting him the whole time, so they started wondering what to do. The fat man suggested they leave him here for now because I'm not sure if this is true or not, but according to him, his ghost friends can only appear during nighttime, so with the sun still up, he was only going to cause them trouble. With that thought in mind, he approached our hero, telling him he needed to rest up because he had been working very hard since last night. On top of that, he pointed out that the dinner at this place was even better than what he was eating, so he should also give that a try. And just so he won't run off while they were away, he put little Yu in charge of keeping him safe. After he was done, he simply turned around and started walking out of the place with the old man, and our hero, watching them both leave in such a cool way, was starting to get really annoyed. Trembling with jealousy, he screamed after both of them, reminding them he was supposed to be the hero here and not them. and since both men just left the place ignoring him, he fell to the floor, throwing a tantrum like a toddler, screaming for them to take him with them too. Seeing him acting like that, poor Yu didn't know how she was supposed to calm a grown-ass man down, so she just told the kid they were just worried about him because he didn't get any sleep last night, but the kid was convinced they both just got rid of him because they thought he was useless now. I mean, he wasn't wrong to think that, because that really is the case. Yu herself knew that was the reason, but since she knew what would happen if she said that out loud, she just told the kid he was just overthinking it. The system, on the other hand, wasn't so thoughtful, so it straight up told him he was right. They considered him useless. Seeing him making that face, Yu leaned in closer and assured the kid that both of them were just worried about his safety. After all, he was the most important person inside this building, so they couldn't afford to let him get hurt out there. That seemed to do the trick, and the kid asked if that really was true, so both of them, with those cheerful expressions, assured him that was exactly the case. Hearing that, the kid immediately jumped up and started dancing or whatever, which surprised both of them. And what do you know, all that reassurance backfired because hearing that he was special only encouraged the kid to go out even more, so he bolted from the place. The poor girl tried stopping him, but he was just too fast, and he managed to easily outrun her and ran straight to the exit door to stop both of them from hogging all the glory for themselves. Next panel, and he was already outside looking around for the two men, but by then they were already gone. That is when he sensed someone coming towards them and got all serious. Even the two standing behind him got surprised seeing him acting like that out of nowhere. Turns out he was staring at a homeless-looking guy who was gliding through the streets on his sword. Seeing him coming, the system showed surprise because all the cultivators were supposed to be out in the city, stopping the zombies. On top of that, according to his scouter, this guy was just a third-rank cultivator. Our boy, though, didn't care about any of that, and for some reason reached down to take off his trusty flip-flops. But to their surprise, the man completely ignored all of them and flew past them as if they weren't even there. Seeing him do that, our hero called out to the man, asking where he was going. Surprised, the man turned around to see what was going on, only for a flip-flop to land squarely on his face, and bam, he face-planted right onto the ground. This shocked both Yu and the system, who even lost his green color, seeing the kid pull off that stunt for no reason. On top of that, he wasn't finished because he was already cracking his knuckles to beat the hell out of him. Seeing him acting in such a way, the system reminded the kid that man wasn't infected, but just a normal person. The man himself was pissed after what happened to him and started cursing at our hero, demanding an answer. With blood dripping down his nose, he started getting back up, telling the three he was from the Soul Suppression Bureau, meaning they just assaulted an officer. Yeah, no, to hell with his authority. Because our boy channeled his inner Asian mom and without any hesitation landed another slipper on the man's face, sending him flying back. By then, Yu herself was pretty annoyed, reminding the kid that man was supposed to be on their side. As for the system, he finally understood why those two didn't take this lunatic with them, because the reason he beat the daylight out of that man was that he wanted his swords for himself, because he also wanted to look cool while flying on that thing, but for some reason the thing wasn't listening to him. Annoyed, the system informed him he can't just steal another person's weapon and expect it to listen to him. But our boy, completely ignoring him, put the swords back into their sheaths and started marching out of the place with his new weapons, telling Yu to follow him. Seeing him so confidently walking towards the street, the system asked if he even knew which way the safe zone even was. Cut to some other part of the city, and two elderly people were seen slowly making their way towards the safe zone. Just then, a lunatic appeared behind both of them out of nowhere, accusing them of being infected, and guess how he came to that conclusion. The way they were walking was too weird. Terrified, both of them bolted from the place, while the annoyed system smacked him on the head for doing something so stupid. Even Yu was pissed seeing him act in such a way towards the elderly. Cut to another part of the city, and a person was seen watching the news while taking a bath. That's when she suddenly felt a presence nearby and turned around, only to find a creep ogling her from head to toe, asking if she happened to see those little shrimps floating anywhere. You know, the woman immediately took what she could get her hands on and bolted out of the place. But here's my question, what is up with the design of that bath? I mean, what was going through that person's mind when putting that thing there? And not to mention, with a massive window right next to the sidewalk for anyone to take a peek inside while the person is doing their thing. The scene cuts once more, and this time it's a mother trying to drag her toddler to the safe zone, but the kid refused to leave without his toys he left back home. And of course, the lunatic appears with that evil grin plastered on his face, asking about the toy and if he would be willing to trade it for his sword. Oh boy, the kid turned into Usain Bolt and sprinted from the place while screaming his lungs out, with his mother dangling in air behind him. Before they knew it, it was already nighttime, but they weren't able to find even a single bad person around the city. But it wasn't all a loss, because according to the system, throughout the whole day, our hero, with his stupidity, successfully managed to scare away the remaining residents who refused to leave their homes for the safe zones. Just then, Yu saw the news on a massive television screen nearby that was about the North City safe zone, which unfortunately had fallen. This scared the girl because that is where their fat director was with his men. Hearing that his fat comrade's life was in danger, our hero immediately pulled up his sleeves to go and rescue him. But then again, they had no clue where the place was. Just then, a bunch of panicking men rushed past them, screaming that they were heading towards the North Zone to provide support to the men stationed there. And before they knew it, all of them were gone. But this was perfect for them. so Yu suggested they follow those people. Just as they were about to move, they saw the same ghost lady floating past them. And that surprised our hero, and guess the words that came out of his mouth when he saw her face. "Big booby coward lady." Yeah, he said that, but luckily the girl didn't mind and landed to greet our boy. But he was more curious about the clothes she was wearing. Turns out, while he was running around like an idiot doing absolutely nothing, she got approached by the Suppression Bureau, and they hired her as their officer. This shocked both Yu and the system, because this was the first time they heard a ghost getting scouted in a department whose sole purpose is to eradicate ghosts. Turns out she was a special case because, according to the department, she was a rare ghost who possessed some kind of 9-yin constitution or something, and since no one knew what she was talking about, Little Blob came to clutch and explained that it means she possessed immense potential to grow strong. So the Bureau decided to take advantage of that and scouted her as their own officer. And since our hero already rejected to take her in, she had nowhere else to go, and this world is too dangerous for ghosts like her. So in the end, she ended up taking them on that offer. Well, what do you know? Hearing all that, the fool standing before her started getting emotional, and his reason was that she chose those people over him, even after saying she was going to follow him forever, completely forgetting he was the one who drove the poor thing away in the first place when she needed help. On top of that, he was calling her a lying traitor, and to make it worse, he dropped to the ground and started rolling like a child, throwing a tantrum. I do not even know what is going on now, because the girl herself started doing the same thing, rolling in frustration because guess what? She never wanted to take this crummy job either. The only reason she did was because she had no other choice. And now those people were forcing her to study every day and making her clock in and out whenever they felt like it. Screaming, she told our hero she still wants to be by his side. Seeing her in this state, the system loses it and starts scolding the kid because all of this was his fault. First, he called her useless and left her to fend for herself, knowing she was nowhere near strong enough to fight off the evil ghosts lurking around the whole city. And then he started calling her a traitor when she finally found a place that took her in. And in his anger, he started slapping the fool, telling him to go there and apologize to the girl immediately. Yeah, the kid knew the system was right, so he crouched in front of her asking if she knew where those people were heading. The ghost girl answered yes. Hearing her answer, he extended his hand and instead of apologizing himself, told the girl he forgives her for choosing someone else over him and asked if she would like to become his disciple. Hearing that, the girl's face immediately lit up. Even the system was hyped, so he decided to activate the binding ritual to officially make her our hero's lackey. With that, our hero took her hand, and as soon as they touched, bam, the contract activated, and a powerful energy wave shot out from the area, with some kind of symbol appearing on the ghost girl's forehead. And just like that, she was officially a part of the Team Retards and was extremely happy about it too. So first things first, she took off that annoying uniform and literally tossed it towards poor Yu, which left the poor girl wondering if ghosts really hate them so much. The girl, though, completely ignoring her, flew straight towards our boy and started using her womanly charm on him, asking what were his next plans for her since now they were companions. Yeah, no, little brat immediately showed up to put this horny little ghost in her place, telling her to keep her hands off of him. Seeing that they were finally up, our boy got all happy, but the little brat was still pissed about the fact that he took in that woman without even consulting them. But ignoring her, our boy patted the girl on the back, telling her to lead the way because they still need to save his fat partner. Oh, and he did call her a big booby coward again. Next chapter, and all of them were seen running through the city to get to the location. Just then, Purple Head noticed something and told everyone to stop. Apparently, she heard some strange, scary voices coming from ahead and warned our hero about it. Why does she even act like this? I mean, she's already a dead ghost, so what could even frighten her? Well, anyway, whatever it was under the rubble in front of them. And the closer they got, the scarier the voices became, because it sounded as if some demon child was crying for help, you know, like those scary horror movie setups where every survival instinct says do not go closer. But the characters still do it anyway and then act surprised when things go wrong. And since he wasn't an idiot like those characters and didn't want anything to do with any of that, he shouted for the Purple Head to stop shivering. As for little brat, she was put in charge to go and find out what was making that sound. With no choice, the girl did as told and started digging under the rubble. Turns out it was just a child who got stuck under there somehow. The system and Yu recognized that kid from this morning, the one our hero scared off with his charm, but our boy had no memory of that, so he started walking up to the kid, asking where his parents were. According to the kid, he got separated from his mother when they were heading to the safe zone. Hearing his story, all the girls got all emotional. Of course, except for our hero and the two behind him, who just kept staring at the kid with those weird expressions because they didn't know how to handle this situation. So Yu comforted the kid, asking our hero what should they do now because they can't leave him out here on his own because it was too dangerous. Knowing she was right, our hero let out a sigh of frustration and told her to put that kid on his tiger because they were taking him with them to the safe zone. But the kid refused to go anywhere without his mother and started fighting back. Just then, little brat in the system noticed something and turned around. Well, what do you know, all that noise the kid was making attracted some nearby zombies to their location, and now their path forward was blocked off by the monsters. Our boy didn't care, though. He had been looking for these things since this whole morning, so he got ready to beat those insects out of them. But to his surprise, the kid, out of nowhere, ran past him while shouting for his mother. Whoa, one of those zombies was his mother, and judging by all that blood dripping down her eyes and her clothes covered with red liquid, this is not a good sign for anyone. But the kid, though, didn't care about any of that and happily started calling out to her. Even the woman took the kid in her arms to comfort him. It was a really wholesome scene, right? Right? No, wrong. Because guess what happened after that? The woman straight up bit the kid on his neck. And not just bit, she really dug her fangs in there. This story just took a really dark turn here. Even the rest of the gang was stunned seeing the sight before them. Not little Brat, though. If you guys remember, she went through something even more horrifying at her parents' hands. So she wasn't surprised seeing that kid meeting that fate by his own mother's hands. Or to be more precise, her mouth. Just then, seeing the kid in that state, our hero finally remembered who he was. But that wasn't the only thing he remembered. After actually using that brain of his for the first time in his life, he also recalled a very distant memory of a child lying on the ground who was crying for some reason. And in front of that child was a woman standing between him and an army of demonic monsters. And at that time, he heard some words come out of that woman's mouth, and that was she was going to protect him no matter what. Back in the present, seeing the kid in that state, the kid was actually shedding tears, and he had absolutely no clue why. On top of that, he didn't even know what this feeling was, because his chest hurt and his eyes were getting all watery, which even surprised the system because this kid didn't even know what sadness was. Anyway, he knew he didn't have time because there was still a chance to save that kid, so this time he actually asked the system to help him deal with these monsters. Next panel, and both of them were already behind the woman. By the time the woman saw him coming, it was already too late for her. Bam! A powerful strike right in the middle of the woman's stomach, and both her and the kid's souls exited from their bodies. But our boy wasn't planning on stopping there. He immediately followed up with several more strikes to the remaining infected and separated them from their souls as well. Leaping into the air, he used some kind of technique and managed to take out all the insects that were latched onto those spirits. He's really starting to act a whole lot differently after rerunning that memory in his mind because, unlike his usual careless self, he was giving orders to the system like he genuinely cared about what he was doing. The system did as told, and it started doing his thing on the ghosts to stitch them back together. As for the rest in the back, they were dumbfounded seeing everything, and the most shocking part for them was seeing him sewing those ghosts back together. Before they even knew it, the kid was done, so he pulled their souls back into their bodies to end it. Luckily, everyone managed to recover without any problem, but they had no memory of anything that happened just moments ago. Our boy wasn't planning on stopping just yet, so he turned towards his system, asking if he has any way of attracting all the infected to one spot because picking them out one by one was too time-consuming for him. By then, even the girl noticed that the kid was acting a little weird, like weirder than usual because he wasn't his goofy self anymore, and also they weren't able to see the system, so that got them wondering who was he talking to. The system, however, was coming up with a plan because he agreed with the kid's reasoning. Taking care of those creatures would be easier if they were all in one place, and the only thing he could think of was to attract them here, using something those insects crave for, and that was souls. And the more powerful a soul, the better, because that would attract even more of those things. Just then, he remembered that our hero himself possessed an extremely powerful soul, so they could use him as bait by amplifying his soul's fluctuations using a ritual, which should be enough to cover a considerable area of the city, and our boy agreed to that proposal. Fast forward, and they arrived on top of a towering building to start the ritual. And our hero, now acting all serious, told the system to stop yapping and get into formation because they didn't have time. Seeing him murmuring to himself, the girls were really starting to get worried about the kid. But Brat, on the other hand, still had full faith in that kid, and because of that, she declared no matter what happens, she would stand by his side. Meanwhile, the system was explaining to the kid how the ritual worked. Basically, they would be making a small cut on the palm of his hand and using his blood. They would write a talisman, which would activate the ritual. Yeah, no, a cut drawing out blood. What was this system even talking about? Our boy immediately dropped his serious act and went back to his goofy self the moment he heard the word blood, and he refused to go along with this plan anymore, even when the system assured him it wasn't going to hurt. Nope, not listening. The kid even refused to listen to anything the system had to say. Finally, having enough of his nonsense, the system slashed at his palm and started forcibly drawing the talisman using his blood, and not even caring about the screaming kid, slammed his hand onto the ground to seal the deal. But turns out the kid was just exaggerating the whole time. It didn't even hurt when he did all that. The system, however, told him to get serious because now he was going to teach him the incantation that activates the ritual and, with full confidence, started reciting the whole thing, which went something like, "With my flesh, blood, and soul, spread your wings, migrate from the South Sea to the North. Let all living things follow the waves." Yeah, he was expecting that mentally impaired person to remember and say all that stuff, but having faith, he encouraged him to at least give it a try. The kid did as told and completely butchered it, and I'll just quote what he said. "Look at me, 5 pieces of meat, Bibi Baba, flash, and I won't kill." The system was pissed hearing him butcher that incantation in such a spectacular manner, and him getting pissed also pissed off the kid because that thing was too hard to remember. Furious, the system decided to do it himself and pushed him out of his own body, after which he proceeded to activate the ritual by using his own soul as bait instead. And the power that was released from the body was just out of this world because it even had the rest of them stunned, not to mention the gigantic beam of light that shot towards the sky because of that ritual. Cut to some other part of the city, and the fat director was on his knees, completely out of breath and out of men to fight off these monsters, because even Kaka got turned into those creatures and was coming to give the fat man a kiss to add him to the team as well. Just when all hope seemed lost, the fat man noticed something, the same pillar of light caused by our hero, and the thing was visible across the entire city. The moment those ghosts sensed it, all of them turned to the location, and it was just as the system had said. All of them completely ignored the humans around them and started Naruto jumping their way towards the source of that light instead. This surprised the three men because they were sure they were goners. Cut to another place, and the old man along with an even older man and a beautiful female cultivator were busy knocking out the monsters in that area. That is when he himself noticed that same pillar of light and wondered what it was. Just as the thing appeared, the old man noticed that all the undead were being drawn to that place instead, so he told old man Luo about it and asked for his orders. The man told both of them to get ready because they were also heading to that place to find out what was going on. They weren't the only ones watching the sight and were surprised by it. That same damned woman was also there, and she wasn't expecting someone this powerful to be staying inside this small city. But to her, it didn't matter how powerful this person was because she had already come too far, and now she refused to let someone show up and ruin her plans at such a critical moment. So she leaped off the building to pay this person a visit. Cut to the building, and the whole place was swarming with zombies, like the things were literally climbing on the massive structure like ants. By then, old man also arrived at the location and was shocked seeing the sight that awaited him, because on top of that building was a massive hologram of our hero. Meanwhile, little Brat was warning our hero that those things had almost reached the top. Sensing them coming closer, the system asked our hero if he was sure he wanted to save all of those people. That question surprised him, so he asked what he meant by that. Turns out the amount of energy required to exercise an entire city was immense, meaning the system would need to burn through most of his power, and that was something his body might not be able to handle. After all, it still was a body of a mortal and couldn't handle its full power, so he left that decision to our boy. Our boy may be an idiot, but he wasn't an idiot. He knew how many lives were at stake here. On top of that, this was the reason he was sent to this planet in the first place, to protect the whole of humanity, so he gave him the green signal to do whatever was necessary. Hearing his words, the system prepared to start the final stages of the ritual. Just as he did, the aura covering his entire body multiplied, and apparently the smell of his soul was so heavenly that the insects were driven into a frenzy state, and because of that, they left the bodies of their hosts to get to our hero instead. But there was something different about them this time. After devouring so many ghosts, they had evolved, with new wings sprouting from their backs. Our boy didn't care though. Evolved or not, in front of his power, these things were nothing but small fries. So he got up to his feet, and damn, it was a cool sight if I say so myself. This reminded me of that anime I used to watch back in the day called Blue Dragon. Well anyway, our boy, planning on ending it quickly, swung his fist towards all the incoming bugs, and the energy released from just that one attack was enough to disintegrate all the insects in the vicinity. And just like that, in 5 seconds, it was all over. The whole sky was cleared of the creepy crawlies. As for the system, that attack took a whole lot out of him. Plus, the kid's body was already on the verge of collapse, since that last attack was more than it could handle. Meanwhile, outside, it was literally raining people. But luckily, old man Luo was there to save the day. Oh, and of course, there was also our fat director, whose only contribution was screaming at everyone to catch the people falling from the sky. Cut back to the poor system, and the guy was beat and needed immediate rest to recover its strength. But for some reason, our boy noticed that instead of entering his body like he usually does, the thing started to disappear into thin air, and that terrified him. Immediately after the system was gone, he noticed another presence nearby, so he quickly turned around and found a man walking past him. Seeing him there, our boy called out to the man, asking who he was. But in that split second, as he blinked, his whole world changed, and he saw a completely different scene in front of him. The whole place seemed like a battlefield, with countless grotesque monsters lying all over the place as if something tore them apart with their bare hands. And not to mention, the smell was unbearable. While walking around to see where he was, the kid came across that same man from back then. And this time, the man, for some reason, kept repeating the words, "Kill them all." Seeing him muttering to himself, our boy called out to him, asking if he was the one who took out all these creatures. The man simply signaled him to stay quiet, and for some reason told our boy that all of these creatures tried to hurt him, so he took them all out. Before our hero could fully process what was happening, the man unleashed a powerful shockwave, shouting that he had no choice but to enter the demonic path to save everyone. And with that, our boy was knocked back into the real world, which scared the rest of them as well. Luckily, he was still alive and in one piece, but he couldn't make sense of the visions he had been seeing lately. First, it was that woman, and now this man with the same color hair as him. Nothing made sense to him anymore. As he was in the middle of processing that, he heard a voice from the back applauding him for a good job. Yeah, the same woman with those killer abs and massive fun bags. Seeing her appearing out of nowhere, everyone got on their guard. As for the woman, since she was too late and her plan had already failed, she asked our hero if his big sister should punish him for doing something so bad. Brat knew this woman was trouble, so she immediately got ready to defend her master. As for Purple Head, she somehow seemed to know who this woman was, and according to her, this woman is the leader of the demon cult named Lu Wansha, and also the #1 on the hit list of the Soul Suppression Department. The woman was actually impressed that the department knew so much about her, and since that was the case, then it changed things for her. In the blink of an eye, she zoomed past the 3 girls and appeared in front of our hero, saying she doesn't have much time if the bureau itself was after her, so she would get straight to the point. By the time those girls turned, the woman was already next to our boy's face, and I mean literally, because she was getting dangerously close to him, and the reason was because she had a proposal to offer. Turns out she herself had done her homework on our boy, and she knew he was also the one who destroyed the Eye of Sacrifice she placed on that fat man's construction site, and also the fact that he had more than a few screws loose. By then, little Brat had already leaped towards the woman to take her out in one hit, but to her shock, the woman simply raised her hand and managed to stop her full-powered strike, followed by a thick, powerful knee to her stomach, sending her flying back, and another to the poor tiger as well. And this time, she wasn't holding back either, and both of them went flying back and crashed into Purple Head. Man, the artist really enjoys drawing those testes for the tiger, doesn't he? Anyway, with all of them taken care of, she turned her attention back towards our boy and started walking up to him, and just like earlier, told the kid she has a proposal to offer him and asked him to join her heavenly demon sect, promising his big sister would take good care of him. Yeah, good luck with that woman, because our boy was well aware of what these people do, so he refused that generous proposal of hers on the spot, telling her to take a hike. Well, apparently this was the first time in her life someone had actually dared to insult her to her face, so it was a completely new experience for her. And let's just say she didn't exactly like that feeling. And since it was clear the kid had no intentions of joining them, it meant she had no use for him anymore, and leaving him alive meant nothing but trouble for them in the future. So her plan was simple: eliminate him right here and now, and save themselves the headache of dealing with him later. But no way our boy was going down without a fight, so he lunged at the woman himself to take her down. But just as they were both about to clash, his foot slipped and he went tumbling into the distance. And no, this time it wasn't one of his goofy mistakes. The dude was literally in critical condition, and because of the exhaustion and fatigue, he fell face first onto the ground like his body had finally decided to clock out for the day. But not giving up, he forced himself back up, and while doing so, he noticed a cut on his face and realized something was seriously wrong with his body, because for some reason he was struggling to even keep his thoughts together right now. As for the woman, she was impressed since that boy managed to dodge her blade even with his current weakened state, which honestly gave her even more of a reason to hurry up and eliminate this boy while he was vulnerable, because there was no way they'd be able to stop him at his full strength. Realizing the danger, Brat shouted for the kid to watch out from the back, but by then it was already too late to do anything, and he was left with no way to defend himself against her next slash. That is when a miracle happened. Just as the woman's blade was about to carve through the fool, a metal pipe came flying in from the distance, and ka-ching! Her blade got blocked by that same hobo-looking man who got his ass handed to him by our boy not too long ago and lost both his blades in the process. As for the woman, for some reason she leaped back as soon as her eyes landed on his face, which was good since it meant she was now fully focused on him and not the boy. Turns out there is a reason she was being so cautious around this hobo. This man is more than he seemed. His name is Lu Banchang, the undefeated sword saint and one of the 10 great experts of the Spirit Suppression Bureau. But that didn't mean the woman was afraid, and since today she got a rare chance to eliminate 2 of the biggest obstacles standing in their cult's path, she charged in to take down the guy. But there was one other reason she was so confident in her victory against this powerhouse, and that reason was that metal pipe he was using as a weapon instead of his magical blades, which were his most powerful weapons. And because of that, she began attacking the guy non-stop to try and push him back. But despite him having such a massive handicap, the guy was able to hold his ground against the woman. Not just hold his ground, he even managed to catch an opening and swung that thing towards her butt. But somehow she managed to move herself out of the way just in time, and after realizing the guy wasn't as weak without his weapons as she had thought, she leaped back to create some distance between them. Plus, she was pissed about the fact that the guy had the nerve to shamelessly attack a woman's butt of all places. So as payback, she was planning on slicing his head open. The man, however, simply took the cigarette from his mouth, after which he flicked the thing towards the female, and no, this wasn't some move he pulled for intimidation or looking cool. That guy was actually trying to end her using that thing. Although she managed to stop the attack in time, she was left in shock seeing how much power was packed behind such a measly cigarette butt. Still, there was no time to marvel at his strength. She had already wasted too much time in this place, plus their plan had already been ruined, so there was no need for her to stay any further. So she made the obvious decision of simply leaving before reinforcements from the Bureau arrived. And just before leaving, she blew a kiss to our hero, promising that the next time they met would be his last. And with that promise, she leaped back and jumped off the multi-story building. With her gone, the rest of the guys who were hiding the whole time came running in to check up on our hero, completely ignoring the man who just risked his life to save all of them. Still, he wasn't complaining. Plus, he was amazed with this kid who managed to save their entire city single-handedly. Yeah, no, with just that one slap on the kid's back, our hero lost all strength in his body and fell unconscious on the ground, scaring the life out of all of them. Yufa rushed in to check up on the kid and noticed blood trickling from the side of his mouth. And that made all of them so furious that they began blaming this whole disaster on the poor hobo, just because he slapped the kid's back a little too hard. With that, the rest of the people from both departments also arrived at the place to thank the kid for saving them, but were left shocked after finding the boy lying unconscious on the ground, so they immediately rushed over to check if he was fine. Next chapter, and Chen Zhuo was seen surrounded by a bunch of people who were thanking him for saving their lives. Just then, he spotted a lone figure walking away from the crowd that caught his attention, so he ran after the person to confront him for not thanking him like everyone else. But since that elf-eared man refused to even turn to see him, he reached out to stop the guy himself. But surprisingly, his hand went straight through the guy as he began evaporating into the air like smoke. Next panel, and he was seen opening his eyes once more, and turns out all of that was just a dream. Back in the real world, he was sleeping peacefully inside his coffin. Turning around, he found the old doctor who was showing relief that he finally woke up. But instead of thanking the guy, he asked the old man what he was doing inside of his room. Although the guy was a bit annoyed with that question, he decided to ignore him and explain to the fool he was just keeping an eye on him to make sure he was fine, since he had been sleeping inside of this thing for the past 3 days. And now that he was finally up, he asked if the boy was hungry and wanted to eat anything, but the answer was no. Turning to the side, they saw the rest of them running into the room after hearing the news that the kid was finally up. And seeing their faces brought a smile on the kid's face, which somewhat surprised all of them because he was acting a little weird for some reason. As for the delicious treats Yu made for him, he told the girl he wasn't hungry right now. Instead, he asked about another person who was supposed to be with them and where he was. Surprised, the fat man asked who he was talking about, but the kid, instead of answering, fell into thought for some reason. And then his usual dumbass instincts kicked in, and without any warning, he began running out of the place while screaming at the top of his lungs. Well, the rest was pretty obvious. He started looking for whoever it was he was after in the most stupid places imaginable, like this poor guy's pants who was just minding his own business, or this security guard who I'm happy seeing is still alive. But dude, let the poor man do his business in peace. He didn't even spare the doctors, and they were fully ready to knock him out with a sedative and drag him back to his room. Before he knew it, the sun had already set with no luck. And with the sun gone, his ghost buddies also came out to check up on the kid and were happy seeing him back in tip-top condition. But Brat noticed something was bugging the kid, so she asked if everything was all right. Purplehead also chimed in, reminding the kid he was a hero of the city, so he should be happy. Yeah, well, Chen Zhuo wasn't too sure about that. And guess who the reason was that he was feeling so uneasy? Our little system, which completely vanished after that incident 3 days ago, and Chen was afraid because he wasn't able to feel his presence anymore. But his gang had his back, so they assured the kid they will help him find whoever it is he's looking for. That brought a smile on his face as he thanked all of them for always having his back. Just then, he spotted something in the distance. Turns out it was a bunch of people gathering around the hospital for some reason. Looking closer, he saw it was all the doctors who were running around the place with some kind of talismans in hand. Surprised, he asked what was up with all of them and why they seemed like they were in a panic. Well, as it would have it, a lot happened while he was sound asleep in his coffin. So long story short, tonight is the night of the Ghost Festival, so the whole city is on high alert, which is why these people are using the talismans scribbled by our hero to set up a massive barrier around this place to keep the spirits at bay. Well, usually the Spirit Suppression Bureau handles stuff like this and keeps the citizens safe. But this year there is a very real possibility that things might completely go south, all because of the recent incident that caused a citywide disaster, resulting in the Bureau losing most of its fighting power. Well, that would explain why those two left in such a hurry earlier. It was because they were getting ready for tonight, and he wasn't happy about it since those two idiots didn't even bother taking their hero with them. After all, he was the only one strong enough to keep their city safe. So he instructed all of them to get ready, because they were headed straight for this ghost gate, or whatever, and to make sure not a single one of those things got past the barrier. Yeah, well, not everyone was on board with that idea, to be specific, Purplehead, because this dude was literally forcing them into the front lines without any plan. But not like she was important enough for anyone to take her seriously, so Brat tied her up and began flying after the kid to make sure his stupid ass doesn't get in trouble. Meanwhile, on the ground, the doctors were running out of talismans, so the old man instructed the nurse to go and find Chenjua's sketchbook, or better yet, he instructed her to bring the kid instead and make him draw them more of these talismans. Apparently, the situation was far more serious than the Bureau was letting on, because every year during this night, massive hordes of those ghosts storm their city, and even with countless powerful cultivators, it proves difficult to keep the citizens safe. But this year, their strength was reduced to less than half, and he was sure a lot of people were going to lose their lives at the hands of those creatures, which is why he kept this tiny charm with him that Chenju had made for him not too long ago and was counting on this thing to keep those creatures at bay. Just then, he saw the nurse running in with bad news that they weren't able to find that boy anywhere. Cut to the fat director who was out in the streets with his men getting all the civilians to safety. That was when he also got news from the hospital that Chenju had gone missing, and that scared him to his core because he already had a lot on his plate. And that stupid kid choosing such a dangerous night to run off was the last thing he needed right now. Not far from them, a bunch of people were seen ninja jumping their way across the city, who just happened to be the elites from the department, and leading them was that same old man. With their team in position, the man reported back to Director Luo about their readiness. Same thing for Sector B, where the old guy was personally overseeing things, and with him was that same hobo. Although the man was confident in their ability to keep their section of the city safe, there was one thing that was bothering him, and it was that same brat who saved their city and became a hero. So he asked the old guy to introduce him to that kid after this whole mess was over, and when asked the reason, the guy answered it was because he wanted to get his swords back from that fool. Back with our hero, where the three of them were bullying the poor tiger with their constant yelling, with the kid shouting at him to hurry up and find that gate, Brat dragging him toward a location where she thought the gate could be, and Purple Head telling him to go the opposite way because that place had a lot of cultivators and she didn't want to get mistaken for one of the ghosts from the parade and get jumped for no reason. Just then, in the middle of their arguing, a powerful bolt of lightning shot out of the clouds right in front of them, followed by a bright light which instantly caught all their attention. Before they knew it, a massive, cool-looking gate was seen descending from the sky right beside them. The thing was so massive that it was even visible from the other side of the city, and the people watching that thing recognized it as the gate connecting to the ghost realm. Seeing that the festival was about to start, Old Man Luyu instructed all his men to get into position. Everyone complied and got ready to face off against whatever stepped out of that massive thing. Back with the gate, and man, that thing was massive. It was literally reaching for the clouds. And instead of scaring the kid, it made him more excited since he wanted to see what was on the other side of such a massive structure. So he ordered all of them to drop down because they were going straight for that thing. The nearby officials from the bureau spotted them flying toward the massive gate, so they immediately reported their movements to everyone. And when they saw who it was, all their jaws were on the ground because that lunatic doing something stupid was the last thing they needed right now. So they rushed in to stop that kid before he does something dumb. Cut back to the gang who were walking up to the massive structure, and the first thing they did was start knocking on the door to see if anyone would answer. But since no one was answering, Chen Zhuo got annoyed and began banging on the door, demanding someone answer him. Well, the last thing to do was to force their way in, so he began pushing at the massive thing. But no luck, he wasn't even able to budge the thing, so he called out to the three in the back to give him a hand. Everyone complied, walked in, and using all their power began pushing at the massive thing, and surprisingly, it worked. The massive gate slowly began to move. The moment the two fools in the back who were running and heroically saw what that kid was doing, they immediately hit the brakes, turned the other way, and began bolting in the opposite direction to get away, before they got caught in the tsunami of ghosts that was about to flood through that gate and turn this whole place into a supernatural disaster zone. As for the four, they slowly began making their way to the other side and noticed that the whole place was pitch black with not a single living soul in sight. That's when they noticed that the door behind them was slowly closing on its own. As soon as that happened, the whole place lit up and they found themselves standing in the middle of a massive ruined wasteland. And once again, the only one with a functioning brain who knew full well this was a bad idea was the Purple Head. As she suggested to the three, they turn around while they still have the chance because she was having a really bad feeling about this. But instead of paying her any attention, the kid ordered them to move forward. Not even 2 steps, and he heard Purple Head pointing to the distance, telling the kid to look out. Turning around, they saw a whole-ass army of undead slowly crawling its way out of the dirt. And apparently that sight was so terrifying that both girls, who were also ghosts, might I remind you, started shivering since the scene looked like something straight out of a nightmare. The moment those creatures' eyes landed on the walking bucket of flesh, all of them began rushing in to take a bite out of him. So all 3 of them got into position to hold them all back, and their plan was simple: punch anything that moves and tries to get near you. So our blonde did exactly that and immediately got absolutely folded as one of those monsters smacked him right on his noggin, and he went rolling back a good distance because of the impact. Yeah, that was the last thing all of them were expecting to see from this kid, who was usually so overpowered, and then it finally clicked in their heads that the kid was not his usual self anymore for some reason, and had lost all of his powers. But there was no time to panic, so they moved in front of him to shield him from the incoming wave of ghouls that were trying to turn him into late-night KFC. And with that, an epic battle began, with both of them ripping through countless hordes of the undead. In the middle of it all, Brat noticed something strange about her body, as if her strength had suddenly boosted by a lot after taking down all those enemies. So to confirm it, she turned to Big Cat, and the answer was the same. The creature was also leveling up by taking down these low-level mobs. Well, that confirmed it for her. This place was basically an all-you-can-eat buffet of experience for them, meaning the more monsters they killed, the stronger they became. Just the kind of motivation she needed right now. So she shouted at Miss Boobzilla in the back to join in the battle if she wanted to upgrade from a useless weakling to something slightly less embarrassing. But while shouting at the girls, she dropped her guard and one of those monsters managed to slip out of her line of sight and lunged at her hero. Seeing the thing coming, she raised her guard to try and stop it. And in her panic, the girl unknowingly activated Neo Tri-Beam and blasted the thing straight at the incoming zombies, causing a massive surge of light to shoot from her hands and wipe out everything in a certain area around them, like somebody had just dropped a holy flashbang from the heavens. By then, the fool had also managed to pull his thoughts together, so he ran at the already dead monster to pay it back for landing a punch on him earlier. And thanks to Purple Head, this time he managed to land a hit on the thing, and with that, his payback was officially complete. This gave all of them the confidence to jump into the fight as well, and just like that, all of them began taking down a literal army of the undead, with of course our hero's only contribution being screaming his lungs out from the back. Cut to the outside, and the two men were seen standing next to the massive gate, watching the thing in confusion, since even after so much time, not a single monster had stepped out of that gate, which left the old man wondering if Chen had somehow managed to wipe out every single ghost behind that gate. But Hobo refused to believe that a single person was capable of such a feat, so he asked the old man not to let his guard down until this whole thing was over. Cut back to the inside, and all of them had finally finished wrapping things up in that section of the realm, and were making their way deeper into the plane to find more monsters to kill. Eventually, they came across a massive bridge which kind of looked spooky. On the side, Purple Head noticed a massive sign that said Bridge of Helplessness, and according to her knowledge, this was the place which one must pass through to get to the real realm of the ghosts. That was all he wanted to hear, so he ordered all of them to march forward because they were crossing that thing to get to the other side. Purple Head tried warning the kid that the living weren't allowed to pass through that place, but not like he was going to listen to that nonsense, so he kept on going. But just as they got to the middle of the thing, the whole place began wobbling in a weird way. But that thing shaking was the least of his worries, because for some reason Chen wasn't able to move his feet from the ground anymore, and it felt like some invisible force was pushing him down. Both girls tried pushing him forward, but the guy refused to budge. On top of that, some kind of dark and thick mist slowly began covering the whole place, which was making the kid have a really hard time breathing. Realizing the kid was about to get suffocated to death, Mimi shouted for Purple Head to use all her power to get that boy to the other side. She complied, and both of them began pouring all their power to try and get the idiot out of this death trap. And it worked, well, kind of, because they might have used a little too much force in that last push because the kid went flying through the air straight to the other end. Realizing they messed up, all of them began running in to see if the fool was still alive or not, and thankfully he was unharmed. Looking around, they found themselves standing in the middle of a beautiful field with red flowers covering the entire area. And these things are red spider lilies, but not like the kid knew or cared what kind of flowers these were. So completely forgetting their main mission, all of them began having fun in the flower field instead, and acting like a complete goofball. He asked Mimi if the flower crown looked good on him, and the answer was yes, which made him extremely happy, and he started dancing his way through the place to show it off like he had just won a fashion competition. That's when he heard a woman's voice showing surprise that she came across him of all people inside this place. Turning to the location, he spotted 3 shadowy figures slowly walking up to him, and upon looking closer, he found Lu Wansha along with 2 of her goons standing in the distance. The moment they saw their faces, all 3 of them jumped in to shield the kid, who himself had no idea who these people were. And that hurt Redhead a little, that he forgot about her so soon even after the lasting impression she had left on him. Knowing that the woman was trouble, both of them immediately charged in to finish her off before she gets a chance to lay her hands on Shan. And to stop them, her 2 goons stepped up, and with that, their chaotic battle started, with both sides giving it their all to overpower the other. Using the chance, Redhead managed to slip right through them and went straight at the kid to finish him off. But no way Mimi was going to let that happen so easily, so she kicked the fool away and began chasing after her instead. Redhead was actually surprised seeing how easily she managed to overpower her minion, plus she could tell the girl had gotten a whole lot stronger since their last encounter. The old guy was thinking the same thing, since that child was way more trouble than he had expected. But it didn't matter, their main target was that blonde kid, and he was fully determined to finish him off with his own hands. Hearing his words, Chen also got ready to square up with the walking fossil, but Purple Head was faster, and knowing the kid got nerfed hard, she jumped in instead to stop the man. And man, despite her being a complete scaredy cat, she was fully ready to throw away her own life this time to save Chen. And since she wasn't sure if she would be able to stop this man on her own, she planned on buying the others some time and activated her ghost domain to trap the guy. With that, a powerful barrier erected around both of them, and with the other 2 still busy with their opponents, Chen was still standing there trying to make up his mind about who he should help first. That was when he noticed Purple Head panting with exhaustion since she had already used most of her strength while putting up this barrier, and the man before her was fully planning on using that to his advantage, so he brought out some weird jar, and for some reason, something about his ability surprised Purple Head, and as a result, she froze deep in thought for a split second, giving the fool the chance he needed, and he blasted the girl with a full-power laser beam that went straight through the middle of her chest. As soon as that happened, the barrier covering the 2 also shattered, and she went crashing through the ground back toward Chen's feet. The guy tried to help, but the woman shouted that there was no time for that and urged him to run because the man before them wasn't any ordinary cultist. He was the one who released that swarm of insects into their city that day that wiped out half the forces of the Bureau and almost turned the entire city into the land of the undead. Well, her conclusion was right on the money, and the guy confirmed it was indeed him. And since the fool before him was the one who ruined all his plans, he was fully ready to make him pay tenfold. Seeing him coming, the girl began forcing her way back to her feet while urging the fool to run since she will try to buy him some time. Mimi also realized things were getting out of hand, so she prepared to retreat and stop that guy instead. But Redhead wasn't about to let that happen, so she suggested the girl stop spacing out and focus on their battle instead. Furious, Mimi attacked the woman back to end her quickly, but to her shock, Redhead managed to stop her claw with almost no effort. And before she even got the chance to react, she grabbed her by her hair and boom, kneed the girl right in the middle of her torso. And the impact from that strike was so brutal that the poor thing literally began coughing out blood from her mouth. And just like that, she lost all strength in her body to fight back, and her form began to fade away like smoke into the air. So to make it quick for her, Redhead got into position to end the girl's misery with her own blade. Back with Chen, who was now in complete mercy of the enemy and was struggling to break himself free from the monster's grasp, while Purplehead begged someone to get up and save the kid, but neither of the two were in any condition to do anything. And that filled her heart with helpless rage as she lay there completely powerless, watching that creature slowly squeeze the life out of the boy. That's when Redhead walked up to the man and suggested they wrap this up quickly since they still have work to do. Although the guy wasn't happy since he was planning on making him suffer before ending him, he knew the woman was right, so he ordered his pet to bring him down so he could snap him like a twig with his own hands. The creature complied, and he began gathering up energy in the palm of his hand to shatter his ribcage. But before he could get a chance to swing, all of them froze as they felt an overwhelming amount of pressure coming from the side. Just then, a powerful gust of wind rushed by them, and that caught all of them by surprise, and when the wind settled down, they saw the fool's hand, which he was planning on using to end the kid, completely frozen in ice. As the woman was trying to make sense of what she was seeing, another blast of cold energy came from that same location. And when she looked closer, she found our Purplehead standing in the middle of it all, and damn, the woman looked nothing like her usual scaredy self. The old guy had a rough idea about what happened. That woman had managed to awaken her first talent, which would mean she possessed the 9-yin physique, something extremely hard to come by, which is why he shifted his focus on her instead and dropped the fool. Using that to her advantage, Purplehead used her newly acquired ability once more, and giant ice blocks manifested out of thin air and began raining down on the three enemies while simultaneously shielding the boy. This forced the three of them to retreat for a bit, giving Purplehead a chance to rush in and take the kid in her arms, and thankfully he was still breathing, just in critical condition. Back with Redhead, who was growing excited with each passing second, since this was her first time coming across a spirit with 9-yin constitution, and she wanted to test her power firsthand, so she leaped at the girl to see what she was capable of. Purplehead, however, simply raised her finger and countless ice shards began raining down from the sky to block the woman's path. But despite that, she managed to slip her way through the attack and close in the distance between them. And just as she got in range, she swung that lightsaber of hers towards Purplehead's throat. But as soon as that thing made contact, something completely unexpected happened, as the woman completely vanished from the spot. The stunned Redhead turned to the side and found the girl in the distance. Initially, she thought this was her speed, which she used to evade her attack, but her friends told her to look behind that woman. Sure enough, as she looked closer, wait, I'm gonna stop here for a sec. Damn, look at what's on that fool's face. I never realized this, but this woman is healthy as hell. Well, anyway, back to the story. So long story short, they were standing in that girl's ghost domain, and what that Redhead attacked earlier was nothing but a clone. So to counter this ability of hers, they just needed to escape from the ability's range. Following his instructions, all of them began running in different directions, with Redhead still targeting our girl to keep her distracted long enough for her friends to flank her from other sides. But then two more individuals were seen jumping inside of the domain. Turns out it was Mimi and the tiger who were finally back on their feet. Well, this was bad, really bad according to Redhead, since not only were they trapped inside of this domain, the two enemies they thought they took out earlier also managed to get back to their feet, meaning their chances of winning just dropped significantly. And to make it worse, her own weapon was proving to be useless because of all this cold that was freezing the blade. So in the end, she decided to just bail, because these people were never their main objective, and asked her men to fall back so they could finish what they actually came here to do. Plus that fool was dead either way, since his stupid ass came into this realm without any talisman or protection charm to ward off the yin energy that was overflowing all around this plane, meaning it was just a matter of time before his body gave out completely. Knowing that the woman was right, the muscle guy broke himself free from the tiger's jaws, but the old man on the other hand had something else going through his head. Apparently he had taken a liking to our big melon Purplehead, and he was planning on capturing her for himself since that woman had monstrous potential of growing stronger thanks to her 9-yin body, so his plan was to corrupt her and make her his own puppet. Yeah, well, the two of them didn't care what was going through his perverted brain, so they decided to leave the fool behind. As soon as they were alone, the old guy unleashed a powerful wave of dark green aura from his body, and slowly his body began to transform into something inhuman. Boom! Big reveal. The guy could turn himself into a bug, and I'll just quote what he said after the transformation. Here it goes. "I'll suck every last one of you dry." Yeah, the dude actually said that. And his first target was Mimi. And after that comment, the girl was terrified, so she tried getting out of his way, but luckily, Tiger managed to pounce at the fool at the right moment. But not giving up, the bugman opened his mouth, and from inside his throat appeared a massive stinger or something, and he launched the thing straight at the tiger's mouth. But this time, Mimi returned the favor by punching the dude so hard the air left his lungs. Not sure what this guy was made of, but even that wasn't enough to stop him, and instead of backing away to create distance between them, the dude spat out some weird sticky gooey stuff from his mouth. And after successfully trapping both of them inside that gooey prison, he broke himself out of Purplehead's domain. which meant he could now use his full power, so he began preparing for a powerful attack, while simultaneously Mimi was doing everything in her power to break herself out of the slime. But it was too late. The guy managed to complete his spell, resulting in countless shards of green crystals raining down on Aeon's barrier. Seeing how things were getting out of hand, she got up and erected another barrier in front of the kid to try and stop the projectiles. Oh boy, by now Brat was pissed with this whole situation. Plus this man was clearly looking down on them, so she prepared to show the old fool what she was really capable of. Old Fool tried stopping that whatever it was, but he failed to realize Mimi's real target were his wings, since she wanted to ground him. After successfully ripping the things off his back, she shouted for Big Cat to take over. And man, he didn't disappoint. The dude legit looked like Tank from Solo Leveling as he flashed behind the guy, and then he swung his claws, landing a direct hit on the man's back. But they weren't done. They still needed to finish this new combo, so Aeon rushed toward the guy, and just as she got in range, she pulled back her fist and boom, a powerful wave of ice erupted forward, trapping the old man completely inside an ice prison. The guy, however, was still alive and was in disbelief that a mere human was able to control such powerful, vengeful spirits. Yeah, while Mimi didn't give him the time to process that thought, and with one powerful swing of her fist, she shattered the ice along with the fool into chunks. With the threat finally neutralized, the girl dropped her barrier and ran in towards the two to check up on them, and then bam, she shoulder-tackled poor Mimi, completely forgetting she was a lot stronger than before now. After which the poor thing began crying her eyes out because although she put on a tough act, on the inside she was terrified stiff. Seeing her making that face, both of them asked the girl to calm down while praising her for an excellent job, since if it weren't for her, none of them would have survived. But then again, she was getting a little too touchy with her, so Mimi suggested she keep those massive spheres to herself because she wasn't into that kind of stuff. Right in the middle of their little drama session, they suddenly heard the fool furiously screaming from the back as he finally regained consciousness. Apparently, he had no memory of what had happened, and well, because he was out cold the whole time, but he was asking where the three of those people went. Seeing him jumping around like an idiot, the three of them told the kid not to worry because they took care of those guys while he was peacefully sleeping on the ground. Yeah, well, he didn't really appreciate their bragging, so that little comment earned them each a boop on their noggin. Seeing how the fool was being jealous, Purplehead quickly came up with a story that it was really thanks to him that they managed to stop those people because he was giving them strength while sleeping. Yeah, that seemed to do the trick. Plus, Mimi wanted to know where she learned to suck up to that fool so well, and the answer was the fat director, who always used the same trick to get the kid to do anything. Anyway, since it was now over, and he had his fill of fun, Chen suggested all of them head back home since he was starving. But since he was going the wrong way, Ayeon tried correcting the fool, earning her yet another smack on her head for saying Dong Dong Yao didn't know which way his house was. After a bit, they arrived outside a massive city of some sort, but of course, it wasn't a normal city. This place was meant for ghosts and other supernatural beings. And knowing everything in there will start attacking them if they found out this kid was still alive. Ayeon tried stopping him, but not like he was going to listen. In fact, he was so motivated that the dude literally managed to power his way out of her grasp. Looking up, she found the other two fools just as hyped as our protagonist and were even asking her to join them. Lucky for them, the guy who was supposed to inspect each person who entered the city was snoring off to the side, so they easily managed to slip in without any trouble. And the sight in front of them was unbelievable. But our protagonist was more bothered by the clothes these people were wearing, because to him that stuff all looked way too weird. So Purplehead asked him to stop judging them since these people came to this place from various dynasties, so those clothes weren't weird, just old-fashioned. Suddenly a hand appeared from the side and latched onto Chun's arm. Turning around, they saw a shady-looking old hag who was asking the kid to come closer. The reason being she realized the boy standing before her was a living person. Well, the three of them got all stiff hearing those words, but Chen was more worried about her dirtying his clothes with her filthy hands. The woman apologized for approaching him without permission. She was just a bit surprised seeing a living person in a place like this. Plus, she had something special for him, which she was sure the kid would be interested in. Bringing out a wooden box, she showed him 3 turds which according to her were strengthening pills with the ability to boost his strength several folds, but seriously, they just looked like turds to me. Well, the kid was so hungry that he was instantly sold, unlike the 3 in the back who weren't even able to stand the smell coming from those items, so they tried telling the kid not to do anything stupid. Seeing him interested in the turds, the woman told him the price of the items, which was his heart. Yeah, now they were definitely against this idea, so Mimi stepped in the middle, knowing full well what this old hag's intentions were. Luckily, the kid wasn't too interested in the items after hearing the price, plus street food always gave him diarrhea, so he declined the offer. But the female, on the other hand, was a professional glazer, so she acted like she didn't really mind, and whatever, while commenting how people would kill to get their hands on those items. Yeah, well, that seemed to do the trick. But instead of his heart, he decided to pay with something even more precious, which was the same flower crown that Purplehead made for him. Yeah, no, the woman tried to stop the fool, but he wasn't even listening to her at this point. So in her desperation, she screamed at the kid to stop while calling him a thief who was trying to scam an old woman. Yeah, well, Chen reminded the woman how she said these things were treasures, so in exchange for her treasures, he gave her his own treasure, so it was a fair trade. Okay, now she was just getting annoyed by his antics, so she called him a mentally unstable person for thinking she was going to fall for his crap. Well, for one, her screaming successfully managed to catch the attention of nearby ghosts, and two, she managed to anger the kid who wasn't too happy about her last comment. Seeing that the kid was actually traveling with a ghost general, the woman immediately backed away, knowing she won't be able to win against them. But by then it was already too late, and Shen was fully ready to knock some sense into her for calling him mentally unstable. That's when an unfamiliar voice came from the back suggesting our hero calm down. Turning around, they saw a new face standing behind them. Before they could shoo the man away, they heard him suggesting they don't cause any further commotion in the middle of the market. As for his payment, he offered to pay the money for those pills instead. Walking up to the old ghost, he apologized on the kid's behalf and asked for the price of the item, and that made the female a bit suspicious about the boy, since not only did he have powerful ghosts backing him, but even this man was standing up for him, and she wondered what could be the case. Still, she knew this wasn't the time or place to cause a scene, since it would mean trouble for her, so she changed her tone and told the guy there was nothing to worry about. With that mess sorted, all of them began walking away, with the old hag plotting something in her mind, and whatever it was, it involved the Ghost King. After a bit, they were seen in some other part of the city, with the man explaining how things work in this realm. So there were several rules everyone had to follow. First one being no shouting in the streets. Second, no arguing or harassing the shopkeepers who were just doing their job. And third, and the most important rule, no fighting within the city limits. And if anyone broke even one of these rules, the wrath of the Ghost King would come crashing down on them. Yeah, well, that's everything this fool would do if left alone, so both girls decided to keep a tight leash on him until they figure out a way to head back to their own world. As for the guy, there was a reason he helped them out back there. It was because it was rare to find a living human in this place, especially one that traveled with so many high-level ghosts. And more importantly, there was a chance this man could be working with the demonic cult, so he wanted to make sure if that was the case. But after their brief conversation, he could tell this kid didn't work for those guys. As he was thinking that, he heard the kid asking his reason for visiting this place, and that made the guy fall into thought about whether he should reveal he was sent here by the Bureau to procure treasures and artifacts, because there are some rogue cultivators who don't like the soul-suppressing Bureau too much. So he gave him half of the truth, saying he just came here looking to buy some items. That's all. Well, that was a problem for our hero, because he was also looking to buy some items, so that if this man snags the ones he likes before him, yeah, he definitely couldn't let that happen. So his plan was to drag him to the stall with the most worthless-looking items, so he can have the good ones for himself. Well, it didn't take him that long to spot such a shop, and bonus, the shopkeeper was a Namekian, meaning he was bound to get a good deal there, so he offered to buy the man anything he desires from this place. Well, the guy didn't know what to say to that, so he just thanked the kid for the generous offer, while Purplehead in the back was wondering how this fool was going to pay for all of this since they have no money on them. Yeah, well, Mimi wasn't too worried about that, since somehow things always work out in the end for this kid. Going through the items, the guy instantly spotted a bunch of useful items that were around tier 4, but Shen had no idea why he was being so hyped about those rundown things, since some of those things look like they belong in the scrapyard. Well, not like he was complaining. If that idiot wants these shabby items, so be it, so he asked the shopkeeper to pack up everything for his friend. Handing the items to the man, he began reaching into his walking wallet to bring out the payment for the items, and poof, he was feeling so generous that he even told the guy to keep the change. Next chapter, and the poor man was being crushed under the weight of this boy's stupidity, and it was making his back hurt like hell, and I mean literally, because this fool somehow managed to rob almost half the market with those flowers, and this poor guy was forced to carry all that stuff on his back. So basically what happened was that he shoved those flowers into the hands of those merchants, and when they tried to protest or hand them back, he absolutely beat the ever-living daylight out of them. And now all those people are tailing them to make sure they don't lose sight of him, while others went to report what was happening out there to the Ghost King's palace. And knowing this kid will only bring trouble if he sticks with him any longer, the guy decided to quietly slip away before he got dragged into a mess he wanted absolutely nothing to do with. But the fool wasn't done and was still looking for more things to buy for them both. But according to Purplehead, there was a problem with that, since for some reason all the shops in the place were being closed down by the merchants. Yeah, guess why that was the case? Apparently, word had spread about their little shopping spree, and now no one was planning on risking getting robbed and beaten on the same day. Just then, the fool before him got another idea, which was to set up their own stall since everyone else was closing down. As for the stuff they would be selling, it was all inside of this massive whatever it's called, and he was confident they would sell out in no time. I mean, just look at the crowd of people who want to get their hands on those things. Yeah, the guy knew he was now definitely screwed. Next panel, and they were all set up and ready to start their new business. This time the guy was dead set on ditching these fools no matter what, but before he could finish his sentence, his eyes landed on the sword in Mimi's hand, and he paused. Upon looking closer, he realized that the sword belonged to his master, but it made no sense. How did such a treasure end up in the hands of this kid? So he asked how he acquired these two items. Chen just told him they were given to him by a smoking hobo a while back, which was clearly a lie, but a lie this fool somehow completely bought, and that got him wondering why his master would just hand over these things to this boy after keeping them by his side for decades. And the only explanation he could think of was that this kid was just acting like a fool. but in reality he was some top-tier master who was hiding his true strength from the rest of the world. But that wasn't about to stop him from snagging these things for himself, so he asked the price of these items, and even promised to pay him anything he wanted. Well, that was indeed a really good question. The price for those things, and since the guy looked so desperate about them, he activated his inner businessman and started acting like there was no way they could sell those things to their good friend for 50,000 ghost coins. They needed to lower the price because those things were nowhere near that valuable. Well, actually, it was the complete opposite. Because back when his master first got these two blades, they cost him over 1,000,000 ghost coins, so he immediately brought out a sack of coins and agreed to pay him that amount. However, the three of them watching that man shed tears of joy completely misunderstood the situation and thought they might have charged him too much, which was why he was now crying. So he asked the two women what they should do, and the two, being equally clueless about the situation, had no answer for the kid. So in the end, he had to take matters into his own hands, since he couldn't just stand there watching a grown man weep like a toddler, and generously offered to give him all the items from his little stall as a bonus with the sword since he was their first customer. Before the man could ask what he was talking about, the guy tied everything up and shoved it into his hands while literally telling him to get lost, since they had business to tend to. In the middle of all that, they heard some commotion from the side. Well, it was all the merchants that the kid ripped off not too long ago, and with them were the city guards who had apparently come to collect the little menace responsible for all the commotion he caused in their city. But the woman didn't just want him arrested. She wanted that fat sack of coins in his hands as well for compensation for emotional and financial damages. You're right, like hell he was going to give them his hard-earned money, which he earned fair and square by selling his swords. Plus, he dared the woman to come over and say that to his face that this money was stolen and see what he'd do to her. Just then, he saw a blade being pointed at his throat. Looking up, he found a much more dangerous and stronger-looking ghost standing before him, who suggested to the kid that he calm down until they got to the bottom of this whole situation. Turning toward the merchants, he asked who the original owner of those swords the kid sold was. Well, turns out none of them were, so neither of them stepped up. Now, since that part was settled, he turned back to Chen with another question about the things that were stolen from these merchants and if they were in his hands right now. Well, of course not. He had none of those items. Instead, those things were currently in the possession of the man standing right behind him. Well, that's all for today, folks. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you want to know what happens next, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, take care.